Chapter 201, Devastating. The word that fits better than ever finally burst out. The red petals scattering and blooming also wither at some point. The word, end of war. It is something that no one can easily utter, but at the very last moment, anyone can easily recognize it. Determining the winner in a battle is a very easy task. The weak are devoured by the strong. This is the law of nature, and the order that has maintained the world for a long time. In that sense, I can look at the enemies and say this. At least this time, I have not been defeated. It is not I who am being devoured, but you. Swoosh. After I blocked the second Apollo auto-targeting attack, my masters, Noah and Astrid, quickly joined the battlefield. I also see a few glimpses of Luna, who was already active, and the new members. Demonic human Rick. That guy is still smiling, but I know all too well what his last move is. Rick shouts, I didn't want to go this far. Nox von Reinhaver. Please remember this. Because you made such a fuss, more people have been sacrificed as a result. Rick places his hand on the ground and draws out his mana to the fullest. But it is futile. Amdusias. The 72 demons that Guy recently revived cannot be described merely as cunning. Also, he manipulates words according to his needs and despises humans, or anyone even slightly close to humans. Naturally, Rick is also included in that category. Rick stares in confusion, saying, why? Did your trash master promise to come to save you if you were in danger? I look at Rick, whose brow is furrowed, and examine his face, which is tinged with purple. It will soon be over. He has already absorbed too much demon blood. Rick cries out, this can't be. Amdusias Nim, can't you hear me? Why is there no response all of a sudden? I reply, still don't get it? You've been abandoned. I calmly convey the truth and begin to approach Rick. With my sword raised, I approach him in the way I have survived in this world so far. Rick wails, this can't be. I was chosen. I'm not a human. I was just a few days away from becoming a real demon. Is it the fate of a villain to become ugly in the end? Or is it just bad luck and misfortune that affects everyone equally? For some reason, I felt a momentary pity for him. To hold the life and death over someone in my hand. This is to cut off a person's life, and furthermore, the hearts of all those connected to them, or to sever the thin thread of hope that a person clings to. I think to myself, yes, just like the end of a war. Rick groans, ugh. I remember the young lamb wearing a newsboy cap, the demonic human that betrayed Eleanor and weakened her forces, that trash. Here, I will kill him and do my best to ensure that such things never happen again. The only things that will change are just Rick's death, and Nox, who I thought was just an extra, his entry into the main story. I say, I can't bring myself to say goodbye. Die. The sword that soared high into the sky shines and strikes down. It is a shocking sight. My heart feels like it will stop from the cold swing that even I can't believe. Every time I take someone's life, I reflect on my own situation, but I have never felt such intense emotions as I do now. It collapses. A person's life. Swoosh. Finally, Rick's head falls, and now even Apollo can no longer fulfill its role. In an instant, the demon army is crushed by Astrid, Noah, and Luna's forces. I finally realized that what I needed to do here was done. Now I can rest a little. At the same time I made up my mind, my body began to tilt. That was when a woman passes by me. A woman who had been pouring out her mana to the limit, while looking down at this situation from a high platform passes by me and approaches someone. Her pupils narrow, and her eyes are bloodshot. Why did she come down here? In fact, this war has practically ended in victory. Penelope declares, from now on, I, Penelope von Arkheim, will judge the traitor according to the legal laws of the Imperial family. As it is wartime, I will carry out the execution immediately. Louis von Arkheim. Louis shouts, you bitch, how dare you? The chains that restrain Louis's rushing body are undoubtedly the princess's. Penelope. Why? Why is she trying to put an end to a war that is already over? I ask, Your Highness. Penelope states, everything is for the Empire. Finally, as Penelope raises her hand to attack the first Prince Louis. Why is that? I reflexively jump forward and stop her hand. It feels like I shouldn't let this go any further. Somehow, I end up holding Penelope's wrist and facing her. It was a bit uncomfortable, and she was one of the few people who still thought they held my life in their hands. But here I must speak. I say, that's enough. Penelope replies, Nox. There's no reason for you to stop me, is there? The first Prince Louis attacked you, oppressed you, and because of that you suffered. So it's right to end it here, to prevent more people from being sacrificed. I reply, you're right. It might be as you say, Your Highness. Penelope asks, then why are you trying to stop me? You know that if this person is left alive, more people will be sacrificed. I reply, I know. I'm not trying to judge whether the method is right or wrong. I just believe that it wouldn't be good for you to break and lose the person you once were. As calmly as possible, I draw the Stormbringer tied at my waist again. It's not an appropriate act to show in front of the princess, but at that moment, my body moved on its own. This is the best I can do now. Every moment and situation was telling me so. I swung the drawn sword as it is. The princess didn't even close her eyes, but at that moment, she continued to stare at me intently. A sharp slicing sound rings out. Blood splatters. Naturally, it is neither mine nor Penelope's. The first Prince Louis. His neck is precisely pierced. It's more accurate to say it was stabbed rather than slashed. But even after seeing that cruel scene, she only says to me, what are you doing? I reply, I merely did what you should have done, Your Highness. Penelope states, this is overstepping. You do not have the authority to carry out an immediate execution on a member of the imperial family. This could be seen as treason. I counter, being hated. At that moment, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I only chose the best words I could think of to comfort the person I know as Princess Penelope von Arkheim. That is all I have seen over a long time, in 27 games. And for the short connection I have built with Princess Penelope von Arkheim since possessing this body, it is everything. I say, I am more familiar with it than you. The princess called Benevolent, Penelope von Arkheim, has one secret. It is about the justice that the court mages and knights talked about in her childhood. Justice. What a thrilling word it is. And what on earth does it mean? But she never got a proper answer. It is obvious that it is not easy to give a clear answer to something as abstract and unformed as this. Moreover, most people forget such vague aspirations and the emotions tied to them as they grow up. It can't be achieved anyway. As they gradually realize this, they give up on their dreams. A young person who wanted to become a great knight, after realizing their humble talents, gives up and becomes just another thief. A child who devoured magic books to become a mage, eventually hitting their innate limits and heading towards the worst situation. But for a girl who carried not only her own life, but countless others on her shoulders, that dream was something she couldn't easily give up. It was after Esteban became a great ruler. From that moment, problems began to arise. Many people starved, died in war, or were killed by bandits. The people's hearts falling into despair is, in a way, a natural result. But her father did not return to his former wise self. As if bewitched, he kept repeating the same words. The emperor repeats, I must take it back. I must take it back. What on earth did it mean? It's not something I think about now, but such worries were enough to shake the young Penelope. Her father was called a great ruler. He was respected by everyone. Almost everyone followed him. But he was not perfect either. Sometimes he showed cruelty, sometimes the appearance of a great leader, and sometimes other aspects. Even she, who thought she could resemble her wise father as she grew and improved, could only sigh at this point. You can't always take the same stance and deal with someone and face an enemy country. That fact was deeply unsatisfactory. Even when studying governance, she kept thinking. And soon she reached her own conclusion. Penelope thinks, yes, the best is to save as many people as possible. Utilitarianism. It was extreme utilitarianism. While it might seem like a great political direction that saves many people on the surface, it's not something that can be said to be true to its core. In other words, it's like saying it's okay to ignore the opinions of the minority. But she thought the greater cause was more important than that. That alone is justice. And she knew that the beginning of it was herself. Abandoning benevolence. Judging every situation coldly and mechanically. Then no one will be shaken. If you handle everything according to the manual, according to the laws of the imperial family, at least then, the current tragedy won't happen. Penelope commands, step aside. So she says to Nox von Reinhaver in front of her, to step aside. If necessary, I will even strike you down. But Nox just holds her wrist and quietly looks into her eyes. As if stripped bare, he seems to see through everything. When looking at those lavender, mysterious, subtle eyes, the same thought always comes. But today, it was especially strong. At that moment, he finally spits it out. Nox says, being hated, I am more familiar with it than you. So, Nox von Reinhaver gradually loosens his grip on her wrist and lets his hair, tangled with the blood of all sorts of people, flow down. With a voice that seems to fade and break as if losing consciousness, he staggers and says, Nox says, you are enough as you are now. Penelope von Arkheim. At the sight of Nox calling her by her name, not with the title of princess, she couldn't hide her slight surprise. Her pupils narrowed, and her body trembled. She recalls the broad back that once looked at her with benevolent eyes. The person she always wanted to resemble. Her father, the first emperor who deserved everyone's respect, Esteban von Arkheim. Unknowingly, she embraced the collapsing Nox just because of that. Because she saw a figure overlapping with her father. Just, that's all. Chapter 202. A light lingers. It is a light that sweeps away the cold, both warm and piercing. When the sun of the First Empire rose, everyone recalled it at the tragic end of this war. Some heard it through oral tradition, while others witnessed it firsthand, the birth of the Arkheim Empire. It was a monumental event that shook the history of the world. Under the name Esteban von Arkheim, I will build a new empire upon the ruins of the old kingdom. Esteban, the former king, spoke these words and ascended the throne with the support of the people. It was the beginning of a new era, a future that was to be the true golden age of the continent. No, it should have been. But in the end, it did not turn out that way. Thump, thump. I try to ignore the violent beating of my heart as I look at a girl and a boy. In that moment, there is neither benevolence nor cold-bloodedness, only warmth remains. When the sun of the empire rose, like the warm light that settled upon us, only then does the girl realize. Penelope von Arkheim realizes. She has become the emperor. She has, even if only slightly, stepped out of the shadow of the father she so admired. Nox von Reinhaver. A soft, trembling voice echoes. In this moment, no one moves. Only one person, Penelope, continues to speak with difficulty. I thought you were my enemy. I also thought that even if you helped me now, you might betray me someday, as the issues entangled with the empire and its powers have always been brutal. She pauses, the conjunction carrying a sense of denial breaking through her dark, unstable inner self. Her golden eyes cloud with moisture. Now, it does not matter what happens. If you do not betray me, I will not betray you either, and in the name of the Empire, I swear here that the Arkheim Empire will alleviate the discrimination between the holy and dark families. Nox had already lost consciousness. Perhaps he would only hear these words long after. If she does not speak now, she feels it will be difficult to make this decision again, so she continues. Because the current Penelope must move forward. Penelope smiled faintly for the last time, not with benevolence, but with an utterly innocent expression, and whispered, Nox von Reinhaver, I will appoint you as a member of the Imperial Guard Knights. When the end of the war approached, Luna had already left her position. There was no need to worry anymore as the war was over, and she had done all she could. The same was true for Duff, Marin, and the other vice-captains nearby. First, Kane, a man with an eye patch, speaks. He was one of Luna's vice-captains, a prodigy skilled in ambushes. That Nox guy's abilities were truly unbelievable. Kane had earned remarkable achievements in this war and succeeded in completing a mission of eliminating the close aides of the first Prince Louis. Everyone here had no choice but to agree with his assessment. What Nox had shown was far beyond the level of a rookie. I agree, as I thought the Moonlight Sword's successor was just some brat who caught Captain Luna's eye, but there was a reason after all. The next to speak is Krieg Oil, who is the largest in size after the giant Duff. Having lost an arm, he has overcome his weakness by attaching a hook-like prosthetic. His innate defensive prowess needs no further explanation. But to call this the end of war, as expected, is it not dangerous? It might not be a bad idea to eliminate the princess. The woman who speaks next has striking white skin, and wears electrifying attire. Her voluptuous figure, clad in a combat suit that emphasized her allure and firmness, was famous as a symbol. She was also the strongest fighter among the vice-captains. Her name is Isel, and she has been pondering the next steps after the war, serving as the strategist for this criminal organization, Lunatic. Isel is also gifted with a brilliant mind. Turmoil is coming. The continents war may not be over yet. With the brat princess becoming emperor, the forces that followed the first Prince Louis will face one of two outcomes, death or rebellion. Excuse me, Isel, but is there no chance they might submit to the imperial family? Marin asks. Oh, Marin, I am sorry, but it is an inevitable issue. Once humans start doubting, there is no end to it, for how can they trust those who have already drawn swords against them? Isel's words are correct. The princess's forces are still weak. The tragic fate of a nation without a centralized system was something we experienced fully during the rebellion of the 5 Eastern nations. If such a thing happens again, Lunatic will not survive. Moreover, if the tender-hearted princess fails to handle the situation properly, and it escalates, they will not hesitate to kill her. Lunatic's goal is a revolution from below. Perhaps it can be seen as closely related to the civilian resistance group, but in reality, it is closer to a profit-seeking organization. Those here have all endured difficult times and hold deep resentment toward the imperial family. Helping the imperial family in this war was merely a matter of aligning interests. I heard the princess plans to appoint Nox von Reinhaver as her guard knight. It was Luna's words. Everyone froze at the news, unable to speak. A member of Lunatic joining the imperial family's forces was something impossible to comprehend. That kid seemed decent. Should we eliminate him along with the princess? Marin quickly shook her head at Isel's words. Perhaps we should consider it a bit more? Isel, Nox still has many uses. Marin, since when have you been able to question my words? My apologies. Marin realized she had unknowingly made a mistake, and bowed her head deeply. No matter how much she had inherited the power of the mermaid tribe, and made recent progress, she was no match for Isel. Though she had never seen a proper fight, rumors suggested her combat prowess was already comparable to Luna's. It was only natural that issues would arise given their ranks. Well, he does seem to have a strange charm, does he not? I think it is not just because Marin is a young fangirl that she is protecting him. Don't push it too far, Isel. Krieg Oil, stop your ignorance. How about using your head for once? Both of you, restrain yourselves. Have you forgotten we are in front of the captain? At Kane's words, the two fell silent. Luna continued after a moment. We will not kill that kid now. He is the successor of the Moonlight Sword, and after all, he also once saved my life, even though there was no reason for him to do so. That is the part I still do not understand. Why is Nox von Reinhaver, a dark family member, caught between the Holy Family and the criminal organization Lunatic? Luna nods, half in agreement with Isel's words. True, but it does not matter much. For now, we will watch him. Even in this situation, which could be seen as a rebellion, Nox did not betray us. He moved as if he had foreseen everything, even at the risk of his life. Luna takes a deep breath and continues. He still has uses for Lunatic, so we will let him live. The end. Yes, the vice-captains of Lunatic, the candidates, Duff, and Marin all bow their heads. The word "the end" is the trigger. When Luna utters it, they must immediately show their obedience, for that is the absolute discipline of Lunatic. Just as a new sun has risen for the Empire, so too does the moon rise in the shadows. Though it may not cast its own light, it is intense, drawing other ephemeral beings to gather here. Gasp. Like a calf taking its first steps, I barely manage to exhale, and reflexively raise my body. Then I reflect on where I am now, and how the end of war transpired. And I wonder, who is that woman looking at me? My vision is still unfocused, and I cannot see clearly. A throbbing headache pounds in my head, and I ignore the noisy demon in the mirror. Then I look around again. Is this a blue flag? It is strange. Clearly a strange sight. In the Arkheim Empire, there is only one place where a blue flag can be displayed in a mansion, which is the empire itself, or the castle in the capital built for the imperial family. But here, a blue flag hangs boldly on the wall, as if it is natural. As my vision, which had only been able to distinguish colors, returned to normal, I finally realized who the woman looking at me was. Your Highness, why have you brought me here? My mind races, quickly deducing where I am. It is the princess's annex where Penelope stayed. But why? Questions fill my mind. I cannot attend the coronation without my guard knight. So I am waiting for you. Guard knight? It is the first I have heard of it, but I instinctively sense it. Penelope von Arkheim. This girl has caused another big mess, huh? How will I get out of this alive? Questions creep up my spine, and a chilling sensation, along with the recoil from the battles, begins to overwhelm me. This time, I really pushed my lifespan to the limit. Memories of the hardships rush past. But well, it was expected. Yes, from the start of the battle to the end of the war, using Apollo to exclude my masters from the battle, and Ulysses's participation. I had anticipated and moved according to all these situations, but this time was different. Could you tell me how I became your highness's, no, your majesty's guard knight? I do not really want to explain, but fine. I will tell you. Penelope takes a deep breath, then stares at me intently. Then she smirks and places her hand on my face. She brushes my flustered cheek and smiles brightly. I told you before, I like you. That is why. What? Let us rest a bit and then move, shall we? Even you cannot delay the coronation, or the people will not be happy. Yes. Though I did not understand the reason, I answered vaguely. I thought I could brush it off this time too. Damn it, if I had known Penelope's words were more sincere, I might have made a better choice. But what can I do? It is already too late. Let us go. Penelope, grabbing my hand, looked like a child. It seemed too lighthearted for a princess, no, an emperor. But at the same time, she looked happy. Like a child who had just woken up from a long nightmare. I did not expect much from him, but it is a pity. Amdusias, the voice of one of the 72 demons, echoes in the dark underground of the west. There, the flickering light of countless candles illuminates various shadows. But their forms do not exist above ground. The shadows here come solely from one demon. We need to consume stronger humans. At this rate, we cannot revive Duke Baal. He is muttering to himself, lost in thought. By discarding Zapar and a few other dukes to buy time and hasten the war, he had a true goal. It was to extract one person from the imperial palace to make it seem as if they were dead, completely erasing their existence. And that person was a most unexpected one. As the coronation begins and the princess ascends as the new sun of the empire, the sun of the past has already set. The light crumbles, held in someone's grasp. Your daughter has become the new sun, supporting the empire. Are you fine being here like this? As the man tied to the chair lets out a low groan, Amdusias grabs his chin and coldly calls his name. Esteban von Arkheim. Chapter 203. The capital city of the Arkheim Empire is crowded with countless people. A girl gazes at the cheering citizens below with a benevolent smile. The legitimate successor to the empire, with her luxurious golden eyes and golden hair, is Penelope von Arkheim, who has finally revealed herself at the coronation. The crowd erupts into cheers as they worship the rise of a new sun over the continent. A knight standing beside Penelope, his face hidden behind an iron helmet, strikes downward with a thick iron mace that makes one wonder if a human could even wield it. Along with him, hundreds of lower-ranking knights lined up behind him perform the same action with their swords. The sound spreads and resonates through the crowd with rhythmic strikes. The crowd roars in approval, chanting for long life for Emperor Penelope. Although she has not yet officially received the crown, nothing prevents her from becoming the emperor now. The first prince, Louis, has already fallen and lost his life. The legitimate successor has clearly disappeared. Of course, not everyone agrees with the current situation where Penelope has become the emperor. Some among the people whisper doubts, questioning whether it was not the princess who raised a sword against her own blood relative. But paying attention to such rumors one by one would make one unworthy of the heavy title of emperor. Those who wish to wear the crown must bear its weight. A famous playwright from a place I once believed to be reality comes to mind. Also, to add one more thing, this scene was familiar to me. I have seen countless times the ending where the princess ascends to the throne and the first Prince Louis falls. In the process, it was not difficult to arrange the situation to my future advantage through direct intervention. But as Nox von Reinhaver, in my life as the protagonist, this is clearly the first time. My heart swells with emotion. The relief of having prevented the worst situation, my own admiration for my growth, and the deep satisfaction that none of those within my circle have died fills my chest. It feels like my chest is warmly filled. That is, until just a moment ago, before hearing the unknown story of Emperor Penelope. Anyway, reflecting anew on the current situation, I scan the crowd of people gathered below. Among them are characters who correspond to the good guys, but there are also villains. There may be those who have not yet committed evil deeds, but will fall into corruption in the future. Well, I cannot just go and kill them right now, and it is true that I have doubts about whether it is right to preemptively eliminate those who have not committed any crimes yet, but I feel regretful inside. If they were villains in the game, it is highly likely they will be the same here. There is no reason to keep them alive. Anyway, my biggest goal is to uncover the secrets while protecting my cherished comrades. For this, sacrifices are inevitably necessary. It is not about justifying my actions, but the human world is originally structured that way, so I am merely being faithful to it. I have no regrets. From the beginning, such emotions are a luxury for someone with a limited time like me. For this, immense power is necessary, but the time when I had to use someone to become stronger is now passing. Now, at the edge of this splendid coronation, where the final villain boss, who should not originally exist, is present, I think I need to properly check where I am. Asking myself, I lower my posture and carefully roll my pupils. If someone kindly asks about the whereabouts of an extra, I would kindly tell them that I am kneeling before the newly enthroned emperor, wearing a pure white outfit unsuitable for a scion of a dark family. I could tell them that I am going through a kind of knight oath process, and this is not just any ordinary knight oath, but one related to the Imperial family direct royal guard, a knight who must directly assist the princess. Nox von Reinhaver has now undeniably become one of the protagonists of the coronation. Damn it. I should have tried my best to avoid attracting attention, but I had no choice. Thus, I made what I thought was the optimal decision, but I must be careful, as this could become a chain that binds my freedom of action. There will be times when using my position will be beneficial, but I must also consider the opposite. Thinking coldly, such a position is more of a disadvantage for a ruffian like Nox. I am Penelope von Arkheim, the brilliant son that once rose over the continent, and the legitimate successor of the founding king. Esteban von Arkheim is who I am now. Now, I can say that I am the only one in the entire continent. The beginning feels eerie, though it is natural. Considering the aftermath of the battle of the two siblings over succession rights at the Citus Hall, it is hard to say that it fits the title of the benevolent princess. Anyway, Penelope breathes naturally and directs the attention of the hall towards her. Watching the familiar series of events, I realize anew how much she has strived since her days as a princess. The first prince, Louis, knew how to incite people but could not draw them in. That is why he ended up joining hands with a demon. Well, the events in Eldain and the Demon Legion incident have already been disclosed to the people. Anyway, the justification for Penelope to become the emperor has been completed. The fact that the sacred imperial family colluded with devils, and that there were more than a few noble scions who witnessed it, makes it impossible to hide. To overturn this, one would have to fabricate an absurdly malicious rumor to frame the princess, which is practically impossible. Penelope is a bit rigid but wise. If even a small rumor about her spreads, she will deal with it immediately. Her confidants, Echidna and the Xenos family, are the same. Therefore, as the legitimate successor of the imperial family, I hereby declare that I will succeed the late Emperor Esteban von Arkheim and become the new emperor of the Arkheim Empire. Thunderous cheers and applause resound. Even those who do not agree with the princess' opinion now hold their breath. There was too much that the first Prince Louis had done to interfere here. Operating a demon legion following high-ranking demons like Zapar and attacking Eldain, where the scions of other Empire core families reside, was downright malicious. Moreover, attacking the four sages, referred to as the nation precious treasures, and using the ancient weapon Apollo for this purpose creates a list of crimes that would have no end. Anyway, the conclusion is that Penelope now has the qualifications to become the emperor, and everyone has no choice but to listen to her voice. The fact that I, Penelope von Arkheim, could become the emperor is due to the efforts of all the people and the citizens who supported me. It was a result achieved because everyone fought bravely on the battlefield without any weak words. But, following the huge cheers, Penelope pauses for a moment and looks around. These are not the eyes of a benevolent princess, but eyes that are cold and determined. There is always someone who has made the greatest contribution among them. Such a thought came, and perhaps because I have experienced this kind of thing so often, I can now predict Penelope's next line. Of course, Penelope continues speaking without caring. Nox von Reinhaver. The emperor voice calls me. I answer shortly, yes. You have saved many people with the best judgment in the chaotic wartime situation, and fought at the forefront of this hellish battlefield as my ally. I replied, it is given. I merely did what I had to do as a citizen of the empire. Nothing is a given. Raise your head, Nox von Reinhaver. I had been looking at the ground, worried that something might splash on my ill-fitting pure white outfit with dangling ornaments, but now I am told to raise my head. I feel anew that the current situation is quite ambiguous. What can I do? This is also my karma. Although I do not understand the current situation, I raise my head towards her proudly, not because I am a scion of a dark, prestigious family, but purely out of Nox von Reinhaver personal will. I appoint you to the Emperor Direct Advisory Institution, ARC, and as my first-class guard knight. I will obey your command. Why is it that while answering, I feel as if a sharp gaze from behind keeps piercing me? After the coronation, for a light social gathering, we rented out an entire dining hall on the academy grounds. As expected, many colleagues came to me and each said a few words. For example, the first was Thalia, who hesitantly approached me, lightly grabbed my sleeve, and said, being part of the Emperor Direct Institution, congratulations, Nox. Yeah, thanks. Perhaps my answer was unsatisfactory, as her expression was not very good, but I think it went well. Next came Paracelsus, who had a somewhat sinister face. Noble sir, I was the one who struggled to the brink of death, so why are you taking all the credit? Shouldn't I get something too? Didn't you say you did not want recognition from nobles? Of course, I meant to put some gold coins in my sleeve. I ran out of money recently. The beads fell right next to me. Damn it. Gambling again? Fortunately, Leon did not say much. As expected, the magic stone of the Grand Duke level demon is different. I would like to keep a few for my family as well. Do you have any intention of selling them? He seemed to like the magic stones. The power that could be drawn from them and the combination with undead were beyond imagination, so perhaps it is a natural reaction. I spoke firmly. It is expensive. Can you afford it? Leon fell silent. No matter what, I would not engage in a losing deal. I am not in financial trouble, and there is no reason to sell the magic stones. If Leon needs them, I can lend them to him whenever. Next, it was Eleanor who spoke. Nox von Reinhaver, why do you keep causing accidents so often? It was a rare emotional tone, but there was no other reaction I could give. Except for proudly raising my head, the ruffian young master of the Reinhaver family has no other choice. It seems like they only use me when needed, but anyway, I agree. Please think a little about your health, young master. Zitri also said that, well, a lot of blood was shed for this coronation. Rona would have probably said something if she were here. Fortunately, she had to go back to the family for a while, so we did not have a separate conversation. I hate a husband who overworks himself. Erina? The combination of Erina and May was still there. Anyway, time is passing busily, and even now, I am steadily dying. No, actually, everyone is. Perhaps I, who can see my remaining life, am more blessed than them. Of course, the problem is that the time is ridiculously short. But being given time to laugh with my people like now is such a joyful thing. Holding a wine glass, we look into each other's eyes and smile transparently. The darkness mixed with a handful of moonlight shining through the stained glass and the pure white tablecloth. Now, the end of part 1 is truly approaching, and the future I know only has a few episodes remaining. Will I be left in the unknown after all this ends? Or will this world come to an end? That is what I was thinking at that moment. A new message has arrived for the player. Would you like to check it? Chapter 204. Hello, Nox. It has been a while. First, I must greet you. You have done really well so far. Thanks to your efforts, one of the pillars that supported the world has finally tilted, and this event will help you achieve what you truly desire. Really, you have done something to be proud of. You can take pride in it. The beginning, as expected, was talking about something I had accomplished. Done well, huh? It was a somewhat unconvincing sentence. It is true that I have worked hard in my own way so far, but if you ask me whether I have really done well, I am not sure. Countless people have died, and I contributed to that. I killed, and I killed again. I even executed my own blood relative, the eldest, Garen, because I thought it was the best course of action. Considering all the circumstances, I could not survive without killing him. It was solely my decision. If I were to grieve and repent for someone's death now, that would truly be hypocrisy. At the very least, even if I commit evil deeds, I will not be a hypocrite. That is also one of the ways I have lived. Meanwhile, the system message continued. Not only have you killed many Grand Dukes, but you have also grown far beyond the strength I envisioned. Nox, you must understand that this can sow hostility in your enemies, and can also become poison to yourself. There are still countless forces trying to plunge the continent back into a period of chaos. The demons will become more cunning, and the world testing you will continue to torment you. In fact, the world's damage rate has already exceeded 80%. You must realize this. It is dangerous to think that everything is now in the palm of your hand. You must grasp it and grow stronger. You must counter everything your enemies have and continue to climb to even more unreachable heights. You already know this. The end of this world, as you know, it will only be completed by your death. I cannot divulge much information yet, but I will tell you one thing. Nox von Reinhaver, the future of your death has not yet changed. Whether you change it or not is entirely up to you. I hope you stay healthy. Your dear. At the last moment, a static sound echoes in my head. Then, the last phrase that appears begins to change. My pupils narrow as I clearly see a shocking word appear and disappear before my eyes. It was written as follows. Your dear mother, what is death? Some might say it is stopping. Others might say it is the breath ceasing and never being able to see loved ones again. No word or sentence could sadly define the word death. What world do we go to after death? What kind of life can we lead? Because we know nothing, humans fear it. But I am someone who cannot even reach that fundamental question. Every morning when I wake up, I look at the stopwatch attached to my heart and watch as the countdown to death begins. Every second, my life flickers like a candle in the wind, swaying back and forth, and it continues to urge my death like an alarm. It is undoubtedly an unpleasant thing, but even so, I have come to realize that my life is precious. Only recently have I realized it. Amidst the bloodshed and deaths for the coronation, I realized I want to live. Right now, my desire to live is stronger than ever. I want to spend a little more time with my people. But to do that, I must remove this bomb attached to my heart. The mysterious letter said it. My bomb has not yet been removed. The future Nox von Reinhaver still dies. Why? The world's damage rate has already far exceeded what I thought. The original world has already been destroyed. Especially Nox, who was thrown into a completely new world but survived. So why am I still a damn terminally ill patient facing death? Mother, The word that briefly appeared and disappeared at the end of the message keeps cutting off the flow of thoughts in my mind. Even if I try not to think about it, it keeps surfacing and tormenting me. The name Mother, a heavy name called family, that did not exist in my past, chokes me. Actually, I had thought about it at first. Who is the person writing this letter and calling me with affection? Maybe it is family, or maybe it is some transcendent something else. But no matter how well-founded the speculation, it is still just speculation. It is not reality. The moment it is confirmed, it is no longer fiction. That is exactly how I felt now. Even though I do not consciously acknowledge it now, I have a biological father named Theo, and half-brothers like Grain, Alan, and Hats. But this was a different dimension. After all, I thought of them as nothing more than strangers at the beginning. But mother, a name I have never thought of before. At the same time, it is a resonance that does not even evoke longing. Another reason has been added for me to see the ending of this world. I coolly calm my brain and cover it with thoughts. Mother, so I am still suspicious of the existence that appeared in the letter. How did she bring me from another fictional world to this place? What was the reason for sending me here in the first place? What does she want from me? Various questions mix turbidly. Like lime water, they blur and mix, emitting a pungent scent. It was like undiluted vodka. Theo von Reinhaver. Rodwell said it. After losing my mother, Thea lost interest in women and became even colder. The night of slaughter, that day, she died. The night of slaughter. The day when Paimon swept the battlefield and it rained blood. The day when 3 of the 7 stars gathered. If this is true, and she is my mother, would she have had a reason to fake her death to Theo? Honestly, I am not sure. If she really loved him, she would not have been able to do that. I am not sure either, but if my comrades were to disappear, if they were to leave me without a promise, I would definitely feel a deep sense of emptiness. It might even destroy me. After the coronation and the festival, I will have to investigate properly. There are still things to solve. Also, things I cannot handle now must be forgotten. The damn thing is, I do not have time. It is regrettable, but it is true. A terminally ill genius. Plus, a dark knight who uses the supreme black sword. The students and faculty of Eldane Academy watched me fight riding on Karl this time, and started calling me the terminally ill genius Dark Knight. They said. The palace of the Arkheim Empire. In the audience chamber at the center of the capital, a nobleman raises his voice. Princess Penelope, I cannot accept this. Appointing a scion of the Dark family as your guard knight. What nonsense are you spouting to Her Majesty, who has now become Emperor, Arl von Gillen? Assisting her is, as always, Echidna von Zenos. She, who has supported her until now, has been recognized for her merits and given a high position to continue supporting the Emperor. Before the two is a bald man with a long mustache, Arl, who appears to be in his 40s. He is the head of the Gillen family, which developed in the center of the capital, and seems quite enraged due to recent events at the coronation. Do you know how many years I, Arl, have been loyal to the Empire? This is a serious problem. Please reconsider. Relying on trash like the Dark family is something that should never exist in the great Arkheim Empire. Arl, yes, Your Majesty. Arl von Gillen still seemed unsatisfied, but he barely responded to the Emperor's voice and briefly raised his head. It was an act that implied he had some authority, even if not officially granted. Echidna was about to point it out, but at that moment, Penelope stopped her. Her lips were filled with her characteristic relaxed smile. It was proof of the qualification only those who have ascended to the throne can show. If you can say the same thing to the 3 great dark families, I will not make an issue of this. But if you cannot, you will have to take responsibility. Insulting other families is a grave crime under imperial law. Arl von Gillen seemed flustered by Penelope's words. The princess he knew in the past was not like this. He thought he could manipulate her because she was still young, and did not know the ways of the world. Moreover, although he did not openly show it, he was a leading figure in the faction that supported the first Prince Louis. There could still be backlash from the people, so they have not dealt with him yet, but the situation could change at any moment. The princess killed her own blood relative and ascended to the throne. It is also true that she received help from the Dark family in this process. Thus, the Gillen family, fearing they would lose their power, decided to strike first. They began to slander the Dark family and restrain Nox von Reinhaver, though even that bold move ended up being meaningless. I will take my leave. Arl said that and disappeared beyond the audience room without even receiving permission. Not following minor imperial laws is a challenge to the Emperor's authority. Echidna exploded in anger. How dare, a dog of a family. Echidna, do not worry too much. Echidna thought for a moment at the Emperor's warm words, then reluctantly spoke. Your Majesty, do you really not regret it? Regret what? Appointing Nox von Reinhaver to that position. She took a breath and continued, observing her lord's expression. The Gillen family is just the beginning. Gradually, the extremists may revolt against Your Majesty's decision to appoint a scion of the Dark family. You are right. It is certainly not impossible. In fact, it is highly likely. Then, that is why. Emperor Penelope smiled benevolently, and took a sip of the cold tea. Then, calmly looking out the window at the green scenery, she continued. But do I have any reason to fear those who do not support me? Yes, Echidna, you are wise. You are devoted and you understand me well. But there is one thing you must keep in mind. Could you tell me what that is? Whatever it is, I will immediately. You must be able to clearly distinguish between your enemies and allies. I will not stand by and watch forces that threaten the Arkheim Empire rise. There will no longer be excessive discrimination between commoners and nobles. I will simply help the continent move in the right direction. That is what I believe the position of Emperor means. The reason you appointed Nox von Reinhaver to that position. Echidna bowed her head and asked. Is that also part of Your Majesty's big picture? Of course. The Emperor chuckled softly. It was as if there was nothing to fear anymore. Having lived in constant anxiety, even building a separate residence in the capital to hide. Echidna was a bit surprised by her demeanor. The princess who could not straighten her shoulders after dozens, hundreds of assassination attempts. The princess she knew had now hatched from her egg and become the ruler of the continent, the empire's hegemony. And at the center of all events was one person, Nox von Reinhaver. But one question still remained, so the worry continued. Echidna carefully looked at her. Nox von Reinhaver, I agree that he is your majesty's ally. But to firmly secure him, we must purge the opposing forces, and a new form of the empire with the support of the Dark family will be completed. To do that, we must more firmly tie the Reinhaver family to the empire. The coronation is coming to an end. When the 3-day banquet is over, we will start a new story. The emperor, the new son of Arkheim, stood up with a relaxed smile. It was warm, and it was the same as the Princess Echidna remembered, even from her very young, innocent days. Emperor Penelope, as if thinking of something amusing, revealed nothing of her inner thoughts and simply said, I plan to use a traditional method, even if it is a bit old-fashioned. With that, like a little devil. No, such an expression might not be appropriate for the new son of the Arkheim Empire, but anyway, Emperor Penelope, making such an expression, her expression clearly showed a rather thick playfulness towards someone. He is going to have a hard time again, that guy. Echidna shook her head inwardly, showing awe, respect, and a bit of pity towards someone. No matter how she thinks about it, there is only one person who can receive the new emperor's pranks. It is strange. My ear is itching. At the same time, Nox von Reinhaver, wearing an ill-fitting white uniform, was barely sitting on the edge of the bed in his room. Since the wounds had not yet fully healed, I managed to successfully slip out of the banquet hall by making all sorts of excuses. But something felt off as my ears had been itching persistently since earlier. Zitri, folding laundry, responded from the side. If I may be so bold, perhaps someone is cursing you, young master. They say your ear itches when that happens. Zitri, that is a superstition. And let me tell you one thing. I am not particularly hated by. Not particularly? Probably not. Nox sighed, unable to give a proper answer. He judged that continuing this conversation would not even break even. What can he do? It is his own karma. Thinking that, Nox threw off his clothes and lay down on the bed. Even the pillow is uncomfortable, he thought while he muttered to himself. This is really a bad omen. While thinking that, a deep sleep overcame Nox. He felt the warm body temperature overlapping on his chest exactly 30 minutes later. Chapter 205. The world is truly in decline. How could a day come when a scion of the Dark family would serve as a knight in Her Majesty the Emperor's personal guard? It is absurd. I doubt the other nobles will just sit back and let this slide. Damn it, I cannot stand it. I must request an audience with Her Majesty immediately. Wait, my friend. Hold on. I hear that Sir Arl von Gillen has personally taken action. Oh, if it is the Gillen family, then it is trustworthy. Anyway, I cannot bear to see the scum of the Dark family setting foot in the Imperial Palace. I truly hope Her Majesty reconsiders. She will surely be persuaded. No matter how lowly the means by which she ascended the throne, he is still a powerful noble of the Holy Family. Someone who has barely passed the age of 20 cannot possibly handle it. Various voices could be heard throughout the hall. Though mixed with chaotic noise, it did not particularly feel unpleasant. This is Arkheim. The imperial capital is heavily biased towards the holy faction. In such a place, it was only natural that large-scale suppression or restraint against the Dark family would occur. Do not pay it any mind. When I told Zitri this, she laughed heartily, saying she was used to such things. Do not worry. Though not as much as you, young master, I have experienced this kind of thing so much that it has become second nature to me. Right. I know. But always remember that there are variables. You say there are variables? Look ahead. I pointed to a man in the midst of a banquet where nobles were gathered, raising their glasses. He was a middle-aged man with a dignified gait, surrounded by quite a few women, trying to insert himself into their conversations. No matter how you looked at him, he seemed nothing more than a clumsy, inexperienced man. But to Zitri, he was someone else entirely. Why is he here? He was none other than the one who orchestrated the death of Doran, Zitri's father, and the head of the Rovlia family. It was Zitri's uncle, Vortex de Rovlia. But Zitri muttered as if she could not understand. Why? Our family was not significant enough to attend such a grand banquet. I heard he scraped together funds. He sold off various items from the Rovlia family's secret treasury, and even disposed of Sir Doran's belongings. That is the result. How disgraceful. Zitri bit her lip, genuinely disgusted. Her father, Doran de Rovlia, and her mother, Cheshire de Rovlia, were great people. They always opened their granaries to distribute food to many, living modest lives themselves. They were truly the epitome of noblesse oblige. But the problem arose here. The vassals, using the excuse that the family's taxes had decreased due to the couple's benevolent nature, gradually began to harbor dissatisfaction. The alternative to this was Vortex. He was the only one who could rightfully ascend to the position of the Rovlia family's heir. With the support of the vassals, he killed Doran and Cheshire, and became the center of the Rovlia family. But naturally, not everything could go as smoothly as he had hoped. The first issue was that Vortex's faction, who had taken over Doran's successor position, was as fragile as glass. The second issue was the increasingly barren land compared to the era when Doran was in charge, and the successive uprisings and protests of the people. These significant events pushed Vortex out of the power structure. What he chose then was to attach himself to a greater power and seize benefits. And this turned out to be a fairly successful decision. By selling the family's treasures, Vortex became a dog of another holy family, gaining the middle name von instead of da, and enjoyed overwhelming power compared to the past. But this was only within the region where the Rovlia family resided. Naturally, there were far more holy families who knew nothing of the Rovlia family. While he was busy figuring out where to attach himself, the power struggle escalated, leading to a change in the emperor. Thus, he eventually went against Darren, who was called the greatest treasure of the family, and sold the family's artifact that had been preserved for generations to gain the qualification to enter the current banquet. It was only a temporary opportunity, but for him, it was a desperate position. Are you troubled? There was no change in tone. Zitri's slender shoulders trembled slightly at Nox's calm voice. But Nox trusted Zitri. He trusted the genius who had supported her through many difficult situations. Thus, he grabbed Zitri's wrist and strode forward towards Vortex von Rovlia, the one who had killed Doran. Haha, I hope to be invited to such occasions more often in the future. I would love to host a grand festival at our family estate. The wine we brew is considered the best on the continent. Despite the lukewarm response, Vortex continued his spiel. Meanwhile, the noble women present were the first to notice Nox's approach. Gasp. That person is here. I heard he recently became Her Majesty the Emperor's new knight, but to attend this banquet. Shush, quiet. Even if he is from a dark family, he is from a prestigious family we cannot afford to offend. It is better to be cautious. Unlike the quick-wit noble women, Vortex noticed Nox's gaze with a displeased expression. What is this? That brat with the smug face. Why is he coming this way? It was utterly incomprehensible. Vortex had heard of Nox and the rumors about the prestigious Reinhaver family. A dangerous instinct warned him. He must not let Nox von Reinhaver approach. That damn brat has the rightful heir of the Rovlia family with him. Zitri. I cannot believe she is still alive and attached to the Reinhaver family. There were rumors that she had captivated the youngest of the Reinhaver family with her beauty, but he had not paid much attention initially. Honestly, who would think it is significant? At the time, Nox was seen as a ruffian, born into a prestigious continental family with the power and wealth to seize hegemony, yet his foolish actions in conflicts with his elder brothers had earned him subtle resentment among the nobility. But now it is different. I heard he has changed. Not only did he take the top spot at Eldane, but now he has become the Emperor's knight. There is no good in getting involved with him. Vortex slightly raised the corner of his mouth as he watched Nox approach. Since the Rovlia family had recently aligned with the Holy Faction, he thought there was no reason to fear the Dark family. Other nobles would know this was a very short-sighted thought, but to him, unfamiliar with the ways of the Imperial Court, this situation felt like a great opportunity. If he had to get involved with that brat, could he not use this situation to his advantage? Such a thought suddenly crossed his mind. Ahem, what an esteemed guest we have here. Thus, Vortex, noticing Nox approaching, stepped forward to speak first. He had taken the initiative, and of course, he paid no attention to the nephew behind him. Are you Punk the next head of the Rovlia family? Vortex's brow twitched and convulsed. Nox's cold voice, casually spoken, made his heart sink. How dare you call me Punk? This brat, just because he has found a good patron, has become so arrogant. The term Punk was something even Vortex, who had been cowed by the high nobles here, could not easily accept. After all, he too was a noble, and had he not recently grown in power? In such a situation, it was unthinkable for a family head to be insulted like this. It was against imperial law. He had the right to voice a proper opinion. Vortex truly believed this and opened his mouth. Nox von Reinhaver, even if you are Her Majesty the Emperor's knight, you must not cross the line. He began to display his oratory skills, well practiced at the family estate. Though it seemed clumsy, the nobles silently watched the situation, and the banquet hall was instantly filled with tension. As expected, the others disliked this brat too. They are intimidated by my presence. But, unfortunately, the reality was quite different from what he thought. For instance, the fundamental issue was that the object of fear was different. They were not intimidated or impressed by Vortex's presence. They were afraid that this madman would spout nonsense and get himself killed by Nox, and that the fallout might affect them. No matter how much the heads of the holy families held sway in the imperial court, no one would dare to touch Nox, who was openly discussed as the next head of the Reinhaver family. The line, that is laughable. For a bug like you, I am Vortex von Rovlia. You may not know, but I am the head of the Rovlia family. I know the Reinhaver family is great, but there is no reason for such treatment. If you were truly the rightful heir of the Rovlia family, that would be one thing. Zitri's shoulder twitched. Hearing Nox's words, she glanced at her uncle's face and then froze her expression. She looked up at Nox with round eyes, as if she had not expected this situation. Nox laughed as if amused. It is already confirmed that you rebelled and killed Sir Doran de Rovlia to take his place. I think you are mistaken about that chick insulting the family. Vortex looked down at his niece and spoke. Zitri could not say a word. In such conversations between nobles, all she could do was remain silent, having even lost her surname. Moreover, she was quick to read the situation. She had already realized what Nox was trying to do. You call my maid a chick? The servant of the Reinhaver family? It was an unexpected answer. While Vortex was slightly taken aback, Nox added to his statement. Zitri de Rovlia has legitimacy. She is Doran's daughter, forced to step down due to her father's death. and now, she is my possession. It was at that moment that Vortex realized something was going wrong. Nox looked at Vortex with his characteristic arrogant eyes. So hand over the Rovlia family, which she should have rightfully inherited, to me. What nonsense. A voice cried out in disbelief. Naturally, it was Vortex's, but it held no real meaning. No matter how much he shouted, there was no one to help him. Not all nobles are the same, after all. Moreover, Nox von Reinhaver, though much changed, was still a ruffian. He was in a position to make any demand with confidence. Moreover, as a beautiful girl stepped out from behind, acknowledging his words, the situation began to flow in a direction completely different from what Vortex had anticipated. That certainly makes sense. Nox von Reinhaver. It is only fitting punishment for someone who seized power by shedding blood. Your Majesty. Nox bowed his head slightly, looking at the host of this banquet hall. Vortex von Rovlia looked at her with blank eyes. This is unacceptable. No matter how much you are Her Majesty. How dare you speak such nonsense to Her Majesty? Echidna's eyes turned cold as she looked at Vortex. Nox watched with an amused expression. It was as if her face was saying that he was screwed. Chapter 206. No, that is not it. I made a mistake because I was so shocked by what I heard. Can you not shut up? Her Majesty the Emperor has not yet granted you permission to speak. At Echidna's icy voice, the others retreated in shock. The only one who remained calm was Nox von Reinhaver. He acted as if this situation were natural. Nox was enjoying the moment, watching Vortex's face crumble. Of course, his true feelings were not like that at all. Why was Emperor Penelope helping him? Initially, after pressuring Rovlia moderately, Nox had planned to reveal that the legitimate and direct heir of the family was in the Reinhaver family. He intended to reclaim the Rovlia family for Zitri, but he had not expected things to escalate this much. When he heard that Vortex von Rovlia had come here, he had thought of stirring things up, but he had not anticipated this. Why was the Emperor, who had just been crowned a few days ago, here? She should be extremely busy, yet she showed up now. A chill ran down his spine, but he ignored it and asked, I do not think this is a matter worthy of your Majesty's attention. No, you are the first knight I appointed after ascending to the throne. This level of treatment is only natural. Nox could not help but tense up, unsure of what would come out of those beautiful lips. He thought that saying that made him uneasy. Vortex was still waiting, unable to say anything. After a moment of thought, Emperor Penelope asked Vortex, I have not seen your family before. State your family and affiliation. I am Vortex von Rovlia, the head of the Rovlia family. The nobles burst into laughter. Despite all his preparations, the result was far from satisfactory. Given the situation, they could not laugh openly. But Vortex, the current head of the Rovlia family, had become quite the laughingstock. I have heard that you seized power by inciting bloodshed over the legitimate succession. You killed Doran, did you not? It was only because those who shared my ideals could not agree with his ideology and could not endure Doran's tyranny. Doran's tyranny. He opened the granaries and saved countless people. I still remember how he asked the Empire for help many times. He embezzled funds, causing many to suffer. It was a lie, but who would know? Vortex tried to solidify his position by discrediting the previous head. But the youngest son of the Reinhaver family, and the Emperor's knight was a stronger opponent than he had imagined. He was far beyond his imagination. Oh, so you are saying that Her Majesty and I are lying now? Vortex glanced up in panic. There, the Emperor was looking down at him with cold eyes. It was said that his father's gaze was like the sun, radiant and warm, but the cold, golden eyes before him were beyond imagination. The rumors were exactly right. The head of the Rovlia family, Vortex, involuntarily shrank back. The Emperor continued, addressing him. You are quite rude, Vortex von Rovlia. Sorry, Your Highness. No, Your Majesty. At Vortex's mistake, the murmurs of the nobles in the social gathering grew louder. That man is done for. How dare he defy the Emperor, the light of the Arkheim Empire, known as the Apostle of the Sunday? Where did such a lowly thing come from? He does not belong at Her Majesty's celebration. Let us kick him out. Various opinions converged. At the same time, Nox made an unavoidable proposal to the Rovlia family. In the name of the Reinhaver family, I formally challenge Vortex von Rovlia to a knight's duel. I swear by the ancient tradition of the Black Sword. I have never lied, and you are not the rightful heir to the Rovlia family. This began to shake Vortex's heart, like the whisper of a cunning snake. It was the beginning of a game where only one survives, and refusing would mean admitting his guilt. This was a perfect event to ignite the noble's excitement. Could he refuse in such a situation? Vortex, the head of the Rovlia family, even in that brief moment, thought this. Even if he is a knight, is he not just someone with a pretty face? Maybe it is just family and political influence that got him there. Of course, that was a natural reaction. Rovlia is a remote family, and does not fully understand how the world works. Nox is just past his coming-of-age ceremony. So he answered carelessly. I hope you will not regret it, Nox von Reinhaver. Little did he know that this answer would take everything from him. In the Reinhaver family's office, a man sat in the low-lit darkness. Across from him, another man with neatly combed hair appeared. The head of the Reinhaver family, Theo von Reinhaver, and Rodwell sat together. The two were about to discuss the future of the family. Of course, there was a matter that needed to be resolved first. Garen von Reinhaver, the eldest young master, died in a duel with the youngest young master. I see. Theo spoke indifferently, but his true feelings were different. He had lost his son. Even though he had rebelled and allied with demons, he was still Theo's son. This had led to direct scrutiny from many vassals. He knew deep down that this would happen. Unless Garen's body was returned after his death, he could not return here after losing his family name. Are you thinking about young Master Garen? No. There is no need to dwell long on someone who abandoned the family name. Rodwell knew that was not true, but did not show it. How could he console the head of the family who had lost his son with words? It was absurd and absolutely impossible. Sadly, he could not help either. He might not even dare to use the word help to the head of the Reinhaver family. But the most important thing was that the family's foundation was gradually deteriorating. Some vassals are questioning why I did not intervene in the imperial struggle. Yes, that seems to be the case. They must think there is no reason for the Reinhaver family not to change this flow when the sun is changing. Even setting aside the Black Sword Knights, you are the only one who knows why I could not move, Rodwell. Yes. Rodwell felt a deep sorrow. His lord was quite weakened. It was no lie when he had said that one of his sons would have to kill him. The curse deeply engraved in his body was taking Theo's strength. No, to be precise, it was taking his life force. It was not that his strength was weakening, but this was the decisive reason why he could not participate in this war. Theo von Reinhaver had only a few chances left to use his strength. If the other vassals find out, they will surely incite internal rebellion and question the Reinhaver family itself. Were his brothers not like that as well? Theo knew that petty power could easily lead someone to ruin. And now, there was no more time to delay. I must pass on my position to that child, even if it is too heavy. Of course, there was no need to explain who would take that position. It was Nox von Reinhaver. He was the true successor of the Black Sword, and the one who had proven his right to be the head by cutting down his blood relative in front of all the vassals. No one but Nox could take the position of the head. That was what Theo and Rodwell thought. But I heard that young Master Nox recently became the knight of the newly crowned emperor. It seems like a difficult matter to easily overcome. I hope he can endure and return safely. It is a matter involving the imperial family. I know. It is dangerous. Yes, I will move soon. I will go to meet the youngest. Prepare for it. You will go personally, my lord. Keep it a secret from the family. No one will listen to a father's heart to meet his son. Understood. I will keep the escort knights as they are. If the vassals find out, they might have dangerous thoughts. Rodwell. At that moment, Rodwell felt a deep sadness at Theo's low voice calling his name. He had already intuitively realized what the head was about to say. Even after I die, protect that child by his side. It was a request as the head of family, but also a request to a friend who had been loyal to him for a long time. It was a hint of the end. In that, Rodwell felt an overwhelming sense of loss as he looked at his lord's face. The body was beginning to weaken. The scene he had tried to ignore began to really show the end now. The sky wept, though it did not rain. It was a day worthy of it, Rodwell thought, unconsciously clenching his fist. Yes, in the training ground prepared for the imperial duel, many nobles and Emperor Penelope had gathered. The person in charge of the duel, young, spoke with a heavy expression. I am young of the Carlos family, Nox von Reinhaver and Vortex von Rovlia. You cannot take each other's lives in this battle, and must fight a noble battle. Remember that any action is allowed until the word defeat is heard from your opponent. We will begin soon, so prepare. Young von Carlos was a man who had long been loyal to the imperial family. He began the preparations for the duel, and a slow, deadly silence flowed through the octagonal training ground. It was natural. Noble battles were quite common, but a battle in such a situation, that is, a battle in the imperial family, was not common. It was only permitted in the worst of the worst cases. But the authority to declare this war was none other than the Emperor's Guard, Nox. He intended to show these nobles not only that he would reclaim Zitri's family, but also what position he had taken on the first day. If he could not move quietly, he would use it from now on. That was Nox's mindset. If I win, you must return the family to the legitimate heir of the Rovlia family, and if you win, I will hand over the treasures of the Rovlia family that I possess. Treasures, you say? When Vortex, standing in the training ground, spoke in surprise, Nox chuckled. Then he had Zitri use his subspace pocket to pull out its contents. Even Zitri did not know what was pouring out. First was the ancient bow of the Rovlia family. It was something the head had used, mainly for hunting. Second was a magical detector for the protective barrier of the family. And third were artifacts for security to keep other families in check. These were all items Vortex had recently traded on the black market to gain the middle name Von with the backing of other families. As he could not hide his surprise, Nox slightly raised the corner of his mouth. Your finances could not have been so bad that you had to put these items on the black market. Your aims are suspicious from the start. Will you really return these items after the duel? Do you not know the oath of the Black Sword? Just before the duel began, Vortex approached and whispered softly. I know. I also know that a brat like you should not mention it lightly. You are trying to swallow the family I raised with absurd logic, but do you think I will let you? You are a joke. Young, who was judging the duel, nodded after the two had sufficiently distanced themselves and opened his mouth. Begin. Whoosh. At that moment, for some reason, the spectators, nobles, emperor, and Zitri's pupils were filled with nothing but flying blood. Something rarely seen in a sword fight, especially since it was not a fight with a wooden sword. But blood had already splattered. What is this? The expressions of those looking down showed a truly shocking scene. Weaklings always have long tongues. There was Nox. To add, Vortex's tongue had been cut off by something sharp, and was rolling on the ground, and blood was splattered everywhere. You cannot declare surrender now, Bug. Nox laughed. Chapter 207. Although nobles can sometimes be cruel, the path to reaching their threshold of stimulation is simpler compared to ordinary commoners. What does this mean? Simply put, it means that a situation like the current one is a significant shock to these so-called nobles. Families where blood splatters and tongues are cut off during sparring, with bodies rolling on the ground, are almost non-existent. This is rare, except for dark families like the Reinhaver. Therefore, the scene before their eyes is truly unbelievable. However, Young, who is in charge of the duel, cannot declare a halt to the match. There are two reasons. First, there is no reason to stop. No matter how Vortex von Reinhaver is in danger, Nox did not use any special techniques. This is something Young, as a former knight, can confidently assert. Nox simply asked if the use of mana was prohibited in a wooden sword duel, and upon being told there were no such restrictions, he enveloped his sword with mana like an aura and struck. Young never anticipated such an outcome. Even if he is a genius, has he already mastered mana to such a high level? A boy not even past 15 years old. Young could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. His bloodshot eyes were fixated on the boy's movements, desperate to keep up. Is this the true talent of the Dark family? Reinhaver, renowned for its swordsmanship, unmatched by anyone. The absurd scene left the audience speechless. At that moment, Nox moved. Slowly yet swiftly, he closed the distance to his opponent. Like a snake, his movements were smooth, occasionally instilling deep fear. Naturally, the one gripped by the greatest fear was none other than Vortex von Reinhaver. Yuri yup. I do not understand what you are saying. Have nobles these days not even learned how to speak properly? Nox's eyes turned cold. His lavender eyes, now icy, continuously read his opponent's movements, delivering repeated blows to Vortex, who was trying to escape and step down from the hexagonal ring. He stabs, slashes, or even breaks bones to immobilize him. When the screams from the broken bones drowned out the voices of the audience, Nox indifferently grabbed Vortex by the hair, lifted him up, and declared, "Imperial Knight, I have heard there are those who gossip behind my back, saying a dark family member like me has risen to such a position. But is it not laughable? While I was climbing to this position, all you could do was chew me out from behind." At that moment, Nox's gaze completely changed from the playful one he had earlier. Nox had already anticipated this situation, where he would be restrained, and that there would be those who would mock and ignore his maid. That is why, as a knight, he clashed swords to show them. Why did he have no choice but to rise to this position? Why, among so many nobles, was he the only one qualified to serve her? It is because all of you are trash. Though his words were harsh, they were not wrong. With the first Prince Louis' ascension to the throne certain, the fact that there were few who supported Emperor Penelope did not need to be mentioned. Many among those gathered here were likely rotting away. Moreover, they were probably pondering what kind of person the Emperor and her newly appointed knight were, how to deal with them, and whether they should initiate a regime change. This duel was Nox's answer to that. Anyone who can rise to this position can stand where I stand. The princess did not rise to her current position by mere luck. Those without ability should hold their tongues to save their own lives. Meanwhile, the emperor began to clap with a noble smile, truly befitting of the emperor's knight. Though your methods are somewhat excessive, that very aspect is the strength and weakness of my knight. The outcome has already been decided. Young von Carlos, declare the victor, and hand over the Reinhaver family to Nox von Reinhaver. Yes, your majesty. The winner of the match is Nox von Reinhaver, the emperor's knight, and the next head of the Reinhaver family. Nox listened, momentarily lost in thought, then knelt before the emperor, fulfilling his duty as a subject. The emperor spoke. What is it? It seems you have a request. The family I have acquired, it is mine, is it not? As if understanding his meaning, she smiled faintly. Nox then continued, addressing someone who had been watching the entire match from behind. It was something Zitri could never have imagined. I wish for the Reinhaver family I have acquired to return to its rightful place. Zitri de Reinhaver. No, I should now call her Zitri von Reinhaver. Nox smiled as he spoke. I hope that all authority as the head of the family will be returned to my maid, the rightful heir. Zitri de Reinhaver. As a child, I was always mentioned as the next head of the family. After all, I was the only child, and I received all the love from my father, Doran, the head of the family, and my mother. It was only natural. Doran de Reinhaver. My father had a solid standing within the family, and most of the vassals shared his vision. He worked hard to open granaries and save countless villagers. Whenever problems arose, he pondered for the sake of the villagers, and refrained from actions that could significantly impact their lives, such as war. That was the beginning of the incident. Because your father and mother were too good of people, I had no choice but to do this. I will not ask for forgiveness. There is no reason to from the beginning. Vortex rationalized it after brutally killing my father and mother. The reason he did not kill me was that I, as a child, bore no responsibility for this situation. He feared the fierce backlash from the villagers, who loved their lord's only daughter, if I were to die. So he spared me. Then, he sent me to the Reinhaver family as a maid, while within the family. In other words, while I was away from the family my father had built, he continued to spread bad rumors about me to tarnish my reputation. Uncle Vortex's goal was always the family, and it had nothing to do with me. Even so, I could do nothing. I wanted to run away. I rather grit my teeth and die, but I could not. Then I met Nox von Reinhaver. At first, I was disappointed by the rumors of him being a ruffian, but it did not take long for me to realize that he had to use such a reputation to survive in his environment. I realized it. Like me, or perhaps in an even more difficult situation, he continued to strive to survive amidst danger. When he believed he had become strong enough, Nox finally took action. He must have trained his sword hundreds, thousands of times, envisioning hundreds of paths in his mind to reach his current position. And he continued to risk his life. But it was not just in battles against demons. Young Master Nox reached this position by constantly fighting against himself. There was nothing he relied on but his own efforts. Ultimately, what made him grow was nothing other than his own desperation. But I could not do that. I came to the Reinhaver family to survive, but even that was not my choice. What did I do to revive the Rovlia family? I spent my days in idleness, reminiscing about my father and mother. But Nox told me, this position was originally mine, and I am merely reclaiming what is rightfully mine. How could that be? I already know what kind of people nobles are. When Theo first made that proposal to me and asked for Nox's surveillance, it was clear. If I did well, he would return the family to me. But in reality, it was no different from expressing his intent to subjugate the Rovlia family under Reinhaver. Such is the nature of noble society. Justice is mostly determined by those in power. Even when a new nation is established and the ruler changes, it ultimately leads to corruption. Yet, reforms from below never properly materialize. The empire ruled by Esteban at its end was one that pushed the wealth gap to the extreme, leading to polarization. To be precise, it was the actions of his second son, Louis, who had lost his grip on power. So, when I saw the young master declare he would return the family to me like magic, I was speechless for a long time. Even as he stood up and approached me, I could do nothing. My feet froze. It was as if they were telling me that if I avoided this situation, I had no right to lead the family. My slightly flushed white neck and reddened eyes turned to my master, Nox von Reinhaver. The once called ruffian now stood with confident shoulders. He had grown over 180 centimeters, a full span taller than me, whose growth had already stopped. He would grow even more. That chest was warmer than anyone else's. I paused, reminiscing, and let out a hiccup only I could hear. In the midst of this, finally, my small, now fully grown, matured young master stood before me. Soon, he declared, Zitri von Rovlia, from now on, you are the next head of the Rovlia family. My heart pounded as if it would burst. The family my parents worked so hard to protect, my everything. I never thought I would regain the Rovlia family so easily. But it was also undeniably bewildering. What kind of emotion is this? I am not sure, but at that moment, I already knew the best decision I could make. That much was certain. I knew what was the best I could do for this young master, and I knew how it would change my life from now on. So I smiled. The nobles would no longer look down on me. They would treat me as an equal. But, thank you, young master, but I must decline. What? Nox narrowed his eyes and asked again, his gaze filled with doubt. But at this moment, I was certain. Returning to the family now, and inheriting my father and mother's will. Of course, it would be good. Not bad. I could reconnect with good people, and might even achieve more. I could become wealthier, fill the granaries with more grain, and save the villagers. I could bring in Professor Lars's newly developed artifacts, improve the territory's facilities, and even develop the family into one of the top families. Of course, this is all assuming everything goes well. But throughout all these processes, I could not help but think. That time, what if young Master Nox is not by my side? Then, would this life have any meaning? If the young master I love so dearly is not by my side, I cannot be happy, even if I achieve all that wealth and glory. I must admit it now. Like the accidental but warm embrace from last night, I feel it. At this moment, I have no choice but to choose to stay by young Master Nox's side and follow him. I wish to follow you, young master, not the Reinhaver family, but you, young master, from now on. Can we postpone the matter of the family for later? So I said, not because I do not want to shoulder my responsibilities, but because I want to see how far this man will go to achieve what he desires. At the same time, I want to show him, the one I love dearly, that I will be there wherever he stops, even if it is in the cold winter with bared teeth. Even if the place he stops is a cold, barren winter, this will not change. Chapter 208. After the third episode concluded, I quickly returned to Eldane Academy. I did this not for any other reason, but because the fourth episode was about to follow. The third episode, the Imperial Throne Struggle, and the fourth episode, the Night of White Flame, are connected. Moreover, it is finally the part where the main story crosses the midpoint and heads toward its conclusion. While the intervals between the first and third episodes were quite long, from the third episode onward, the story continues uninterrupted until the fifth episode. This marks the end of part 1 of Inner Lunatic. As is often the case with stories, the closer it gets to the end, the more intense it becomes. For example, if we divide the progression of a novel into 5 stages, such as introduction, development, crisis, climax, and conclusion, this would correspond to the crisis to climax stage. Inner Lunatic was no exception to this. Young master, I have prepared the tea. All right. You seem deep in thought again today. Are you still concerned about the Rovlia family matter? At Zidri's words, I unintentionally shot her a slightly sharp glance. Being kind is one thing, but there is a limit. How could anyone refuse an opportunity to reclaim their family's position? At least, I would never have refused. Of course, Is it not a hard-earned position? Even though Reinhaver and I are protecting your family, I do not understand why you made that choice. It was a perfect chance to return to nobility. No matter how I thought about it, it was hard to comprehend. Zitri had finally gotten the chance to return to the position she had longed for. The position her uncle had taken from her. She could have returned to her rightful home, the one her parents had left her. But why did she not? Even I could not figure it out. Since Zitri was just an extra in the game from the start, there were not many lines dedicated to her, and I am not particularly quick-witted. Was this really the best choice? Even if it was a choice made for me, was it truly the wisest decision for Zitri? Then, Zitri spoke with a somewhat gloomy voice and expression. Young master, do you really not understand the reason? I did not answer and just tilted my head in confusion. Zitri let out a faint, regretful sigh. Please do not worry too much. It is my choice. As I have said before, I still believe I am needed by your side. It might be an overestimation of my worth, but I am simply fulfilling my duty as a maid. Please do not dwell on it too much. Well, it is good for me. Only then did Zitri smile faintly. Well, having Zitri, who is so devoted, by my side is better for me. In inner Lunatic, where there are few people I can trust, what is my position? I am a spy for both the criminal organization Lunatic and the Academy, which is the Imperial family's military training institution. In short, I am in a position where it is easy to get killed. Like the ticking hand of a bomb inside my heart right now. Damn it. Lunatic probably sees me as a despicable traitor, right? They assigned me as a spy to bring down the Arkheim Empire, but I ended up being appointed as the second Emperor's Guard Knight. What kind of situation is this? But there is no way out. Anyway, Luna is my master. To master all the techniques of the Moonlight Sword and reach a higher position, I naturally need to spend more time with my teacher and learn more from her. Therefore, I have the duty to convince Luna. I must explain that I did not sit in that position because I wanted to. I must tell her that Emperor Penelope placed me there according to her own will. If I explain it properly, she will probably beat me to near death and then forgive me. Fortunately, Luna is merciful, so I do not have to worry too much. Probably. That is the most ideal ending I can imagine. Marin, that punk will not egg her on to beat me more, will she? While I was lost in these trivial thoughts, Zitri pulled out a thick parchment sealed with wax, containing an official document from Eldane Academy. It had arrived recently, but I had not read it yet. You have not checked it yet? Shall I read it for you? Please. As expected, seeing how bothersome this is, it is good that Zitri is staying with me. She is not bad at this sort of thing, either. Zitri held the document and quickly summarized its contents. Eldane Academy has officially declared the end of the emergency caused by the terror attack by the first Prince Louis, and has decided to return the Academy to normal operations. Starting next week, everything will be back to normal. It seems classes will resume. Not bad. The sooner this incident is resolved, the better. Even though the first Prince Louis was a damn trash and a bad ending maker, he was the former emperor's son, Esteban's only son. It is true that many people followed him, but if news spreads that he repeatedly attacked innocent civilians and caused numerous casualties, this would not be good for the second emperor, Penelope. I do not want another bad ending maker to emerge. Starting next week, school. I need to take care of some things before then. The Imperial throne struggle. The ripple effects of the third main episode are no joke. Countless factions rose and fell. Like moths to a flame, countless people left behind faint traces before disappearing. Moreover, in such dire times, there are always those who profit. For example, someone like me. Let us go, Zitri. Ha, young master, where are you going? To make money. It is time to reap the rewards. Zitri tilted her head in confusion. Though she looked puzzled, the smile on my lips did not fade. Now, Chatters will reach a new peak of prosperity. Of course, some underhanded methods will be necessary. With Garen's death, the Elders' Council will quiet down for a while. Patriarch, I think it is time to make a decision. If not young Master Nox, there may be no one left to protect the Reinhaver family. The Reinhaver family. The conversation between the two echoed quietly in the family's head chamber. It was Rodwell and Theo. They believed that after the death of Garen von Reinhaver, the first son who had lost the Reinhaver name, it was finally time to select a new candidate for the family head. They could delay no longer. That was Rodwell's thought. It was not hard to understand. Garen von Reinhaver. If they did not quickly appoint the youngest, Nox, as the new successor, while the faction supporting the eldest son was weakened, a rebellion within the family might break out. It was fortunate that Theo was still alive, but ultimately, Nox von Reinhaver would have to bear the brunt of this anger. He was still a young and immature talent. In this situation, the best Theo could do was to create the conditions to protect Nox until he could take over the family. If uncles who had supported Garen targeted Nox, whose political foundation was weak, his life could be in danger. This was something Theo absolutely did not want. Rodwell, as if reading his thoughts, continued. Your health continues to deteriorate, Patriarch. You have not been able to break free from the curse passed down from your ancestors. If you were to suddenly collapse, it would truly be a disaster. Rodwell. I know, but I cannot help but wonder. The youngest, Nox. Will he even want to sit in this position? He is the child who always said he hated me. The child who said he would kill me. Ironically, that is why I can trust him, but is it not too much to burden him with this responsibility as well? Yet, the reason Theo still had not publicly declared him as his successor was precisely that. The fear that Nox might not want to succeed him, in addition to the anxiety that he might not be able to help him. Because of this, Theo could not declare him as his heir, his son. Though he was not a child cradled in the warmth of love, he was a bird that had broken out of its nest alone. This position was too restrictive for someone who soared so high. Surely, would Nox even want it? Honestly, he is not sure. Nox von Reinhaver, a prodigy, a genius, the top student at an academy filled with such talents, and someone with once-in-a-generation talent. He had even heard rumors that he has begun to master magic. In his age group, there is no one who can match him. That existence exactly is Nox. But how much influence could his existence have? A glory? Even without something like that, his son could make a name for himself on the continent. I became certain of that after this incident. Even without the Reinhaver name, Nox, his child, would ultimately be sung in the most beautiful verses of the continent's epic. I believe the young master will someday understand your intentions, Patriarch. If I do not die before then, is he not already a mature person? Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I have never imagined a future where the family was passed to any other young master. However, young Master Nox was different. From the beginning, he sought to prove his own path. Rodwell bowed his head and continued. You once said that the strong are always lonely. I dare not claim to understand, but there is no way the young master would not understand you, Patriarch. So I think it is best to confess before it is too late. About Madame's affairs and why you could not protect everyone. But there is still one unresolved issue. His qualifications for management. The Elders' Council will likely want to verify whether young Nox has the ability to maintain the family's prestige, and even advance it further. No matter how talented Nox is, this will not be easy. Indeed, that part is difficult to predict, so I hesitate to speak of it. Rodwell had pondered the family's future for a long time, but ultimately concluded there was only one answer. Of course, Theo is also the same. Rodwell spoke his thoughts in a measured tone. Nevertheless, if there is someone to succeed you, my lord, it must be young Master Nox. Perhaps it would be best to discuss the family's management and well-being with the young master in the near future. You are right, Rodwell. I do not have much time left. Theo nodded as if he had made up his mind. Summon Nox. In the name of the family, I will formally announce him as my official successor, the new head of Reinhaver, and that he will inherit the new Black Sword form. I will announce all of this at the Elders' Council. The rest can be explained to Nox later. Theo made his decision after thinking this. Rodwell immediately bowed. Yes, understood. It had finally begun. Rodwell clenched his fist as he thought this. For the sake of his lord, he absolutely did not want the position of family head to fall into the hands of anyone else. Nox von Reinhaver. Not just because he was Theo's youngest son and favored. The position of the Reinhaver family head must be held by the most outstanding individual. Only the strongest could save Reinhaver in this era of chaos where only the strong survive. In his humble opinion, there was only one person who could succeed Theo, and even aspire to the position of Sword Emperor. Also, though it was a personal wish, I want to serve young Master Nox by his side. I do not know how much time I have left, but I too want to see how far young Master Nox can go. To say this in advance, the old man's wish was about to come true, though in a way completely different from what they had imagined. Chapter 209. The commercialization of the fixed coordinate portal magic is now just around the corner. Professor Lars recently said to me with a proud tone. By the way, Professor Lars also added this remark. If what you say is true, then soon you too, like the Rivalan family, will become one of the wealthiest figures on the continent. No, in history. It was truly a beautiful resonance, and also a glimpse of the glorious future that awaited me. Moreover, the beginning of this story originates from my first jurisdiction, Chatters. Chatters was my first jurisdiction, obtained when I accompanied Grain on his night promotion mission. There are several main reasons for acquiring this place, but the biggest reason is undoubtedly the securing of vast funds. In other words, it is profitable. Basically, the corpses of magical beasts and magic stones are valuable. Additionally, various materials from magical beasts are favored by blacksmiths. Derived equipment and enhancement items literally rot away here in Chatters. This variety is so diverse and the quantity so vast that disposal is difficult, which was a huge help to me, who had no foundational influence. It is only natural, considering the improvement of various qualitative resources, the advancement of high-level magic, and the gold inflation that will start in the late game. It is necessary to amass vast wealth now, and utilize it. It is also true that we need to prepare in advance. Suddenly, while I was deep in thought, Zitri looked around and spoke up. We have arrived in Chatters as per your request, young master, but may I ask why you have visited this place? Following the Academy's curriculum is already quite challenging, and timing-wise, it does not seem ideal. Zitri, do you have any idea what the true value of this land is? She asked. Zitri's eyes widened in surprise, but I remained expressionless and cautiously approached, grabbing the wooden fence. It was part of the village's internal facilities that had recently been repaired. I was now climbing a ladder at a construction site surrounded by walls, and the view of the completely transformed village below was quite thrilling. Zitri hesitated before answering. Well, I dare not fully comprehend your intentions, young master, she cautiously continued, somewhat reading the room. It is certainly a land of gold. Indeed, you have amassed vast wealth from the gold earned here, and I have no objections to that part. But, I asked, Recently, I think it is a bit different. Not only have you upgraded the walls and fences to the latest, but you have also taken care of the war victims and delivered substantial condolence payments to their families. Almost all the profits generated in Chatters recently have been reinvested, as expected of a maid with the genius helper trait. In fact, Zitri is right. Initially, we gained quite a lot, but recently, almost all the profits from Chatters have been reinvested. For the development of the village, of course, that reason cannot be denied either. Even in this rotten world, I still cannot let go of the faint hope, close to an incomplete thread, sleeping inside me like a small ember. As I have said before, this is no more than a meager line of virtue left as Joachim. But my obsession with Chatters is not just for that reason. The reasons are as follows. First, this is the first stage of activity for the ruffian Nox. If we slowly build a foundation, it will be more advantageous when facing the demons we will confront later. Originally, this was a military facility, and although Chatters was a poverty-stricken city that could not even afford repairs, it was a place that once held back monster waves. Its utility value is sufficient. Is that all? In the past, I not only cut off the Tigan and Ron Knight Order corruptions that were eating away at Chatters, but also dealt with the mid-high-level magical beast, the Griffin. Thanks to that, Nox is now revered like a king in this place. Here, even Emperor Penelope would not be envied. Second, this is an area connected to several allied nations and small cities. This means that small and weak countries and cities rely on each other and barely maintain their form. Naturally, many of these weak nations have no intention of independence or politics. If we can unite and gather them, naturally, it will be possible to expand our influence. This will greatly help in extending the lifespan of the Sunfish Nox. Third, what Professor Lars said, the popularization of portals. This is actually the most important. In fact, portals have existed for a long time. Naturally, but the trend is slightly different from before. Portals are, of course, a means of transportation allowed only to a select few. It was aristocratic, and even using such an expression would be understandable given the outrageous costs required for portals in the past. Have I not explained this before? Because all knights and mages had to ride horses across battlefields, the Reinhaver family revered horses as sacred and considered them lifelong companions. This reason also plays a part in the enormous portal usage fees. From now on, many things will really change. Chatters will become a new hub for international exchange. I will do my best to make it so. Finally, I smiled as I thought about the purpose of my arrival here. Now Chatters will no longer be a fierce battleground between magical beasts and humans, but one of the central trading hubs on this vast continent. For this, I have just met a few necessary conditions. Just in time. It is a strange duo though. Hey, Nox. Nox von Reinhaver. What on earth made you call someone as busy as me? Well, not that I dislike it, but I would like to know the reason. From a distance, I could see Grain and Eleanor, the head of the Rivalin merchant group. Her striking reddish-brown hair, expensive accessories, and pale skin were still impressive. Grain, being somewhat similar to Nox, can be understood as a slightly uglier version of Nox. But the appearances of other characters are truly surprising every time I see them. Besides, Eleanor is one of the heroines, and talking about her would only tire my mouth. I want to talk business. You have a lot of money, right? As I looked around and brought up the topic, Eleanor's eyes narrowed. What business are you planning to get into this time? The sales rights for magical beast corpses and magic stone transactions were recently renegotiated and finalized. Are there other contracts to be signed in Chatters? Perhaps. Even though I have received help from you, I am still a merchant. As the head of the Rivalin merchant group, I will not accept any contracts that are not suitable. Really? Eleanor was silent for a moment, but I decided to respect her pride as a merchant. I looked around nonchalantly and continued carefully. Right, I know. That is why I have brought an offer you cannot refuse. An offer I cannot refuse. For a moment, did she smell money? Eleanor's eyes sparkled. Her radar is sharp. Oh ho, that is interesting. Grain also chimed in. Actually, I called him to manage the nearby area. The title of knight, and the huge justification of being the second son of the Reinhaver family. Moreover, albeit a bit cringe, being my elder brother made Grain the optimal choice for such troublesome matters. Unaware of this, Grain now looks at me with almost reverent eyes to the point where I feel a bit sorry. Of course, I am not actually sorry at all. After glancing at both of them for a moment, I took out a document from my pocket and unfolded it in front of them. It was a recent paper Professor Lars gave me about the popularization of portals. Still unpublished, but what is my current position? I am Professor Lars's top disciple. If it is only this level, it is easy to bring such things. Ha, isn't this Professor Lars's confidential document? When Eleanor looked at me with a hint of envy, I answered with a bit of pride. Yes, that is right. As the top disciple, I can easily access such materials. You are right, I have nothing to say. My little brother has done it again. The popularization of portals will become a new source of revenue for the business world, and father will be pleased. Grain was the first to recognize its value and spoke excitedly. Eleanor, with her arms crossed, continued. Right. If portals become popularized, the range of trade will extend much further, possibly even reaching the western regions. That place has many hidden things, and the passage itself is tricky, making trade difficult. Right. But to make money from the commercialization of portals, one thing is necessary: a hub for trade, that is, a large piece of land for buildings and human resources. In other words, laborers will be needed. At Zidri's words, I smiled and nodded. Right. As you know, Chados is vast. Excluding the imperial family, it is the place where the most money flows, aside from being dangerous. There are so many laborers that it is almost a problem, but Chados has one undeniable big issue. Magical beasts appear, and bandits occasionally raid merchants' carriages. Eleanor was quick to understand, and that is why she is a star in the business world. I quickly added, right. But if this city rapidly develops with vast funds, and if we recruit and deploy night orders, not only to handle magical beasts, but also to manage the city's security, most problems will be solved. Cushion from Tehalan Kingdom will also help, then the profits from defeating magical beasts will continue to increase, and bandits trying to cause trouble in the trade hub will disappear. Eleanor pondered for a moment and then nodded, seeming to understand quite quickly. All right, let us invest. Good. The initial payment will be 3 billion gold. 10 billion gold. Without looking in a mirror, it is hard to say for sure, but my current expression must be filled with shock. Burning 10 billion gold on a startup business is unheard of, even for the head of the Rivalan family. This is a bit excessive. No, it is better to hear the whole story before deciding. As I was unconsciously trying to dissuade her, Eleanor suddenly smiled like a fox and continued. There is a bit of personal greed involved. Of course, it is not about goods or money, but there is something I want, so I am trying to win your favor in advance. She wrote something on the contract she was holding and showed it to me. They say the more money, the better. Eleanor covered her mouth with her fingers for a moment and then removed it. Then, as if she already knew the answer, she continued nonchalantly. How about it? You will accept my investment, right? Chapter 210. Grand Duke. In Europe, it refers to the crown prince of a royal family, the husband of a queen, or the monarch of a small nation. However, in Inner Lunatic, it carries a slightly more limited meaning. It refers to those among demons who have received the title of duke and stand at the pinnacle of calamities. Among the nobility, these are the ones who wield power sufficient to establish a nation. Arrogantly, demons possessing immense power refer to themselves as Grand Dukes, and have gone so far as to disrupt the order of the continent. In the medieval era, as well as in Inner Lunatic, those who have been granted the title of Duke are extremely few. For instance, families with significant influence, like Reinhaver, or the other three great dark families. Or, like the sacred family of the Xenos, which Echidna belongs to. Those who have succeeded in expanding their influence by assisting the emperor and their family at their side are the ones who typically receive such titles. The Stilliner family, based on their exploits during the Unification War. The Marvas family, recognized for single-handedly collapsing the entire eastern region with an undead army during the war. Each family rose to the position of duke for their own reasons and gained the right to use the middle name von. This is the value of being a duke in Inner Lunatic and the arduous journey to reach that position. The same goes for demons, a position that even the subordinates of Baal, the Grand Duke of the first hierarchy, can barely attain. That is the Grand Duke. Such Grand Dukes can directly receive the blood of Baal, the first-ranking demon. They establish themselves as chosen demons and gain the qualification to rise even higher. Anyway, whether in the human world or the hell where demons reside, becoming a Grand Duke has one advantage: the ability to have their own autonomous territory. Simply put, it means having land, slaves, and power in their own hands. This was an innovative yet dangerous system in feudal society. No matter how outstanding a family might be, they could establish their retreat in a place beyond the king's reach. This system signified the king's trust in the duke, but it was also evidence that the current monarchy's authority was weak. Why am I elaborating on this? Though I feel sorry for Penelope, she has not yet grasped the power of the central. To establish my foundation here, the conquest of weak nations and the establishment of a principality would be the most effective approach. Here in Chatters, Eleanor and I are leading the establishment of a principality. We are pouring vast capital and necessary investments into building structures, mobilizing the required army, and creating a trade hub for myself. The defensive walls should be sufficient for now. With the recent decrease of magical beasts movement, His Majesty King Kushan Adrian has readily agreed to dispatch troops. A smile spreads across my lips at Zitri's report. This is not a bad situation. If we can mobilize Kushan's army, we can have the desert warriors under our command at almost no cost. They are undoubtedly the best warriors for fighting in barren environments. First, the 3 billion gold should be used as planned for the construction of various buildings and facilities. The most important is the residential areas, followed by waterway inspections and talent placement. Eleanor, it seems like you are taking this more seriously than I thought. It is a 10 billion gold project, is it not? Please overlook this level of light involvement. Of course, you are our major shareholder, after all. After exchanging some light banter with Eleanor, I turn my attention to the map. Currently, we are gathered in a temporary tent, standing around the unfolded map. It is good if we erect Nox's statue here. Let us consider Brother's opinion moderately and move on to the next agenda. After naturally dismissing Grain's opinion, I move on to the next agenda. The funds are secured. Food and necessary supplies are also secured. But the most important thing is the request for cooperation from other nations. There are many weak nations around here. They have almost no power, but taking their trade rights without permission is something only a thug would do. The biggest problem is that Emperor Penelope would not just stand by and watch such a thing. The process of subjugating the surrounding nations will not be difficult. Just give each what they desire most. Usually, it can be resolved with gold. Therefore, I plan to allocate about half of the remaining 7 billion gold to them. We will distribute funds for the relief of the poor and sign national handover contracts. This way, the subjugation of the nations around Traitorous will be achieved, and as the autonomous territory expands, the scale of the Traitorous principality will gradually grow. Of course, not everyone will be happy. For those waiting to die day by day, change is frightening. That is not all. Ultimately, these movements will reach Penelope's ears, but she would not kill me, her life's benefactor. After all, Penelope is not that kind of villainous character. In a way, I am using her now. Anyway, Zitri, contact all the surrounding principalities and small cities. Tell them that the youngest of the Reinhaver family, Nox von Reinhaver, wishes to see them personally. If they do not accept, things might get unpleasant, so it would be best to be careful. Young master, are you a hero or a villain? I am not sure what rhythm to follow, but I think he is closer to being a hero. Eleanor sides with me, but it is a conversation I do not hear. No matter what they say, I am currently enchanted by the demonic word wealthiest from Lars. Then, let us move. With the order given, Zitri, Eleanor, and Grain begin to move in unison. The wealthiest project has begun. Nox, that kid is making moves. It is true that he contacted the principalities and small cities around Traitorous to meet them personally. Yes, that is correct. Butzwil von Reinhaver. Butzwil von Reinhaver, the only one-eyed man of the Reinhaver family, with a severely distorted expression, scrutinizes the face of the subordinate reporting to him. No matter how you look at it, those are not the eyes of someone lying. After causing trouble recently, ultimately, he intends to expand his influence beyond Traitorous. Nox von Reinhaver. Butzwil was furious. Butzwil von Reinhaver was one of the family's elders, who had made a name for himself alongside Theo during the night of slaughter in which Theo had participated. Of course, as widely known, he had not performed any remarkable feats, merely scuffling with mid to low-level demons in a corner, but that fact was not particularly important. Butzwil's in-laws were the Arkheim Empire's top newspaper, the Midday Sunday, the lofty imperial family. It was a name created in honor of the founding king, Esteban, and Butzwil had used his in-laws' influence to pour out favorable articles about himself, solidifying his current position. In terms of influence, he was just below the direct line that had fallen with Garin. However, he had one Achilles heel. His base for building his influence was near Traitorous, in a weak nation. In other words, the very place where Nox was currently expanding his influence. If this continues, he might even exert influence over the Palmer Kingdom, where we are involved. We must stop him at all costs. We cannot afford to be pushed aside. You understand, right, Euphina? Yes, I understand. But it seems it is already too late. My apologies. What? Young Master Nox von Reinhaver has agreed to provide 1 billion gold for the relief of the poor in exchange for the transfer of the kingdom's sovereignty. If we consider the value of 1 billion gold to a weak nation, absolutely not. Damn it. We will go with 2 billion gold. It is a chance to grow our influence. We must stop him at all costs. But that amount is difficult for us to manage easily. Our internal situation has not been good recently. Idiot. Do you not understand the situation? Butzwil, as if suffocated, pounded his chest and continued. Garin is dead. The legitimate heir of the Reinhaver family is dead, and he committed the family's absolute taboo by being possessed by a demon. What does that tell you? Our opportunity has come. Yes, the ability to wield a sword or magic is different from the ability to manage a family. Nox, I know that he was lucky enough to gain control of the Traitorous region, which allowed him to amass a tremendous amount of gold coins. However, in the long run, you will pass on the family to someone who can lead Reinhaver and prosper the family. If it is the Theo von Reinhaver I know, that is what will happen. Aha. Only then does the servant seem to realize, nodding his head as Butzwil curses. Damn it. Useless, every single one of them. I apologize. Then I will try to persuade the Palmer Kingdom with 1.2 billion gold. Send a letter to the king. Tell him to behave wisely if he does not want to spit out all the funds we have supported him with. Yes, understood. Butzwil sighs, burdened by the pressure on the Palmer Kingdom. Soon, he quickly contacts his in-laws through a magic stone. He then contacts the Midday Sun to prepare an article. As if already certain of his victory, he plans to prepare an article proving his management skills. Either way, raising 2 billion gold would be impossible for Nox. Moreover, I have heard that Traitorous has recently spent too much on relief efforts, resulting in almost zero profit. How laughable. Is that brat being swayed by emotions? Nox von Reinhaver. I will teach him that politics is a real battle. Butzwil laughs, baring his white teeth. Palmer Kingdom. Passing through the Grand Hall and the reception room, we enter the interior. Being a weak and small kingdom, it is not much, but the scale is quite small. Of course, it is incomparable to Traitorous, but it is still disappointing. Even compared to the Reinhaver family, it is too small. Well, it cannot be helped. Heading towards the king's throne, I see Pulitz standing there awkwardly. He was the king of the Palmer Kingdom. Ah, young Master Nox, we have been waiting. You wished to see me. The moment I saw his trembling mustache, I was certain. Butzwil von Reinhaver. He has already made his move. He must have sent a letter to this mentally weak fellow to attack. How despicable. What a thug. Even if someone threatening his influence appeared, we are still family. Yet, to restrain someone as dark-hearted as me, it might be acceptable behavior for the Reinhaver family, but at least I will not overlook it. As Zitri is about to bow to the king, I quickly stop her. Then, very naturally, as if I were a ruffian, I achieve a state of unity and glare straight ahead with a fierce expression before shouting, "How dare you not bow to me? Do you have 2 lives? Yes, I am the king though. Kneel first. Then tell me who is behind you." Gasp. Correct answer. For such a mentally weak person, fear is the best medicine. No matter how urgent the negotiation is, that is the next issue. Sudatomo. Pulitz, before I exercise my authority, as a direct son of the Reinhaver family, confess everything. While I still have patience. As I quietly raise my mana, a confession bursts forth. I even heard about his affair while married. He must think I am some pardon-selling merchant. Fortunately, he is trash. So I can torment him without feeling guilty. At that moment, since I am thinking something like that, am I really a good person? Anyway, things are flowing positively for us. Except for one thing that will happen later. So Nox has gotten involved in a new business in Chatters. As Theo says with a satisfied smile, Rodwell nods. Yes, it seems he is considering succeeding as the family head and follow your path, patriarch. Seeing him trying to prove his management skills like this, I've Rodwell, am moved to tears seeing young Master Nox grow so splendidly. I heard the full story of this dizzying conversation after my business succeeded. It was a truly regrettable incident. Chapter 211. Most of the surrounding weak nations raised the white flag and surrendered as soon as they heard the name Reinhaver. The reason is simple. It is because the power of the Reinhaver family is unmatched. Moreover, due to the aftermath of this imperial throne struggle, I have even become the Emperor's direct knight. Naturally, others assume that the Reinhaver family and the Arkheim Empire have formed a mutually beneficial relationship. Anyone skilled in reading the situation would have already made that judgment. The Reinhaver family is at the pinnacle of power, capable of doing anything. Of course, this is merely speculation, made without foreseeing the end of Part 1, where Theo's body will be possessed by a demon. The downfall of the Reinhaver family is foreseen, at least according to the story of Inner Lunatic that I played. That is why I have no choice but to focus more on Chatters. A predetermined future is difficult to change. Stories do not change easily. To alter a raging current, more strength than usual is always required. Fate occasionally tests humans, ultimately leading them to the worst predetermined outcome. At least, that is how it has been so far. I have modified countless chapters in my own way and tried to change the ending. But the countdown to my death, the overarching premise, continues. It is safe to say that the final destination of this long battle is still far away. That is the reason I must keep moving forward. Who can create an opportunity called next for a boy who is terminally ill with limited time? Only me. Nox von Reinhaver. If it is not me, who crash-landed into this world, there is nothing that can protect me in the worst situations that may come. The same goes for my companions. They cannot fully protect me, and I no longer want them to get hurt. Even if this goes against the identity Nox originally had, I now sincerely believe this is the best choice. Which nations are left now? Ossel, Namond, Sizia Kingdom, and some small cities. They have expressed their intention to unite and oppose Reinhaver, and they have even spread baseless rumors, daring to call you, young master, a conqueror who forcibly seizes nations. Zidri's voice was cold and heavy, filled with frost. It was enough to upset Zitri, whose loyalty could not be overstated, to see her master insulted. From their perspective, it might be natural to think that way. After all, we are trying to swallow up the nations they rule. I cannot understand how they can think that way, even though their people are shivering in the cold, trembling under the constant threat of magical beasts, and receiving no help. They have already lost their function as nations. For the sake of the people of the Arkheim Empire, someone has to do this. Right. I think so too. But someone will inevitably distort this story and rewrite it in their own manner. I can be the villain, the hero, or anything in between, but one thing is certain. I exhaled a white breath of steam before continuing. History will inevitably be written from the winner's perspective. So we must win, as only the survivors have a future reserved for them. Just like how Garen and the first Prince Louis von Arkheim died, while Emperor Penelope and I survived. Yes, young master. I took a moment to organize my thoughts. Zitri probably understood my meaning. Right or wrong, even if it can only be expressed that way, the world requires far more modifiers. What about the Allied forces troops? How are they? They have reportedly gathered up to 10,000. But as I mentioned, they are not in a state to fight effectively due to a lack of proper provisions. I held a glove in my mouth and put it on, preparing for battle. Even though we are dealing with a ragtag coalition, we must strategize and move carefully to minimize casualties. After all, the people are innocent. Why are the leaders refusing to surrender and opposing the Reinhaver family? There is only one reason. It is not profitable for them. No matter how small the city or kingdom, no one who once ruled freely would willingly bow their head to someone else, especially if that someone is the Reinhaver family, led by a boy who just turned 15 and barely out of being a newborn. It is only natural that they would resist. That is why they must have thought that they could do it too, or that the rumors about Nox von Reinhaver were exaggerated. They believed that if they united their forces, they could take me down. It is a delusion born from ignorance of the continent's political climate and world affairs, but they genuinely believe it. Otherwise, they would not just sit back and watch their nations crumble. Emperor Penelope said something similar. He called the traitorous region and the barren eastern lands the shadow of the former emperor's past light. At first, I was quite surprised by this. Penelope respected his father, a light who embraced his people with a heart of benevolence. No one would dispute the achievements of the Sun King Esteban during his reign, and Penelope was no exception. However, Penelope knows that his father gradually fell into ruin, earning the disgraceful nickname of the foolish emperor, his eyes holding a deep abyss, having lost their brightness. I remember his face, not one of excellence but one steeped in darkness. This region of Chados is where the embers of the southern lands, which he failed to fully quell, still burn. A place where fragile lives shine even brighter, because they could shatter at any moment. To be honest, that is why I took Chados. Because if I do not save it with my own hands, it will disappear. Enough of the headache-inducing thoughts. I calmly said to Zitri. I will minimize the damage as much as possible. It will not be difficult, but make sure the preparations are thorough. There is no reason to create unnecessary casualties. Young Master Grain has already made the preparations. It seems they will be done soon. Shall we depart as soon as everything is ready? Yes. I will lead the vanguard, place the ambush troops and the encircling soldiers across the ridges, and let Prim command the remaining small squads. He needs some real combat experience. I am a bit worried about whether that Prim will do well though. Well, do not worry, just watch, I said confidently. Prim definitely has the ability. Otherwise, I would not have put up with his ridiculous personality. He will adapt soon enough. If I find the right carrot, it will help him grow even more. If I lose him here, where else can I find a unit with the genius of command trait? Besides, even though Prim's personality is trash, once he is loyal, he stays loyal to the end. That is not bad. The problem is that he is not loyal yet. At that moment, Zitri handed me a folder of documents, while looking oddly proud. Still, in just a few days, so many nations have surrendered to you, young Master Nox. In this barren and harsh southern region, this is truly remarkable. Congratulations. Of course, there is still much to do, but I do not mind the praise. I casually brushed it off. There are not many who would refuse a massive amount of gold coins. Besides, the power the Reinhaver family holds now is immense. It is largely thanks to you, young Master Nox. For a direct Imperial Knight to emerge from a dark family is an unbelievable achievement. Your name is already being praised across the continent. What praise? Those people must have too much free time. I grimaced, and Zitri laughed in response. Is it not a sign that people's perception of you is changing, young master? I like it. Well, it is fortunate that there is at least one person that likes it. Nox. The army's preparations are complete. Shall we depart now? At that moment, Grain's voice came from a distance. It seems we might finish things in Chatters earlier than expected, which is not a bad thing. Are the supplies fully secured? In the worst-case scenario, we cannot rule out the possibility of them holding a siege. Grain, as if he had been waiting, placed a hand on his chest and replied, Do not worry. We have prepared enough food and potions to last 3 months. By the way, was it Erina, a commoner who can make such potions? She even managed to simplify the formula for mass-producing recovery potions. It is incredible. You have changed a lot, brother. This is also a new development. Grain von Reinhaver was nothing more than villain extra number 1, a man who lived by his own will and never bowed his head. He once thought commoners were no better than pests, but he has slowly started to change and improve. A warm smile spread across my face. Is this what it feels like to have a brother who resembles me? Suddenly, a small sense of fulfillment bloomed in this lonely world where I might have been nothing. All right, let us depart at the designated time. Any objections? The Anti-Reinhaver Coalition, as the name suggests, was an army organized to oppose the Reinhaver family. It rose for the safety of the people to resist the narrow-minded and inferior offensive of Reinhaver. Despite the grand cause, there were no soldiers loyal to the upper ranks. As evidence, the coalition's sentries were anxiously waiting for the Reinhaver army, unsure when they would arrive. No, so when is that Nox guy supposed to attack? How should I know? Just be ready, as do you think they will announce their attack? Damn it. Other nations have already surrendered, so what are we even doing here? What can we do? The higher UPS are rotten, but we cannot just surrender and leave our families behind. Even if we die here, there is no answer. What a miserable life. Ah, damn it. If they are coming, they should just come already. How long do we have to sit here? A mysterious voice interrupted the sentries' conversation, a voice they had never heard before. It sounded slightly youthful, but it was strangely filled with a bit of hostility. The thought that something was off spread quickly among the sentries as a boy revealed himself. Nox von Reinhaver, the enemy of the coalition, was the behemoth devouring the south. It seems you have been waiting for me. Gasp. Everyone, get ready. A voice came from somewhere. It is the enemy. As the sentry panicked, Nox, who had not even fully revealed himself, cut in with a playful voice. I will give you a chance. Nox's voice echoed loudly, reaching deep into the coalition's ranks. Surrender now and open the gates, and I will spare you. But if you do not surrender, a small crack had already formed within the Anti-Reinhaver coalition. Chapter 212. I will give you a chance. Surrender now and open the gates, and I will spare you. But if you do not, I will kill everyone as an act of defiance against the Reinhaver family. I will not give you a second chance, so keep that in mind. Ah, and one more thing. I have already rescued the civilians who are not soldiers, so I hope you make a wise decision. Thug. The cracks in the anti-Reinhaver coalition spread in an instant. The words that came from Nox's mouth were enough to plunge anyone into a state of panic. What was the cohesion of the soldiers held here like from the beginning? It was not built on dedication or loyalty to the nation. While many nations have such people, the situation here was even worse. These were nations created solely to fill the pockets of those at the top. Even the so-called allied forces were nothing more than a ragtag group of men conscripted from those who had no prior interaction. They were a disorganized mob, lucky if they had ever held a farming tool like a sickle in their lives. From the start, I had no intention of fighting them head-on. That is why I used Prim to organize a retreating force back to the mountain ridge. By now, they had already crushed a few squads and taken the hostages. Haha, my brother is truly too merciful. To think of rescuing the families of soldiers who opposed you first, they should be grateful for your generosity. Grain approached me as I sent a message to the enemies through the crystal orb. As he said, I knew that the enemies would use the soldiers' families as hostages to fight me. The more one has to protect, the weaker one becomes. Some say that this can also make one stronger. But in most cases, the fear of losing what one holds dear is the most terrifying. Why is there not a story like this? It is about forcing soldiers to kill their own families in a foreign land before sending them to the battlefield, driving them to seek death. Such tales often come from the lowly bards living at the bottom of the continent. That is why I gave them hope. It was a small spark, but one that could grow into a blazing fire at any moment. I gave them a small chance to protect what was precious to them. Whether they accept it or not is up to them to decide. By the way, the country is rotten to the core. They opened the gates of the capital for a few gold coins, and the so-called sentinels fled long ago. Well, it is a good result for us. It is a chaotic time, after all. I can understand their feelings. How many would want to stay loyal to a doomed nation? True enough, Grain casually replied, glancing at the countless soldiers below. A scale that would make any knight's chest swell with pride. It took considerable effort to mobilize a force of this scale. The first was funding. This was contributed by me, Grain, and Eleanor. Zitri also helped diligently with managing the accounts. Genius units are indeed different. Grain was quite resourceful too, and it is surprising. The second was public opinion, which was filled by my previous efforts. And the most important, the final piece, was the imperial family's permission. To obtain the qualification to mobilize a force of this scale, I did not have to put in much effort. The reason was as follows. I appoint you as the Emperor's Knight, Nox von Reinhaver. The Emperor's Knight. The weight and privilege that came with it. The overwhelming military authority to command up to 5,000 soldiers at will. That was now in my hands. Without the imperial family's permission, even a duke's house could only mobilize up to 10,000 soldiers. This was an absurd number for an individual to possess, though it is irrelevant to me now. Moreover, once recognized as a principality, I, like other dukes, would be able to command 10,000 soldiers separately. This would be my own army, entirely unrelated to the Reinhaver family. Given that this happened in a dark family, the imperial family should have restrained it. But my position and relationship with the emperor made it all possible. Nox von Reinhaver. Though walking a dangerous tightrope, if there is something to be used, I will use it decisively. Then let us set off. We need to reduce the number of soldiers who do not agree with our stance as much as possible. Even after all these measures, there will always be those who refuse to listen to me. Moreover, they are not under my protection, and I had to wake up from the childish fairy tale of being able to save everyone, including them. Rommel, the knight captain, was the strongest knight leading the allied forces. Once a vagabond from the barren south, he rose to his current position through sheer skill. Yet even he feared someone. Nox von Reinhaver, a dangerous enemy. Everyone, stay on guard. He is certainly a knight with a reputation. But is he really that strong? A man standing beside Rommel, the knight captain, asked this. His name was Quetzal, a hot-blooded knight with considerable skill. His abilities were slightly better than the average soldier, but he truly believed he was one of the continent's top geniuses. He thought it was just bad luck that he was rotting in this backwater. With his talent, he believed he could easily cut this guy's head off and become one of the top figures in Arkheim. Rommel said that Quetzal was a frog at the bottom of a well, but Quetzal believed Rommel was simply jealous of his talent. It was arrogance, but that was inevitable. Some things cannot be learned without experience. Anyway, do not worry too much. That Nox guy, just a few years ago, was called the disgrace of the Reinhaver family, was he not? The only one of his kind, and those who follow him and he himself are nothing special. The Reinhaver family teaches their direct descendants 3 basic black sword forms. Do you not know what that means? So, are you saying cheap mercenary swordsmanship like us cannot win? Ha, it is just swordsmanship, right? A technique, it changes depending on the user's ability, does it not? If the knight captain is already scared. Focus, Quetzal. In an instant, Rommel's voice turned icy cold. Like frost descending, an immense mana began to flow. Rommel slowly moved his sword, his movements filled with urgency. But Schwat. A spray of blood proved his preparations futile as his vision flashed red. Quetzal's pupils narrowed, unable to follow what had just happened. This is what just happened. A massive wave of mana froze his body in the next moment, followed by a chilling sensation that paralyzed his central nervous system. Gasp. Strange, just moments ago, he was perfectly healthy. Why had his body suddenly frozen? This was a level of fear he had never experienced, even in countless battles. As a voice reached his ears, his anxiety grew to its peak. It was the same arrogant, cold voice he had heard earlier. I said I would not give a second chance. Nox von Reinhaver. Even without turning his head, he knew who the voice belonged to. But Quetzal's mind was filled with questions, and he wondered how he had gotten here. The place where Rommel, the knight captain, and he were stationed was in the central part of the residence. It was also a suitable location for a siege. The defenses were solid, and breaking through would not be easy. Yet Nox von Reinhaver was here. Gulp. His Adam's apple moved. Quetzal finally realized he was being crushed by immense mana. Nox had lowered the concentration of mana in the air, making it possible, but it was meaningless. The knight captain of the anti-Reinhaver allied forces, Rommel, who he followed and believed to be the most outstanding knight, had a bright red line drawn across his shoulder. At that moment, he had completely lost his will to fight. Nox von Reinhaver, as expected, no, even more impressive than I imagined. Rommel spoke calmly. His tone was detached, as if speaking to someone who held his life in their hands, but that was perhaps Rommel's nature. Nox had already sheathed his sword, and looked at Rommel, slowly opening his mouth. How dull. Is that so? Rommel replied indifferently. Then, locking eyes with Nox, he conveyed his message without words, telling him to kill him. It was an unspoken conversation between them. Pawat. A draw so fast it was impossible to tell when the sword had been unsheathed. It sprayed a line of blood in the air before slamming Rommel's massive body to the ground. No, I need to run. The knight captain is dealt with. An unexpected voice reached Quetzal, who was barely twisting his body to move. Quetzal stumbled and rolled a few times before reaching out toward the barracks. Just a little more. If he could just get a little further away from that guy, he might survive. A strong will to live drove his body, but why was it? He could not take another step forward. What? I heard an interesting story outside. Perhaps. Nox began, walking toward Quetzal. His white hair swayed disheveledly. There is a guy with orange hair inside who raped his wife and killed his daughter. He is supposed to be near the knight captain, so finding him should not be hard. Wait, there is a misunderstanding. They lied. Realizing his mistake, Quetzal shouted, but it was no use. Nox shrugged as if it did not matter and stood over him. Soon, the reason he could not move became clear. Oh, if it is a misunderstanding, I am sorry. As Nox said this, Quetzal, with his blurring vision, tried to turn his head. But before he could complete the motion, his body froze cold. Just before losing consciousness, he finally realized. I have already been cut. I was really just an insignificant frog. Rommel was right. Quetzal's upper and lower body were cleanly split diagonally. Only then did he realize that the sword he had been so confident in had betrayed him at the last moment. No, maybe the core had changed from the start. Relying on his meager talent, Quetzal had never put in effort. Moreover, he had chosen to play the king in a small pond, instead of seeking a wider world. Because of this, he met his end here. He had mocked the Reinhaver family's disgrace, confident he could surpass him, but now it was brutal. Since it stemmed from the past, it was all the more fierce, baring its teeth at himself. Nox had already known this. By the time Nox had dealt with Rommel, the knight captain, and Quetzal, the vice-knight captain, on the battlefield, a new movement was detected within the Reinhaver family. Then let us begin. Theo von Reinhaver had gathered the elders of the family. There was only one reason. At this moment, I will decide the next head of the family to succeed me. Nox von Reinhaver. The eyes of the direct and collateral descendants with white hair and merciful eyes narrowed. They had doubted it, but he had finally made the decision. Before they could even protest, Theo's declaration left his lips. My youngest son will be the next head of the Reinhaver family. Chapter 213. Chatter's Duchy. Since all the administrative procedures for its establishment had been completed, there were no difficulties. The only concern regarding the establishment of the duchy, the princess, now Emperor Penelope, seemed to turn a blind eye to my deviation. If it is already done, it cannot be helped. A personal power base is important, but do not forget, you are still my knight. The primary duty of Nox von Reinhaver is to protect me, Emperor Penelope von Arkheim. Remember, Nox von Reinhaver, by the radiant blessing of Arkriver, as a representative of the imperial family, I bestow upon you the title of Duke of Reinhaver. Please take good care of the Chatter's Duchy from now on. That was the content of the imperial letter. Either way, I thought she would understand anyway. After all, am I not her savior? It is a bit embarrassing to say it myself, and I also wished for her not to die. But that is not the reason why I had to save Penelope. Nox von Reinhaver could have been a guest at the coronation, and it would have been fine even if he were a wanderer. The power of the name Reinhaver, and the ability to look after my own safety. But this too, was fate. If I had not saved her, I would have lost more. Moreover, I was confident that Penelope would not become someone who would cause Nox von Reinhaver pain. Like this, after defeating the anti-Reinhaver allied forces, and securing a fairly large territory, one problem came to me. The reason was my damn origin, the Reinhaver family. This is the first time the young master has been compelled to return to the family. It seems like a difficult matter. Brother, do you have any clues? Well, I cannot easily guess father's thoughts, but it is certain that it is deeply related to your recent actions. Various thoughts flash through my mind. All I have done so far is make the princess an emperor. You slew a sword emperor, Miss Ulysses, alongside Paracelsus, boldly invested in Chatteris to secure commercial rights, replaced all the corrupt high-ranking officials of the state, and ultimately succeeded in establishing a duchy. That is what Grain said. Hearing it like this gives me a creepy feeling. Could it seem like I did all that for the family? Theo von Reinhaver is not much more than my biological father, and I am in a position where I must kill him. Also, to me, who has always thought of inner Lunatic as a game, he is undoubtedly a character framed as a villain that cannot be removed. Anyway, I am his son, as I have been saying all along. I heard that the Elders' Council has been convened this time. Could it be? A small spark of premonition grows uncontrollably. The feeling is not good. Let us go to the family immediately. Yes, young master. Carl. Zitri called Carl along with her answer. Grain also naturally mounted his beloved horse and placed Prim, who was grimacing, on his horse. Somehow, although he does not listen to me, he seems to communicate well with Grain. How much they talked is not important now. Let us go. Nay. 2 horses galloped fiercely. Hundreds of escort knights followed, each following us in perfect order. Here in this place, I will decide the next head of the family to succeed me. Nox von Reinhaver, my youngest son, is the next head of the Reinhaver family. It was a voice filled with a strong will, as if he would not listen to anyone else's opinions. However, no one could respond. The forces that had been pushing for Garen had already fallen, and the collateral Reinhaver branch in the Chatteris region, which had been growing its power recently, had also lost its strength. In such a situation, who would dare to offer an opinion to the family head, Theo? Of course, there was none. Moreover, this was the first time Theo had made a decision so arbitrarily, which added to the shock. Theo von Reinhaver had always listened to the Elders' Council and judged the situation at hand. But what about Theo now? He was making them follow his decision. The Conqueror. It was a fitting action for one who wields the supreme sword. But Theo was different from the previous black sword wielder patriarchs. He was gruff but benevolent, intelligent but reasonable. He was a man different from the secret collusions and scandals of the dark families as called by the world. If that is the patriarch's will, how can we object? That is right. Although young Master Nox is young, I heard he has already established a duchy recognized by the imperial family. You have raised a great son. Even amidst the voices of the vassals, Theo spoke with a slightly subdued tone. I wish it were so. If only I had raised that child. If only I had helped him to be able to say he was raised, he would have found his talent sooner. The people who did not know the relationship between Nox and him could not add any comments. It would be troublesome in many ways if any careless remarks led to backlash. Patriarch. At that moment, Rodwell's voice pulled him out from the depths of the deep sea. Theo raised his head as Rodwell bowed his head and spoke. Young Master Nox has arrived. Is that so? Let him in. It will be a long night. Looking up at the already darkened night sky, Theo's eyes, soaked in faint melancholy, shined. Nox, who has a beautiful face resembling his mother, the face of his youngest son flickered before his eyes. It was a longing he had not felt in a long time, just like the day he lost his wife. The last sword of Reinhaver greets the patriarch. The last sword was a title given to the youngest of the Reinhaver family, not greeting as an unrecognized youngest, but now officially one of the family's swords. Since he had already become a knight of the emperor and received a title, it is easier to understand that the greeting had changed. You look healthy. Sit down. The place where I met Theo was the reception room. The Elders' Council seemed to have already ended. At least it was not about me, right? A sense of relief was about to surge up when suddenly a word interrupted. It was the moment my inner peace was suddenly broken as Theo called me in a calm voice. Nox von Reinhaver. No, my youngest. Yes, Patriarch. You still do not call me father. Even though I deliberately brought you to the reception room, you prioritize etiquette. Was not that our relationship from the beginning? Flatly, clearly conveying my intention. Frankly speaking, there is no good in angering Theo no matter how much I have established a duchy in Chatteris, compared to Reinhaver here. It is not even worth a drop in the bucket. Anyway, it will take several days for the duchy to function properly. Even though I know the future to some extent, it means that an absolute amount of time is consumed that I can never control. But that is not a reason not to question Theo's words. Mother, if he, Theo von Reinhaver, was at the forefront of the sacrifice of that name I have never called, and if I suffered because of it, I will never forgive that man. If he is seeking his son now, I will refuse. Moreover, Theo is a villain, and an absurdly strong villain at that, so I cannot even do as I please. It is difficult to redeem or reform him. There is no reason to be kind to Theo von Reinhaver. Right. Theo sneered at himself and spoke. Was what he heard from me shocking? I am not sure, but it seems similar. Anyway, he had just lost his eldest son. The one who killed him was me. Regarding Garen, it is regrettable. I am sorry for putting you through that. What do you mean? However, the voice of Theo that reached me, who was barely maintaining my expression, was enough to make one flustered. Why is Theo suddenly saying this? Sorry, he says. It is something I have never imagined. What kind of person is Theo von Reinhaver? The head of the Reinhaver family, the most outstanding among the 3 sword emperors. He is the one who created rumors that even the imperial family could be toppled with his overwhelming martial prowess. Such a Theo is apologizing. Moreover, saying he is sorry. I do not understand what you mean. Right. It must be because too much time has passed for my sincerity to reach you. I understand. Nox. I did not want to become the family head. It was not a story that should come out of the mouth of the head of the Reinhaver family, especially considering the members of the Elders' Council who were glaring at him today. It was a statement that should never have been uttered. But as if such things were meaningless, Theo continued, fixing his gaze on me. It was because of fear. Perhaps it was the same fear as yours. A primal desire for life. The urge to escape. It was mixed to the point where I could not even keep my mind straight. Why are you suddenly bringing this up? The Reinhaver family has been cursed. No, to be precise. Theo paused for a moment, then met my eyes and slightly raised the corner of his mouth. For a very brief moment, it was a fleeting smile, but I could realize that Theo is sincere now, and I am about to hear a new story that I had never heard in the world of Inner Lunatic, which I had always thought of as a game. The three dark families, all of them are cursed by demons. A constraint is given in exchange for great power. A demon's curse, you say? Yes. I do not know what kind of contracts each family made, but the problem is that the contracts with demons must be upheld, and we cannot go against them. Why, even if it is for power, why did the first patriarch, our ancestor, make such a contract? Do you know about the first human kingdom? I recalled the calamitous demon who used alchemy in the past and emerged from the abyss to torment Luna. Jugun. When I defeated him, I could obtain information about the first human kingdom, the kingdom of Catalu. Are you talking about the Catalu kingdom? Theo nodded. He added as if recalling a story from a long time ago, things even he had not experienced. In the beginning, there were no demons or angels in the human world. The only things that existed on the continent were humans, and the creator who observed the birth of the world, the creator god Arden. Arden. I know that name too. The god who is said to have created this world and humans. But why is her name coming up here? I do not quite understand that there were no demons or angels from the beginning, and only humans existed. Such a setting did not appear in the game background I played. Was the information deliberately hidden? And why is Theo telling me this? The first human kingdom prospered by the grace of the creator god Arden, but for some reason, it fell. The Philosopher's Stone, the noble gift given to humans by Arden, caused a war among them, and finally, the first war of the human world broke out. That was the War of the Revenge Stone. The Revenge Stone, the first continental war waged by those who coveted the Philosopher's Stone to seek each other's interests. The beginning of evil is dealt with in numerous history books. Chapter 214, The Philosopher's Stone, a unique mystery on the continent, said to grant the user's wishes without being bound by the laws of nature. This had been sufficiently explored even in the worldview of Inner Lunatic. At the time, I had also read the story with great interest. I thought to myself, in Inner Lunatic, a work where one can use swords and magic through mana, the concept of alchemy, and the Philosopher's Stone appearing was quite interesting. But I never expected to hear about its secrets from Theo in this way. What I remember is only that an object called the Philosopher's Stone exists, and that it was the main cause of the fragmentation of the ancient human unified kingdom, Catalu. Humans, demons, angels, everything is connected to this. What does it mean that they were the same beings from the beginning? Theo clearly said it. In the beginning, only humans existed. There must be a reason for this. Slowly, I look up at Theo's face. I straightened my posture, which had been performing a sword ceremony. With a cold, hardened expression, I part my lips clearly. What exactly do you know, and how much do you know, Patriarch? I can say that I know more than the head of other families. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to become the Patriarch. Why is that? The moment Theo's voice reaches me, I feel a sensation as if my heart is being torn apart. Just like when I first possessed Inner Lunatic, which I thought was a game, this sudden, intense pain washed over me. The sensation, still unfamiliar, is vividly embedded deep within my chest. Is it because of the ticking clock of a time bomb engraved deep in my heart, still not erased? Honestly, I'm not sure. One thing is certain. I have no reason to take that poisoned holy grey position. Placing my left hand on my chest, I bow my head respectfully and answer, I'm sorry, but I have no intention of becoming the Patriarch. As I've said many times, my thoughts remain the same. The position is too much for me, so it would be wise to make a decision after knowing the truth. Theo's eyes gleam. I look at him for a moment, then nod. Understood. Theo taps the seat he's sitting on and begins his story. Instantly, the doubts that keep rising begin to prick my chest like thorns. Theo von Reinhaver, who once asked me to kill him, and the current Theo, who seems weak and is asking me to become the Patriarch. What kind of gap exists between the two that causes such turmoil in me? Could it be that even I, who have lost my memories, still have some attachment to my father? I briefly recall it, then erase it. And then I think, surely that can't be. Follow me. Theo immediately gets up and begins to take me somewhere. A low, mechanical grinding sound echoed through the area. A magical device is activating somewhere. The center of the Patriarch chamber revealed a small noise from near where I was standing. The rotating mana stops momentarily, casting light in various places. The Patriarch's chamber brightens, and a staircase is revealed below with a constant noise. This is a place where only those destined to become Patriarch have ever set foot. Garen, Grain, Alan, and Hats have never entered here. Naturally, I also don't know this place. But Theo must have a reason for dragging me here. I'm also curious. Why is Theo von Reinhaver the villain, and why must I kill him? After all, he is my only father. Let's go. With Theo's calm voice, a small echo spreads through the tidy underground. The two Reinhavers arrive at a large room located below the Patriarch's chamber. Very old books and scribbled parchments filled the space. Above all, a magical device with an overwhelming presence is placed in the center, clearly the remnants of a high-level spell. A device that even Nox, who studied magic with Lars, cannot easily comprehend. Nox unconsciously gulps. Nox thought to himself, to think that the Reinhaver family, known as the Sword Nobility, would have such a high-level magical device. This is clearly beyond Apollo. Apollo, why would a device boasting absurd technology, surpassing the siege weapons of the ancient kingdoms, be located in the nobility's estate that boasts of its swordsmanship? Nox's thoughts are brief. Theo begins to approach the high-level magical device. A circular band stacked in layers, rotating while concealing a small golden cube in the center. Theo places his hand on it and begins to explain indifferently. This is a remnant of the ancient kingdom Catalu, a tool that records only the truths of the past, called cosmic memoria. Nox, it is the origin of you and the Reinhaver family, and the beginning of the world. A device that allows you to learn about demons and angels. Quite a grandiose name. Nox thought, it's certainly a fascinating device. The ancient kingdom of Catalu. When I dealt with Jugun, I felt it. But I need to investigate more properly about that kingdom, and the Philosopher's Stone. Nox thinks this, then looks at Theo and asks, how does cosmic memoria operate? Do you see the golden cube in the center? Yes. Reach out to the cube. Then, say softly. Theo pauses for a moment, observing Nox's expression, then continues. A humble servant of God has arrived here in search of fragments of the past. Theo's voice was a kind of trigger, a device to activate that massive cosmic memoria. Now it begins. Nox, with a strong sense of tension, begins to reach out towards the slowly rotating cosmic memoria. Theo watches with bated breath, unable to hide his inner amazement. Theo thought, cosmic memoria is an object created by the god to record the history of the continent and the world. No matter how skilled a magician is, it is difficult to activate easily. Knights often collapse just by being near it. But this child, Nox von Reinhaver, his son, looking at this astonishing device, shows no signs of panic or agitation, simply doing as instructed. A level of mental fortitude and talent that is impossible without sufficient ability. Yet Nox accomplishes it with ease. While marveling at his son's talent, Theo despairs at not being able to see the end of this child. He sighed, what a pity. At the same time, cosmic memoria faithfully begins to operate, resonating with Nox. Then, a click sounded. The first ring stops, making a sound. The method to access this cube, protected by high-level spells, is precisely this, solving the puzzle. Click, click, click. Nox continues to solve the puzzle without stopping. After a short while, the bands guarding the circle all face forward and stop. Nox now approaches the remaining layer, the cube. Then, he whispers softly, a humble servant of God has arrived here in search of fragments of the past. The cube emits light. A golden light bursts forth, enveloping the surroundings. It shifts from a warm orange to a deep black, then back to pure white, repeating the cycle. As if it could become anything. Playfully, it changes colors at will. At that moment, Theo's voice is heard one last time. Nox. Yes. Promise me one thing. What? No matter what you see inside you. Theo's voice cut off meaninglessly. Before hearing it to the end, Nox feels his consciousness fading. But the last words flowing from his lips, he clearly understands what they mean. No matter what you see inside, you must kill me. That is the condition for reaching the truth. Theo clearly said so. As Nox processes this, he is thrown into an unfamiliar place. A gentle and warm voice is heard. Neither female nor male. Unknown, but Nox can intuitively sense it. This is the beginning of everything. In the beginning, there was the creator god Arden. She, called the creator of the world, wielded the power of creation according to her will. Additionally, Arden's artifact, the so-called chalice of creation, could not only give birth to new life, but also create artifacts that ignored the laws of physics and magic. Arden created and sent forth countless lives across the continent. On the continent, Arden was truly the mother and father of all living beings. However, she could not directly intervene in the world she had created. Arden lived with the joy of observing her creations living together. The unpredictable variables in her mundane life brought her great joy. Although they are nothing more than an insignificant existence, she herself could not even enter the tiny model she had created. Then one day, Arden made a mistake. She accidentally dropped her hair into the chalice of creation. As a result, a life form imbued with the power of the creator god was conceived on the continent. A life form resembling Arden. A little later, we would call this human because it resembled Arden. Although humans were born by mistake, they became the greatest source of happiness for Arden. Before long, she was deeply captivated by the charm of humans helping, understanding, and caring for each other. I must give my children a gift. Arden decided to willingly use the chalice of creation for the creatures that brought her joy. Arden gathered dozens of irreplaceable materials and mana from the world and ultimately created the Philosopher's Stone, an object with infinite potential and power, unaffected by any physical or magical laws of the world. But she didn't mind. She believed that humans with good hearts would use it wisely. Thus, she decided to willingly bestow divine grace upon humans. And so, the Philosopher's Stone bestowed by Arden became a great power for humans. Ancient humans, weak in agriculture, starved to death, and thousands were swept away by harsh storms, while others lost their lives to magical beasts for hunting. All they had was the ability to communicate with each other, developing a system of language, sharing hearts, and believing they could improve, and the ability to leave records for future generations, though it was of little immediate help. Arden accelerated this through the Philosopher's Stone, called a miracle. Finally, the creator god Arden has bestowed blessings upon humans. The oracle that came with the stone called a miracle. It was meant to propel humans to greater heights. Arden told humans, build a better civilization and live. Protect yourselves, help each other, and if you live like that, you will be my greatest joy. The Philosopher's Stone granted stronger power and wealth without any conditions. This was akin to Arden gambling the hegemony of the world and the continent on the human race, because she believed that humans, resembling herself, could truly govern this place well. And so time passed. As Arden said, humans entered an agricultural society, based on the miraculous power of the Philosopher's Stone, and an exponentially growing population enjoyed unprecedented prosperity. Whenever something was needed, they could borrow the power of the stone, and naturally, a union formed around it. The first union state established at this time was the Catalu Kingdom. Now a bygone glory, we call it the fallen Catalu Kingdom. Anyway, the fallen Catalu Kingdom grew rapidly. They built a golden temple to worship Arden, laid countless treasures beneath it, and offered various parchments and harvests to the altar to worship the god. Arden was delighted, and did not regret using her chalice of creation for humans. Humans would complete her world. She firmly believed that. But such thoughts did not last long. Sadly, the prelude to tragedy began there. But no one knew it. Not even the creator god Arden could have imagined that humans would fall. Chapter 215. There was a human kingdom. The kingdom of Catalu. It was established under the grace of Arden, but it was never a nation meant to praise the creator god. It was built for the purification of the lands across the continent where even Arden could not intervene, and for harmony among different races. In the early days, humans were, simply put, like the apostles of Arden. Unable to manifest directly, they were the representatives who governed the world under her grace. That was what humans were, and the kingdom they built was Catalu. However, such a glorious era did not last long. From the olden times, the bigger the head, and the more intelligent the person, the more they are bound to change. This change is also a new possibility. A completely new possibility that could act positively or negatively. In this case, unfortunately, it was the latter. The current king is merely intoxicated. Why should we humans take care of beastmen and other races? This cannot go on. If it were me, I would use the Philosopher's Stone correctly. I will monopolize it for Catalu, the human kingdom. That was a small doubt, a spark. But one that was enough to spread to everyone. It was enough to incite and move people. When so many people are captivated by the voice of one person, if this is not a calamity, then what is? Until this point, Arden believed, as she had in the past, that humans would talk to each other and find a way to solve the problem. Because she trusted them, she did nothing but watch. She did absolutely nothing. The role of a mediator was not for a god, for she was merely the creator. Arden simply observed how her creations would resolve this situation. But as time passed and more people listened to this foolish voice, countless opinions diverged. The human population had grown too large, and the land of the continent was limited. As the space for other races to live together diminished, the situation eventually reached a catastrophe. The chancellors of the kingdom of Catalu split into two factions. One was the moderate faction, advocating that other races should live together, and the other was the hardline faction, insisting that to accommodate the vastly increased human population, other races not belonging to the kingdom of Catalu should be expelled. The king did not take sides, and eventually, such a choice cast a shadow. The most treacherous hell, prepared for those who remained silent at the moment of choice. The king ultimately walked into that hell himself. When he saw the countless crowds gathered in the square, the king could not help but acknowledge that humans had forgotten the morality and goodness of the past. His right-hand man, who had acted as a chancellor in dealings with other nations, was Judas. The heretic, as he was called, ultimately betrayed the king, intending to seize the Philosopher's Stone. It was the moment when the rule of harmony among humans, which Arden had so fervently preached, was shattered. War broke out. Countless humans and other races lost their lives, and Arden, realizing that this war stemmed from the Philosopher's Stone she had bestowed, was filled with despair. What is the price when great power is given to the ignorant? What answer should I give them? The voices of women and children crying out to the god finally reached the ends of the sky, but even Arden could not provide an answer to this event. There was no clear answer from the beginning. The only one thing she knew was that she had failed by relying solely on the potential of the human race. That was all. It was a failure. Those who resembled her made decisions she would never have made. They pointed swords at each other. They even began to covet the Philosopher's Stone, which was not originally theirs. Enraged, Arden finally declared, I address all humans. From now on, I will not allow you to offer sacrifices in the name of the creator god Arden, and I will seal the Philosopher's Stone in 9 pieces across the continent so that you cannot find it. For this reason, the Philosopher's Stone eventually disappeared by Arden's hand. Arden then declared, I will seal Judas, who has brought chaos to the world, along with the Philosopher's Stone, into 9 pieces across the continent so that such a tragedy will never happen again. Also, from this moment on, all those who harm, kill, and plunder others will be called demons, and to eradicate them, I will appoint the divine agents, angels, to restore order to the continent. Judas, or the being who became the first demon, later known as Baal, was something even the countless scholars of the continent could not have known. Thus, demons and humans were originally one, and only through fierce desires were they distinguished as different beings, passing on power in different ways, each guarding their own world. The soldiers humans raised to prepare for this were the angels. In any case, after the war, the temples serving Arden were closed, and no more oracles came down. But humans do not change. The remaining demons launched a massive search for the Philosopher's Stone, engaging in slaughter, and to oppose this, the angels continued the shameful and arduous battles as they prayed. But Arden no longer responded to the calls of humans. The war that broke out at this time was called the War of the Revenge Stone by the continent, likened to Judas's desire to obtain the Philosopher's Stone, the Lahestan War. Arden placed great restrictions on demons with immense power so they could not run rampant. But she soon withdrew her hand from the world, and the bloody battles between angels and demons continued. In the midst of this, some demons who realized their mistakes returned to the human side. These were the heads of the three great dark families. Initially, they had personal goals to use the Philosopher's Stone, or those who, when Arden first bestowed the Philosopher's Stone, approached the taboo that should never be violated. They eventually turned their hearts and pointed their swords at the demons. They were Reinhaver, Satyrs, and Marvas. The origins of these three families were human, but they became demons. And then, they barely regained their humanity and returned. But even for them, Arden's restrictions came into effect. That is the curse of the three great dark families. Thud. My head spins. It's strange. Even though I'm standing still, it feels like I'm submerged in water, suffocating, and my whole body is as heavy as a boulder. Trait prodigy of acting activates. The trait is shaken by excessive shock. Caution, exposed to unbearable dense mana. Ha. I exhale roughly. Holding on to my trembling legs, I inhale and exhale repeatedly. Compared to the past, this isn't that difficult. In the past, to save Eleanor, I even opened my dantian. It was the first time, and if I didn't do it, death was certain. Even at that moment, I endured. I can't die here. You recover quickly. I showed disgrace in front of the patriarch. Shall I continue the story? Theo spoke indifferently. He must know I'm tired, but he also knows I want to hear the end of the story, so he speaks like that. That's what I wanted too. I quickly pull myself together and organize my thoughts. Before Theo continues the story, I hurriedly sort out the fragments of my thoughts. The truth of this world, which even veteran player Yu Chan did not know. First, the creator god Arden contributed to the establishment of the ancient kingdom, and the war on the continent broke out because of the Philosopher's Stone she bestowed. This is the Lahestan War. 2. Humans, demons, and angels are all essentially fragments of Arden. Here, those who coveted the Philosopher's Stone with strong malevolent tendencies are called demons, and those who sought to protect the Philosopher's Stone with strong benevolent tendencies are called angels. Those who could do nothing and remained are humans. Third, Judas. The first to covet the Philosopher's Stone was the most powerful of the demons, the first Archduke, a mythical demon, who brought storms of blood across the continent. Baal. Fourth, the curse of the families. I haven't heard about this yet. Perhaps Theo will explain it in more detail. Right now, that's a more important issue than Arden, angels, or demons. The first patriarch of the Reinhaver family was a demon. As you have seen in history, he eventually returned to the human side in angels and participated in the war against demons, and this is a clear fact. Theo added what I would be curious about. Of course, why the first patriarch made such a choice. Why he became a demon desiring the Philosopher's Stone is unknown, but this is an undeniable fact. How many people know about this fact? The former emperor of the Arkheim Empire, Esteban von Arkheim, and the heads of the three great dark families, and you. Esteban von Arkheim, the former emperor of the empire, knew about the bloodline of the three great dark families, and yet did not eliminate us. Partly because the power of the three families was too great. Theo added with emphasis. Emperor Esteban believed in us. He said he would become the sun that removes the darkness so that tragedy would not happen. That's why Reinhaver also once followed the laws of the Arkheim Empire. Come to think of it, it's a story full of questions. Isn't the power of the three great dark families beyond imagination? Just Reinhaver alone, with the initial three forms, could capture a Grand Duke. Marvas, with the magic stone, could raise an infinite number of undead. Finally, the Satyrs family, if they wished, could subjugate humans, demons, and angels of different genders under their feet, and bewitch them. If such power were combined, it would be possible to overthrow the Arkheim Empire. If Esteban had not become foolish and remained the sun, he would not have joined hands with Lunatic. Even though the relationship between the three families was not bad, there must have been a clear reason. I finally understood that reason. The pact of the three families. Do not touch the Arkheim Empire. A rule Theo once mentioned. Now that I know its true meaning, it has become meaningless. Anyway, what you want to hear is not just this, is it? Yes, that curse. And the reason why you, the patriarch, must face death. I want to hear that from you. All right. Theo paused for a moment, then the mechanical device started spinning again. He looked at the cosmic memoria, and then turned his gaze to me. Finally, the moment his mouth opened, I finally understood why he had to die. The successor of the Reinhaver family must carve out the heart of the previous patriarch. If not, the seed of the demon hidden by Arden will sprout, driving them mad, and eventually turning them into a demon. Turn into a demon. You might have already experienced it. The moment Theo said that, suddenly, a strong gust of wind began to gather around him, forming a damp darkness. It resembled a goat wearing a crown. Along with that, Theo's eyes began to slowly flip into reverse, and a shocking sensation swept through my body. Simultaneously, a large pupil burst through the air behind Theo. It made my heart pound like crazy. How on earth? It seems you've already experienced it. Theo, the head of the Reinhaver family in the form of a demon, looked at me and said, "The state where the black seed awakens and devours the body, allowing one to unleash great power. We call this devilization. Also, a human who undergoes devilization multiple times will inevitably meet death. The reason why I have to kill you." At that moment, when I spoke without even using honorifics, the family head smiled faintly. "Yes, to prevent you from becoming a demon, you must kill me." Chapter 216, Devilization. I recall the somewhat excessively unfamiliar sensation I experienced during the battle with Garen and the fight with the frost dragon to save Eleanor. At the moment I ceased to be myself, what strange phenomenon did I undergo? It was as if I became a demon, losing my sense of self. An overwhelmingly powerful force filled my body, and soon it began to consume me. It turns out that was related to the curse of the previous family head. It must be true. Theo von Reinhaver. Three-sword emperors would not lie, especially not to me, his son. Devilization ultimately means that the seed of a demon, latent within the inner self of Nox von Reinhaver, sprouts, temporarily granting the power of a demon. To resolve this, Theo von Reinhaver, Nox's father, must be killed. Thinking about it now, there was a part I did not understand from the beginning. The three-sword emperors. There were plenty of questionable aspects about Theo von Reinhaver's death even in the game. Theo's end was fleeting. It was just mentioned in a few lines in the game, and that was it. Why he became a villain, or if he was one from the start, was never properly explained. What if, by any chance, Theo von Reinhaver was not a villain? Even if he was the cold-hearted father I have seen so far, that is not a reason for him to die. How? So I decided to ask him gently. I will not change the decision I have already made, but I genuinely want to understand the meaning of his life. I cannot help but ask if the life of Theo von Reinhaver, a man as empty as I am, is not regrettable. Do you not regret it? Nox von Reinhaver. Now that it is my lips, I twist my tongue freely, and begin to mock my father. How can you so easily tell me to kill you, the patriarch? No. With a slightly mocking tone, I dare to address the head of the Reinhaver family again. Why are you only explaining this to me now? Did you want my understanding? Or did you hope that Nox von Reinhaver would hesitate to kill you? Nothing of the sort. Your sword must still point at me. So why? A voice twisted as if spitting out. It shatters like glass fragments, dividing the two of us. Countless tiny fragments, now irreparable shards cut into the skin, trying to sever the last line connecting me to him. Soon, after I cut off Theo's words and continued with a fierce expression, even if it leads to catastrophe, there is no objection that it is for the best. Are you telling me this story? Someday, you too will have to say this to someone. What? Unexpected words slip from Theo's mouth. For a moment, my eyebrows twist subtly, and discomfort spreads from my chest. Later, someday, you too will have to do the same. Later, sometime in the future. Theo was saying that. The reason was simple. If I become the head of the Reinhaver family, I too will be killed by my successor. Of course, there is the option not to marry, but other families will not leave me alone, and for the family's survival, I must eventually endure this situation. That is why Theo is telling me, you too will someday have to be killed by your child. It is a tragic and cruel story, but my father, Theo von Reinhaver, declares it so. You are selfish, patriarch. I am assuming the worst-case scenario. Also, it does not matter what you think now, and I also know it is too late to seek understanding. Theo deliberately pondered before continuing. But if you have learned the truth, there is only one thing you can choose. Kill me. Pierce my heart with your forged sword and overcome me. Find a way to unravel the curse. That is the best you can do. Do you think I can find an answer even you, a sword emperor, could not? Astrid and Noah said you also have a talent for magic. My talent was limited to the sword, but Nox, you are not. You can go further, like I was a better person than my father. Theo closed his eyes briefly, reminiscing about his father, then slowly opened them. Nox von Reinhaver, my son, I remember your first cry, and your beautiful mother. What? I also remember your first duel as a Reinhaver. After Garen went astray, I tried not to expect much, but in the end, I could not help being a father. Father, I repeat the heavy 3 letters. A family I so dearly wished for. I found the first one here, and I know he is not a villain. But my narrow heart and twisted lips will never acknowledge him as a father. Now, and in the future. If I stab your heart now and ascend to the patriarch position, does it all end? All the duties and burdens you wished for as the head of Reinhaver? No, not yet. Theo wears a sad expression, smiling transparently. The time will come when one of the two must die. Until then, use the name Theo von Reinhaver. I will give you everything I can before you become the patriarch. Don't tell me. One thing crosses my mind. The last thing Theo can give me. What is it connected to? The answer is already decided. The Supreme Black Sword. I will teach you all the basic techniques. I could not speak further. Frozen in place, I looked at Theo's still upright back and waist. Though he did not seem like someone about to die, why? I could see his future. Like the inner lunatic I played in the game, and the screen within the monitor. He would become a short script and a handful of polygon pieces. Also, what emotion it would bring to me, shaking me. I am not ready yet. But as always, I just continue with a confident tone. All right. Theo von Reinhaver. I will become the patriarch. And a somewhat awkward smile rises in front of Theo's face. I will definitely kill you. I promise. The spring of the schoolyard. The cherry blossoms adorning the academy excited several units connected to Nox. Now, they could truly be called companions. But Nox, the closer he got, the more he worried about becoming distant from them. The sensation of losing something precious was unfamiliar to him. In the past, during his time as Joachim, unlike when he wished for a family, Nox often thought it would be better if no one liked him now. At the same time, it is also true that without them, it would be hard to sustain his current life. What should he do? To find the answer, winning the bloody battle against the demon is the most important task. Nox explained his plan to his trusted companions. Of course, he did not tell them everything, but he shared that demons were reviving around the Grand Duke, and that he was planning to counter it. So, the problem is, can we Academy students really be of big help to the noble sir? Paracelsus started, quickly passing through the schoolyard. They soon gathered in the cafe basement sealed by Eleanor's mana to discuss. Originally, they should have proceeded with Nox, but they gathered more urgently due to a recent letter from Nox. The letter Nox sent was as follows. I will not be able to return to the Academy for a while, so I ask for your understanding. I will attend the Academy Swordsmanship Festival, so take note. Nox von Reinhaver. No. Even so, how can he write such a short letter? No matter how much we try, we cannot fully grasp Nox's intentions. Eleanor said, feeling frustrated. Thalia sighed and cautiously agreed. I think the same. I do not know what is going on, but Nox always gets caught up in dangerous situations. I am worried. I do not think Nox von Reinhaver is going to die somewhere, but maybe he did not have the money to write a longer letter. Leon, your sense of humor has improved. That crazy noble sir has no money. The human who recently visited Chatters for business. He has been scooping up money lately. As Paracelsus scoffed, Leon readily agreed. Well, that is true. I thought too much about myself. Leon Nim. Wouldn't that be more heartbreaking in many ways? As Zitri intervened, Leon tilted his head. It was not a shameful story that he had no money. No matter where the master went, with that cheeky personality, it is a miracle he has not been cut by a harsh sword yet. Prim, I told you to watch your mouth. There are many nobles here, and Prim's life is protected by the young master, not Reinhaver. Yes, Prim interjected and quickly complied, but their doubts remained unresolved. Grand Duke level demon is someone even our mother struggles with. It is better to stop Nox before he does something reckless again. We know too. But is the noble sir someone who listens when told to stop? No, definitely. I am sorry to the young master, but it does not seem so. Even Zitri firmly denied. The Academy Swordsmanship Festival. Somehow, it feels strange. Paracelsus leaned his head forward, wiping his monocle. Is he not bringing some surprising sword or swordsmanship? No way. While everyone denied it, Nox was busy learning a new sword as Paracelsus predicted. No, more precisely, he was adding more refined and meticulous processes to a familiar sword, controlling magic, and even training to properly handle his devilized state. Nox, who met Theo, twisted his lips unknowingly. Theo von Reinhaver. I expected it, but he is more of a monster. This is the first form of the middle stage from the black sword. Nox gazes at the sunken floor, watching the sword marks left by Theo's strike moments ago. It was closer to beauty than mere destruction. Chapter 217. What emotion did you feel when you first experienced devilization? That was Theo's question. Nox quietly reflected on the past, remembering a formidable rival named Garen. In a duel with the one who stirred up his past, what emotion did he feel? Soon, as he recalled fragments of that memory, he answered. It was an impulse. Correct. Impulse. That is the greatest attribute of a demon. No, the dark magic we possess. It was certainly a correct statement. Why are the three great families capable of wielding dark magic called distinguished families? It is because they have many who can make cold, rational judgments and handle emotions well. The four elements are water, fire, earth, and air. Attributes like steel, mercury, and gold are born through attribute conversion. In contrast, the element of darkness is characterized by its instability, swaying like a candle flame. The holy attribute, while difficult to unleash great power, is stable. The greater the initial amount of mana, the wider the limit becomes, meaning the expected growth value of the caster is high. Therefore, dark families avoid fighting holy families. The high average expected growth value of those casters works disadvantageously. It is not entirely impossible to overcome, however. Basically, the dark element deals the highest damage to all elements. If one possesses overwhelming strength, it becomes the simplest and most convenient element. Becoming overwhelmingly strong is crucial. If one can create a difference of more than 2 times in the total amount of mana compared to the opponent, there will be no one to rival them. Therefore, Theo stated that for Nox to become stronger, he must accumulate overwhelming strength, mana, and experience as a knight. You must first learn patience from now on. Those words instantly crushed Nox's thoughts, causing him to furrow his brow unknowingly. Patience seemed odd in the current situation, where he needed to move quickly to the 4th episode. He knew the process of asceticism was important for a knight, but the timing felt off. The magic possessed by demons and the dark magic we possess are slightly different in nature, Theo explained. What demons possess is more impure and dangerous, and it is safe to say that they experience the unsettling impulse we felt during devilization every moment. Certainly, that makes it easier to understand. Nox nodded slightly. He knew best what it meant to maintain devilization every moment. He remembered the night when everything remained the same amidst the blood-red scenery, standing alone and gradually accepting his changing self, with veins bulging, and the whites of his eyes turning black, and the pupils turning red. Mixed with this were the emotions called the basic desires of the 7 deadly sins. Like a stew made by boiling all sorts of ingredients in a pot, the blood became hot and boiling, making it difficult to control, until one gradually lost their sense of self. Theo believed that the biggest factor in Garen's defeat was a lack of restraint and patience. Objectively, he thought there was no reason for Garen to lose to Nox, and that assessment was not wrong. Nox only won because he possessed skills and talents, including the genius time trait. Nox's 2 genius traits created miracles, and the fact that he fortunately did not completely turn into a demon during the devilization stage also contributed to the victory. Pure individual physical ability allows one to make rational judgments at the most critical moments. In that sense, it wouldn't be strange to say that Nox's genius traits are unrivaled. But could he expect such luck next time? No, I cannot. Theo accurately pointed this out. You are exceptional, and your genius surpasses anyone's. This is not because you are my son, nor because you are a Reinhaver, but purely because of the talent you possess, which surpasses the 7 stars of the continent. The 7 stars of the continent consisted of the 3 sword emperors and the 4 sages. If someone else had said Nox possessed such talent, would anyone have believed it? But Theo was the one who dared to make it possible. Nox waited, knowing what would come next. But that talent wasn't enough to defeat Garen, that punk. Nox knew this deep down. Before defeating Garen, Nox had run several combat simulations, but he thought defeating him was nearly impossible. Talent is nothing more than potential that has not yet been realized through effort. Many factors come into play before it can be fully utilized. Although there are occasionally geniuses who break this mold, it is clear that they too can reach their desired level faster depending on the presence of a master or the environment. Moreover, what was the age difference between Nox and Garen? For those still in their growth period, a year's difference is overwhelmingly large. Nox also had to admit this. Even Garen alone had used the Reinhaver family's early form that Nox couldn't use. Third form, Black Blade Falling Petals. In the battle with Sword Emperor Ulysses, he had the help of Paracelsus, so it wasn't solely due to his excellence that he achieved victory. In short, it was hard to see it as a victory achieved solely by Nox. Using one's origin, background, and talent is not bad, but relying on them is never good in any situation. Of course, I don't mean to say you are foolish, but if you ask whether the decision to fight Garen, and even the prince, in the center of enemy territory was wise, I would say it was not. I agree. From now on, I will give you one task. Theo gathered darkness, pulling up a unique spiritual energy from the ground which took the shape of a scarecrow dummy. The mana felt from it clearly resembled someone. Esteban von Reinhaver. The total amount of mana is the same as my brother's. It's like a toy modeled after him. Nox's eyes narrowed coldly as Theo readily admitted, that's right. From now on, you must win against this scarecrow without using devilization, Theo said. If you do, I will teach you the 3 middle stage forms, while the later stage will be taught later, after some more time has passed. All right. Nox nodded briskly. He needed training to become stronger, and Theo would not kill him in the process. Since he was the only human who could free him, there was no reason to refuse the offer. I'll come back in the evening. Theo left. The time was already past noon. Nox sighed and thought that bastard Garen is annoying even in his death. Just as Theo turned away, his footsteps paused. As if he had forgotten something, he stroked his beard and pondered before gathering mana towards Nox. Rodwell said that if we only talk abstractly, communication will not go well, so it is better to show it through direct action. What? Nox tilted his head, and suddenly Theo stepped down and drew a sword from his waist. The sharp blade gleamed, absorbing mana until it turned a deep red. Theo looked at Nox indifferently and spoke softly. I'll show you the first middle stage form that I'll teach if you pass the trial in advance. Theo's darkened sword disappeared in an instant. Unlike the initial stage form, the middle stage gave Nox a feeling of pure astonishment. Was this a mirror? What unfolded before Nox was a deep red, transparent sword fragment reminiscent of dozens or hundreds of mirrors. They filled the surroundings as if they would pour down on Nox at any moment. Nox barely stopped the goosebumps from rising and firmly watched his father's sword. His mind seemed to fly away, but he forced himself to calm down as the deep red blade in the mirror accurately predicted his movements. Like a mirror reflecting the midday sun, swords stabbed at Nox from all directions, and it was undoubtedly one of the best swords he had ever seen. If the black blade falling petals was a technique that bloomed a flower of death to cut down the enemy, this one was about deception. It pushed the mana of darkness to the extreme, dyeing the surroundings in pitch black, then materialized like a mirror to fall towards the enemy. The dark energy surrounding it embroidered the opponent, like flames as blades poured from dozens of mirrors. Black Blade of Supreme Sword. The first form of the middle stage. Black Blade Fire Mirror. Generally, a fire mirror was a type of convex lens that created flames when exposed to sunlight. Surprisingly, Theo achieved this in complete darkness without a single light, gathering the dark attribute mana like mayflies to a flame to form sharp spears. Nox felt his heart pound as if it would go mad, and he smiled faintly, feeling fired up at the first form of the middle stage. Theo turned around and walked away, not forgetting to add, I'll be waiting. Until you learn all the middle stage forms, I will remain here. Theo simply said so, without saying anything as a father. About a month passed, and only 1 week remained until the Academy Swordsmanship Festival. After receiving permission from Headmaster Noah, I had been holed up in the underground training ground of the Reinhaver family. It was possible because there was still time before the main episode. Of course, I was aware that something might happen, and that I needed to protect the units accordingly, but fortunately, nothing major occurred. I consistently checked variables through Zitri. There shouldn't be any problems, probably. The Academy Swordsmanship Festival was the episode right before the end of Part 1. That was the 4th episode, so I couldn't help but worry. I needed to learn Theo's middle stage sword forms as much as possible, as the opportunity to train in swordsmanship with a sword emperor was not common. Moreover, since Luna was directly involved in the 4th main episode, it was difficult for her to help me. For now, Theo was the best master, though there were some unclear parts. "Are you leaving now?" Theo, who had been training with me for a month, called me coldly. I was also the same, as the question of whether I was leaving carried no regret. "Yes, I'm leaving." Our conversation ran on parallel lines, but we did our best to achieve our respective goals. Theo wanted to find the sword that would kill him, while I wanted to protect what was precious. In this episode, my goal was only one: survive. In this tedious world, I was nothing but an insignificant existence. But even in that soliloquy, I couldn't help but think that the end was truly approaching. There were 2 episodes left, and I didn't know the developments after that. I didn't have much time to let go of the advantages I had in the past as Joachim before becoming Nox von Reinhaver. "I'm glad you returned safely, young master." I was very worried. "That's right. You stayed at the mansion for so long. I even thought you might become the next family head after Theo. Oh my, if you became the family head, how much would you torment me?" Upon arriving at Eldane to attend the Academy Swordsmanship Festival, I was first greeted by 2 maids, among whom Rona had a subtly piercing way about her. "First, I'm not hurt, don't worry." "And Rona?" "Yes." Rona quickly turned her head to look at me. I spoke in a very calm tone. "I am going to become the family head, so you can look forward to it later. I didn't know you liked being tormented by me, but I can't disappoint your expectations." "Young master, you're joking, right?" "What? That cheeky guy is going to become the family head. Save me, I'll really die from being overworked." When even Prim fainted, I thought about teasing them more but had to stop. A very special guest had arrived, but for me, who knew the future, it was not a welcome guest. Sel von Stilliner, the eldest daughter of the Stilliner family. I came after receiving a letter from Nox von Reinhaver. She came. Sel von Stilliner, Thalia's older sister, and the one who created her trauma. Additionally, she was the key to this 4th episode, a character who would die to awaken Thalia. I had to meet a character who did not fear death, solely to fulfill my selfish desire to protect my unit. Chapter 218. Sel von Stilliner, the legitimate successor of the Stilliner family, and a genius with talent surpassing Robert's. The trait, genius of swordsmanship and combat, pushed her innate abilities to their absolute limits. Naturally, the swordsmanship she wielded was the Stilliner family's unique form, the white flame form, and the fact that she was an even harder worker than her prodigious talent suggested was terrifying in its own right. I thought to myself, her power is absolutely essential in the 4th main episode. The villain is someone who cannot be killed without the white flame form, after all. This 4th episode, like the previous ones, boasts an extreme level of difficulty. The most tragic aspect of it all is that it is one of the few stories across all episodes where someone must inevitably be lost. The death of the older sister she had strived to surpass would inevitably come as a massive shock to Thalia, serving as the catalyst for her awakening, one of the main characters. A sacrificial lamb for awakening. That is how players referred to her back when the game was being cleared. It could not be helped. During the inner lunatic difficulty, that was the extent of the value players assigned to her. A regrettable character, wasted and discarded, unable to be utilized for the sake of Thalia's awakening. In fact, even for me, that is how I remember Sel von Stilliner too. "I have heard much about you, Nox von Reinhaver, that you possess exceptional swordsmanship, turned over a new leaf, and resolved many incidents." In the reception room prepared within the Citus Hall, Sel, who had been idly toying with her teacup, offered a light, polite greeting. I responded with equally measured courtesy. "It is nothing remarkable. The young lady of Stilliner is far more renowned. No. I hear you have already surpassed the current family head's swordsmanship." The family head must be delighted. "No, not to that extent." We exchanged meaningless pleasantries, but both of us knew this was not our real objective. We were merely biding our time, deliberating on how to broach the actual subject. Silence lingered. Truthfully, I had agonized over this for quite a while. What exactly should I say here, and how should I say it? Her death was predetermined. But was there really anything I could do for her? "I heard you were looking for me. Is the reason related to Thalia?" "Something similar." Sel assumed I had called for her due to matters concerning the engagement between me and Thalia, though that is not the truth. I quickly used Insight to check Sel von Stilliner's status window. Basic info. Name, Sel von Stilliner. Gender, female. Age, 17. Race, human. Primary element, fire, leading to white flame. Achievements, none. Traits, positive. Genius of swordsmanship and combat. Upright nature, chivalry, quick learner. Neutral, principled. Negative, host of the demon, unawakened, imminent, taciturn, cold, closed heart, weak mentality. Stats, Physical strength, 15. Mana, 13. Luck, 5. Willpower, 14. Charm, 20. Skills, passive skills, white flame, mental fortitude, active skills, white flame form, advanced, basic fire magic. Monster, that judgment came swiftly. Esteban von Arkheim. She truly lived up to the genius trait. I drew a sharp breath, unconsciously fixing my gaze on one particular spot. Host of the demon, unawakened, imminent. The meaning behind those words was clear. Esteban von Arkheim will fully become a demon in this 4th episode. Her stats already surpass mine, but she is destined to become even more monstrous. But I could neither save her nor prevent it in advance. The demon Belial that would possess Esteban von Arkheim's body could not be slain unless this episode played out normally. Moreover, without killing that bastard, I have never once seen the end of this story. Belial was originally an angel who fell, a piece of trash who drags chaos in his wake. Besides, Belial stands at the pinnacle of demons. Infamous for his poor relationship with the Archduke Baal, he operates outside pandemonium with his own faction. That is his nature. Predicting Belial's actions is tantamount to courting disaster. Depending on the situation, he might clash with Baal, or do something entirely unpredictable. Thus, there is only one optimal time to kill that bastard. When he possesses Esteban von Arkheim's body. If not right before that moment, he will corrupt the continent using the 7 seeds to whom he gave stronger power and his sword. Belial grants a named sword to each of his followers. Jealousy, destruction, calamity, restriction, deprivation, chaos, and finally, desolation. Those who obtain these swords grow immensely powerful, and Cell is one of them. In a way, Belial is even more dangerous than Baal. This is precisely why I called for her. I needed to check her status window as soon as possible to gauge how far her devilization had progressed. It is already too late. There is no turning back now. She likely does not know that she is dying. She probably thinks I summoned her solely regarding the engagement between Thalia and me. The truth stings, but I do not let it show. Joachim, Nox von Reinhaver, the two of us are one and the same, weak. But I know one thing. I must protect what is precious to me. I heard you are participating in the Eldane Academy Swordsmanship Festival this time. That is right. Nox, I might end up crossing blades with you. Yes, you will. Because I will survive till the end. Is Thalia doing well? Yes. She is doing fine, as always. She is still a bit childish, but she is working hard in her own way to become a better knight, and to catch up to you. I see. Her voice grew somber. A child who looked up to her. A younger sister. What could that possibly mean? I do not really know. Truthfully, there isn't much I can add. She is still afraid of spiders. Is this it? She is also scared of people. Still shy around strangers. Utterly devoted to the sword. But hates theory with a passion. That is about it. A dry, matter-of-fact story. Yet, Cell seemed somewhat satisfied. To me, I am just continuing to talk in order to progress the episode. But this is a major narrative thread. It must never be altered. I keep reminding myself of that damned fact. Some might ask, can't you, now stronger, use the middle stage form of the Black Sword to slay the Calamity Belial? Why insist on following the predetermined flow of the story? But it is impossible. As I said, the crux of this episode is the white flame form. The white burning flames. That is the one and only way to kill Belial. Thus, I quietly urged her toward death. I cannot tell her she is in danger, even though I know it is tantamount to standing by. For me, Thalia is someone precious. And she must be to you as well. As her older sister, Cell, you have watched over her far longer than I have. This is pure selfishness on my part. A hollow justification wrapped in the pretense of caring for her younger sister. But in the end, everything will turn out fine. Because Thalia will awaken thanks to you and grow stronger. Just as I was forcing myself to rationalize it, Cell's lips curled into a faint smile. Why is that? I am glad. It seems she is doing well. My heart lurched. For a moment, Cell smiled brightly, pure white, and said those words. For some reason, I felt ashamed of myself. When the truth I had denied despite knowing better reflected back at me like a mirror, my vision darkened. Thalia's smile flashed across my mind, and only then did I realize. Her smile resembles her older sister Cell's so much. As you know, the Academy Swordsmanship Festival is a major event held only once a year. Merely earning the right to participate is difficult in itself. Instructor Vernon spoke while scanning the students seated around him. Standing at the platform in the classroom, he looked oddly out of place. While holding a worn parchment with a list of names, Vernon continued. This year, 3 freshmen have earned the opportunity to participate in the festival. First, Nox von Reinhaver. Polite applause erupted. Vernon then called the second name. Second, Paracelsus. When the final name was announced, a small gasp was heard. Third, Thalia von Arkheim. Ha, me. Correct. Thalia von Arkheim. Your total score has qualified you for the festival. Thalia looked around in disbelief, but there could be no mistake in the results. The evaluation was based on comprehensive scoring across multiple categories. If anything, I was the one at risk because of my physical strength. The recent physical test came to mind. This is the point where the truly talented begin to rise. Meanwhile, I still have not even hit 10 in physical strength. Due to that, rumors are already circulating that my growth has stagnated. Not long ago, those same guys were hyping me up as the best. The academy was cold. As time went on, more and more people started thinking of me as just that cocky bastard. If only it were not for the terminal illness trait. Terminal illness. This damn trait not only hampers my physical strength growth, but also caps the maximum at 15. Damn it. I cannot even complain about it. Why must I suffer like this? Well, whatever. This is just how Nox is. I convinced myself quickly. Glancing over, I saw a flustered Thalia and the indifferent Paracelsus. Their polar opposite reactions were almost amusing. The three of you will represent the freshmen and face upperclassmen in combat. Everyone, give them your support, and may you all learn much from this tournament. That concludes today's class. With those words, Vernon dismissed the class. He added that the festival would proceed as one-on-one duels from the round of 32, with matches decided in a single bout. The bracket was posted on the bulletin board in the hallway. As I walked out and glanced at the board, my steps froze involuntarily. The issue was not my match. It was the one I had dreaded most. Eldane Academy Swordsmanship Festival, round of 32 bracket. Thalia von Stilliner versus Sel von Stilliner. Damn it. This should not be it, really. Chapter 219. What should I do? What do you mean, what should I do? Naturally, you should participate. Even if she is family. Since we are at the academy, she is just a sparring partner, right? Why are you agonizing over something so trivial? After Vernon's class ended, my companions gathered briefly before we parted. Naturally, the topic of the swordsmanship festival came up, and this was the conversation that had just taken place between Thalia and Paracelsus. Honestly, this damn bastard. I clicked my tongue while looking at Paracelsus. Can't you be a little more considerate? There are circumstances involved here. You noble sir are too soft. That is the problem. Honestly, do opportunities like this come easily to others? Think about it. It is a chance to grow stronger. These kinds of opportunities do not come often. Paracelsus shrugged as he continued. The Baron East, the Baron East. Everyone says that, but honestly, the East was full of trash. After the war, no high-ranking knights ever passed through, and all that was left were insignificant lowlifes. I actually think it is fortunate that an opportunity like this has come. That is true, but... Thalia's voice grew smaller as she spoke. A brief silence fell. It was only natural. This was not an issue others could easily weigh in on. Of course, Paracelsus's point was understandable. Participating in the Academy Swordsmanship Festival meant proving that one's skill was on par with the top-tier students, even the third years. And now, a chance to spar directly had come. How many could refuse that? In fact, Paracelsus had been disappointed that even in the desolate East, where he had just survived the war-torn era, he had not found a worthy rival. Moreover, among the participants this time was a senior whom even aspiring knights admired. Sel von Stilliner. At a time when the Stilliner family's influence was said to be waning slightly, she was the one who, following Robert, displayed exceptional talent, and once again raised the white flame to its peak. Naturally, many competitive knights longed to face her. The problem is that it has crushed Thalia's motivation. Thalia had trauma. Unsurprisingly, it was related to her sister, Sel. I have never once beaten my sister with a sword. And now, of all people, my first opponent is her. I am not ready yet. What a cruel coincidence. Pairing sisters together like this, as if someone planned it, is downright malicious, though I do not know whether it was the faculty or just random. Eleanor snorted and crossed her arms. Recently, the two had grown quite close, and now she was even taking Thalia's side. But Thalia's mood showed no signs of improving. Even at a glance, she looked slumped, drained of energy, and her hands were trembling. She was trying hard not to show it, but my eyes would not be fooled. As I pondered, Leon spoke in a serious tone. If it is something you must overcome, then there is no choice but to face it. Sel von Stilliner. I have heard she is an exceptional knight, but when the time comes to clash, you cannot back down. The outcome is decided after the battle, so what is important is not to fear it. NG, thanks. To be honest, Leon's advice would not be much help. The reason was simple: talent level. Something called level, at times, is what makes people the most miserable. It is simple. Thalia had a prodigy talent. Sel possessed genius talent. That was an insurmountable difference. Leon, who was offering advice, was also a genius. That meant he was not the most suitable person to give advice to others. Let us recall how the trait genius functioned in this world, which was once a game. It was a damnable trait that operated on a completely different level from lower-tier traits, setting the starting line for all units apart from the very beginning. Can Thalia win? No. That much was clear. Moreover, how could she defeat an older sister, who not only had a year's advantage, but also surpassed her in innate talent? At least in the game, there was absolutely no way. Even if Sel deliberately held back, Thalia would only feel more powerless. She would not stand a chance. Instead, she would be left with nothing but misery, and the sisters would reach the worst possible outcome. It was unfortunate, but that was reality. The sisters, who shared the positive trait upright nature, would both give their all. If one won or lost, they would accept it. That you were the victor. That I, the inferior one, was defeated, and in the end, you were the one who triumphed. Knights are not an easy bunch, but these kind-hearted sisters would ultimately accept it and bless each other. After all, the Stilliner family was like that from the start. The problem was that here, Thalia von Stilliner could break. Thalia. In the original story, she would grow into a terrifying monster strong enough to kill me. But because I took a spot in the swordsmanship festival, the bracket changed. Now she is facing her sister too soon, and in the worst case, her talent might be crushed. That could not happen. What if the butterfly effect I caused prevented Thalia from blooming into her full potential? If that happened, she would lose herself in the future. If Thalia fails to awaken even in the episode where Cell dies, that is unacceptable. That must never happen, especially if it was a butterfly effect caused by me, Nox. All the more reason I had to help her. So, I decided to lend her a hand as well. Your worries are understandable, but instead of bottling it up, why not focus on what you are good at? What I am good at. Thalia's expression brightened slightly as she looked up at me with a faint hint of hope. She seemed to expect something, but honestly, I did not have any grand solution. So, meeting her gaze squarely, I spoke with a bit more emphasis. Effort. Repetition without end. Moving forward without regret. Having said that, I also looked straight at her. Is that not what you are best at? I recalled the first time I met Thalia. Back then, she had been lost in despair over her repeated defeats against her sister. Her vague goal of becoming a knight had become her shackles, and I had not known whether it would ultimately destroy her. But in the end, Thalia resolved to become a knight in her own way. Because that was the only way she could escape her sister's shadow, even just a little. So, I added, I might be able to help you a little too. Really? Though, honestly, I will probably end up taking first place in the swordsmanship festival anyway, so it might not mean much. But if you want. The faint blush and smile on Thalia's cheeks were etched into my pupils before I realized. As they shimmered transparently, I stood up from my seat. She began to follow me. Paracelsus, irritated by my words, snapped. See, this is the problem with you nobles. Always excluding us commoners from your little discussions. Right. And what? You think you will take first place? You think I will just let that happen? Eldane Academy grounds. 3rd year night training hall. Leaving a sword trace behind. White flame first form precisely cuts through the magic scarecrow. It was an academy certified item. One that could not be cut through with mere strikes, or sword slashes. A top-tier model personally approved by Professor Lars. Yet, despite its reputation, it began to collapse far too easily. A white flame burned brightly as it precisely struck, leaving a deep gash in the scarecrow. Creak. The high-quality scarecrow tried to regenerate the wound on its body, but the white flame's unique demon-repelling technique made recovery impossible. Thud. Soon, the scarecrow collapsed powerlessly onto the ground. White flame. The flickering white fire was the symbol of the Stilliner family. Thank you. Cell von Stilliner accepted a towel from her attendant and wiped away her cold sweat. It was not an exaggeration. What she was shedding was cold sweat, not the exhilaration of giving her all. How was it? My power. The voice echoed in her mind. It was breaking her. In fact, she had known from the beginning. When she first picked up the sword for the sake of the Stilliner family's revival, she was no genius. Robert, too, had only begun placing real expectations on her about 5 years ago. From that day onward. You need power, do you not? Right. At some point, she had begun hearing a mysterious voice. Before she could even realize what that dark, corrupting force strangling her was, the young Cell had been more focused on earning her father's approval. The head of the Stilliner family, Robert, had been under considerable pressure at the time. Though Thalia might not have seen it, the Robert that Cell knew was in a precarious state. The Imperial family had been sending constant letters threatening to revoke their ducal status, and he had even considered arranging a marriage with the Reinhavers. Even the lowest-ranking Reinhaver was someone the Imperial family could not ignore outright. Their prestige alone could ensure the Stilliners' survival as a ducal house. Though twisted, the reason Robert had no choice was for the sake of the countless people in his territory who revered him, who were willing to die for him. He had lived by the principle of noblesse oblige, but he still lacked a true successor to the white flame form. And it was true that the ducal house's standing was weakening. If a rank is stripped away, more people will look down on the Stilliners. That is undeniable. Father will suffer even more, and Thalia, who should inherit the family in my place, will collapse too. From the very beginning, Cell had never cared about title or succession. Her only duty was to stand at the pinnacle, maintaining this devil's power, this balancing act, just long enough for Thalia to grow. She could not afford to lose her mind. Everything was for her father and her sister. From the beginning. Yes, from the very beginning. Unfortunately, Cell von Stilliner knew that in the end, she would be remembered in history as trash who sold her soul to a demon. That she would never earn her father's recognition and would be cast aside. But there was one thing she did not know. That her belief that she was maintaining balance was nothing but delusion. That the power she wielded was already tainted by a viscous darkness. The demon Belial's power had been eroding her all along, and in the end, it would kill Cell. Also, Cell would never achieve what she so desperately desired. Instead, she was fated to bring ruin to her family with her own sword. Because to demons, the white flame form was one of the most terrifying swords. Over the past several centuries, that pure white flame had slain far too many demons. It was why the Stilliners had become a ducal house in the first place. That was precisely why Belial had targeted Cell. To exploit Robert's kind nature, his inability to bring himself to cut down his own daughter. To exploit Thalia, who had not yet amassed enough strength to kill her sister, and the other weaklings. And ultimately, to completely erase from the continent that which posed a threat to him, the white flame itself. Demon was that kind of existence after all. The only ones who knew this truth were the demon Belial and Nox von Reinhaver. Chapter 220. The days passed by in a flash. Before anyone knew it, the Academy Swordsmanship Festival was right around the corner. In just a few hours, the festival will finally begin. Nox strolled through the Academy grounds, organizing his thoughts for a while, The occasional stares directed at him were annoying, but he did not particularly care. He figured they were probably just more disrespectful looks from the noble families anyway. By now, Nox had developed the mental fortitude to laugh off such gazes. Would their perception of him change even if he said something? No way. The Emperor's Knight, even the grandiose title, had only served as kindling for a brief blaze. In the end, it did not fundamentally solve Nox's ruffian tendencies. Nox himself found it more comfortable that way, but the red-haired girl walking beside him, Thalia von Stilliner, thought differently. Why can't anyone else see Nox's good points? Lately, had not Nox even helped her with her swordsmanship training? Of course, others would not know the details, but still, had he just grown too accustomed to being hated? Thalia looked at Nox with renewed pity, but he was as indifferent as ever. No, to be precise, he was actually in a rather excited state. Finally, the swordsmanship festival. Even in the game, the atmosphere at this time was the best. It feels nostalgic. There is a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. Now, with the opening ceremony about to begin, he was busy inspecting the Academy's facilities. Some were newly established. For instance, equipment that is possible to be mass-produced made from magical beast materials, even if they were not custom-made. These were now at the stage of commercialization, so it was important to check them. While deviations from the main storyline were unavoidable, the world-building being completely overturned was another matter entirely. Besides, during the festival, students who cannot participate in events have to prepare various facilities to cover the expensive tuition fees. For example, Nox's train of thought was cut off the next moment. What is this? The place where Nox stopped was a shabby stall cluttered with goods. There, he saw a familiar face, black hair, and drowsy green eyes. Ah, hello, Nox von Reinhaver. Leon. Do not tell me. With a sinking feeling, Nox pressed a hand to his forehead. Surely not. Even for Leon, this is absurd. His expression said it all, but Leon, as expected, did not disappoint. Yes, I heard business does quite well during the Academy Swordsmanship Festival. Internally reeling, Nox watched as Leon nodded with satisfaction. Even so, selling sausages and wine here, isn't that crossing a line? Especially for the head of one of the three dark families? The family does not feed me. Besides, you know my circumstances. If I do not do this, I cannot afford tuition, so I have no choice but to work. Good luck, Thalia said encouragingly, but it seemed his stall was doomed to fail. There were about 10 chairs. Clearly an effort had been made, but there were some critical issues. In the first place, where is there even a shop where undead do the serving? What about hygiene? There are too many problems here. This guy is insane. Because right there, his undead minions were wearing aprons, ready to serve. Nox understood the need to save on labor costs, but still, I do not think I would buy anything. Ah, that is a bit hurtful. Leon genuinely looked dejected. He added, Mr. Paracelsus and Miss Eleanor also threw a fit telling me to shut this down. Whatever. It is your loss, not mine. Leon fell silent, pondering, then added, maybe the sign needs to be brighter? That is not the issue. No, never mind. Figure it out yourself. With that, Nox walked away. It was a cold but rational decision. There was nothing to gain from further conversation. A while later, pushing through the crowd, Nox arrived at the Colosseum, where the swordsmanship festival would begin. The hexagonal dueling arena. Incidentally, the Reinhaver family's training hall, where Nox had his first duel, was modeled after this very facility. Looks like it is about to start. A massive central platform was being adjusted, and a woman preparing to give a speech stood atop it. A woman with her hair tied back neatly. None other than one of the three sword emperors, recently pardoned by the Imperial family. Ulysses von Fritzschell. Students, hear me. I am Ulysses von Fritzschell. Having repented for my past sins, I now stand before you as a loyal knight of the Imperial family, overseeing this swordsmanship festival. Ulysses is already reinstated. What about the disrespect she showed the Emperor? This feels off no matter how you look at it. She pointed a sword at Empress Penelope's throat, yet she dares to stand there so boldly. I object. Voices of dissent rose, but Nox paid them no mind. From the beginning, Ulysses had a reason to protect the legitimate royal bloodline. That was why she had pointed her sword at the princess. Now rather, it could even be said that she maintains the closest relationship with Penelope. I understand your dissatisfaction. As a knight, I am ashamed of my role in the imperial strife alongside the first Prince Louis. I caused harm to many. However, Ulysses stared straight ahead, her expression unshakably confident. She met the countless critical gazes head-on. If you wish to hold me accountable, then become stronger. In a continent of war and chaos, that is the only justice. Empress Penelope entrusted me with this festival for that very reason. Remember that. The crowd was overwhelmed. Ulysses' sheer presence left no room for opposition. As expected of one of the three sword emperors, he could not help but acknowledge it. Nox recalled the times he had crossed swords with her, those dizzying moments, to the time when he had clashed swords with her alongside Paracelsus. Each and every one of those moments was worthy of becoming a heroic tale, but Nox and Paracelsus had no desire for their deeds to be sung. Thus, Headmaster Noah had never publicly recognized their contributions. Then, from this moment, the flower of Eldane Academy's night training, the swordsmanship festival shall begin. The sound of reluctant clapping and cheering voices mixed together. Thalia's grip on Nox's wrist tightened slightly. Behind them, Sel's expression hardened coldly. It is because even now, Belial whispered incessantly in her ear. Kill that wretched sister of yours. First match. Nox von Reinhaver, Vale. Both of you, step onto the arena. My first opponent was a regular knight named Vale. He was one of the rising stars, a third year who had recently achieved high marks in knight training. Even among the elite, he stood out. His brown hair, slightly darker than my alter ego Shane's, swayed softly. Third year, Vale. I have heard your name. Let's have a good match. Vale did not sneer like some third-rate villain. I also returned the courtesy with a nod. It was the best I could do as the infamous ruffian, though it was a bit problematic. It could not be helped. Any form of mana technique is permitted, except magic. If a life-threatening situation arises, I and 9 other Imperial Knights from Eldain will intervene, so fight without restraint. Then, begin. Cheng. Cold. The moment our swords clashed, such thoughts were irrelevant. Expressions like burning or sparks fly might be more cliché, but they would fit better. Yet, my mind was colder than ever. There was only one reason. Belial, the demon who would appear in this episode. He did not know I was aware of him, or that I planned to stop him. I had already mapped out how this episode would end before even stepping into it. I had to use this well. To do that, I needed to win every match in the festival flawlessly. My ultimate goal is, I must grow stronger. The moment the thought crossed my mind, Vale thrust his sword at me repeatedly, a technique made possible by his lightweight blade. I parried calmly, thinking, Cheng, Cheng. The oppressive killing intent, the sparks flying from clashing steel, all of it was familiar now. Ha, I reminded myself. Focus on the present, even if there was a vast gap between my opponent and me. Nox von Reinhaver. The current me was a unit with the genius trait. I repeated it to myself. The trait genius of swordsmanship and combat is being pushed to its limits. Your swordsmanship achievements are rapidly increasing. I close my ears. Messages proving I was a player are not important now. All that mattered was, I had to stake my life on this one duel. Vale, too, was fighting me with everything he had. Cheng. Suddenly, Vale accelerated, thrusting deep. But it did not leave a significant wound. A sword with shallow, rapid strikes, then a deep thrust when an opening appears. A common pattern among knights who favored lighter swords. I calmly parried each of his strikes, then adjusted my grip. The sword in my hand was not Stormbringer. Before leaving the family, Theo had told me, Stormbringer is a legendary sword beyond judgment. If you wield something like that and claim victory, it will only hinder your growth. So I held an ordinary longsword instead. But it was enough. At least for this duel. Cheng. It is like a blunt sound, cutting off the opponent's sword chain of strikes. A kind of signal, announcing that I have broken their offense, and now it is my turn. I will get serious. Come. Vale shifted to an aggressive stance, ready to receive my sword. Our swords clashed, and I exploited the weakness in his technique. First, the rapid shallow strikes. Cheng, Cheng. I deflected 2 thrusts precisely, using his momentum to close the distance. Then came the deep strike. His movements are big. My eyes gleam. The lavender color, the symbol of the Reinhaver family, stands out here. Distinguished sword family, masters of the black sword, wielders of darkness. But at the most fundamental level, knight. Before Vale's fallen sword could rise, I stepped on its back and slashed upward vertically. Cheng. With a sharp sound, I swung my sword toward Vale's neck. A long, resonant clang marked the end of the first match. Vale raised both hands above his head as Ulysses' blade slid between us. Nox von Reinhaver. Were you really planning to kill your senior? As always. If necessary, I would. I gave the same answer as before, just like when I had answered a question from a demon. Would you kill your father? If necessary. Chapter 221. Paracelsus, you were truly impressive. You stood out the most in this match, so congratulations on your victory. In that spirit, how about some wine and sausages at just the right temperature? Leon rarely compliments Paracelsus. Naturally, his hands are full of sausages and wine to sell, while Paracelsus sighs. Perhaps it is because the lingering tension from the battle has not fully subsided yet. Paracelsus recalls his recent battle, takes a light breath in, then exhales sharply. He was quite strong, a worthy opponent, but I feel there was more to him than he showed. Anyway, you won. Why does everyone look so disappointed? Eleanor speaks as if she does not understand. Truthfully, she was more shocked by Nox's battle than anything else. She had seen his instant acceleration since the moment he first saved her. The fluidity of his swordplay was always there, and Nox had always boasted about that. But what Nox showed this time was different. It was a level of evasion beyond the norm. Reading the enemy's attacks with his own eyes and precisely dismantling them, then naturally seizing the flow as the opponent panicked. This was a realm that could only be described as innate instinct. Paracelsus was excellent as well, but she did not take a deep interest in what that meant. Of course, that was because Eleanor was fundamentally interested in Nox himself. Though admittedly, her eye for swordsmanship was not particularly sharp, and the fact that she was a mage also played a role. Nox suddenly glances at the brooding Paracelsus and remarks, his talent was too good to be limited to swordsmanship. He had several unexpected traits. He did not stop at thrusts and slashes, he actively used his entire body, and it has been a while since that damn commoner faced someone like this. Did you notice? Right. You must have seen it too. But it seems the opponent also had a rough background, a grappling art very similar to what I used in the eastern slums, and a swordsmanship that naturally incorporated and evolved from it. Objectively, he was not outstanding. But there was something to learn. For the first time in a while, Nox and Paracelsus were on the same wavelength. Leon was the first to react. Oh, it is rare for you two to agree. How about a quick drink while we watch the other matches? Am I unlucky today? Getting tangled up with these commoner brats. Sorry, but I must say, these damn nobles. Eleanor, feeling sorry for Leon as he struggled amidst this, bought a glass of wine, but her brow furrowed almost instantly. Cheap wine. Did you dilute this with water, or something? Nox glances at him with a look of disdain, but it was meaningless. Leon had already answered kindly. I diluted it slightly, hoping my fellow students would not get too drunk. The alcohol content is around 4%. You madman. That is beer level. This is straight up fraud. Beer is also a fine drink. Leon said that, and his companions groaned while shaking their heads. Should we say, as expected of Leon, the slave of gold? In this situation, a noble setting up a stall was bad enough, but fraud on top of it was insulting. Nox was furious. This was an insult to drinkers and, in other words, it was blasphemy. Messing with alcohol is unforgivable. But the one who intervened next was someone even Nox could not handle. Young master, you must restrain yourself from alcohol. You are weak to it. At Zidri's words, Nox clamps his mouth shut, cutting off his interest in Leon's fly-infested stall, and turning his gaze elsewhere. Because now, a truly critical battle was about to begin. Then, the next duel. Third-year Sel von Stilliner and first-year Thalia von Stilliner. Take your positions. Sel and Thalia. The battle between the two sisters was finally starting. Nox swallows hard without realizing it. From here on out, he had to decide. Would he stop the sisters' tragedy, or would he simply watch as the story followed the inner lunatic's true history? It was a decision that could no longer be delayed, and Nox had already made his choice. I am going. Thalia clenches her fists tightly, as if steeling her resolve. Nox props his chin on his hand and replies indifferently. Don't let the time I spent on you go to waste. It was a cold response, but for some reason, his voice carried reassurance. The atmosphere in the arena was pure frenzy and intoxication. A place where all exceptional knights crossed blades and acknowledged victory or defeat. Of course, not everyone was free from the bitterness of defeat, but merely participating in this swordsmanship festival proved they were outstanding knights in the making. Unlike those who crumbled after a single loss, they admired each other's swords, recognized their own limits and skills, and strove for progress. That was the true value of the swordsmanship festival. And it was also an opportunity for knights to surpass their own limits. For example, Thalia was one such example now. Sel von Stilliner, Thalia von Stilliner. The two sisters exchanged perfunctory greetings, repeating names they already knew, standing in the arena purely as knights. Round 32. Merely making it this far was impressive, but Thalia aimed higher. Nox and Paracelsus, two of the three freshmen, had already secured a victory, living up to the reputation of the so-called Golden Generation. Some even openly whispered that the Academy had gathered the most talented knights in its history. This was the perfect catalyst to spur Thalia, who had been hesitating. All the conditions were in place for the fuse to ignite. Begin. The moment Ulysses' voice rings out, Thalia moves first. She thinks to herself, sister is strong, I have to seize the initiative. Using a rapid thrusting style, Thalia drives her rapier-like slender sword toward her sister. It was a stance difficult to attempt without solid fundamentals, but that did not apply to Thalia. She is fast yet precise. That was the sword Nox had seen from Thalia over the past few days. Nox clicks his tongue briefly. Their blades meet, or rather, Sel deflects Thalia's strike. The motion is as fluid as flowing water, as if she had already anticipated it. This was the biggest flaw Nox had foreseen in Thalia. She is too straightforward, there is no weight behind her sword, and no trick to make the opponent struggle. This was the starkest difference between her and Paracelsus, who had survived the Barren East. Paracelsus could wield multiple swordsmanship styles. In a way, he had been unable to settle on one until he finally met his master and blossomed. Of course, his genius-level talent would have bloomed eventually, but meeting his master undoubtedly hastened it. The key point was that Paracelsus had employed varied and unorthodox techniques in his last match. The moment you confine yourself to one style, you weaken. From olden times, knights live and die by a single movement, a single technique, a single step. Nox had spent the past days trying to teach Thalia this, creating variables, holding a trump card to shift the flow of battle, because that was what Thalia needed most. But in the end, this happened. Sel, with her genius-level talent, effortlessly deflects the attack. It was all too easy. Had not Nox experienced this before? During his first duel with the twin brothers, during the battle in the Chatters region, in every moment, Nox had absorbed lesser swordsmanship into his own, eventually mastering both the Black Sword and Moonlight Sword, hailed as the strongest. His level was still low, but levels could always be expanded. That is a genius. Ha! Thalia's rapid thrusts are effortlessly dismantled, leaving her feeling hollow. Sel takes a step forward and speaks to her younger sister in the coldest tone. You are still weak. Thalia's heart sinks. Was that the trigger? Thalia's voice begins to rise. No, I have been doing my best every day to catch up to you, sister. In the end, you will never reach me though. I will show you I am different now. Thalia focuses, not wavering, and giving her all. Living every moment, every second, intention. This was both the greatest virtue and the hardest challenge for a knight. The world might admire their beautiful exteriors with envy, but the inside was anything but. Their swords clash again. This time, it is a direct confrontation. Sel's sword is a type of bastard sword, normally gripped with a wasted hilt, the middle bulge allowed for versatile handling. The blade is quite thick. Most average knights would wield it with two hands, calling it a two-handed sword, but Cell holds it effortlessly with one, and she swings it freely, pressing Thalia back. Kill. That was the moment. In an instant, just before finishing Thalia, Cell's sword stops. It is the demon's whisper. It tormented Cell endlessly, and now, they were on the verge of sprouting. But at that moment, Thalia is also preparing. After her time with Nox, she had gained slightly more control over White Flame, and that was the only path to free herself from the shadow of her sister, who had loomed over her for so long. Your sister is now a vessel for a demon. If you do not save her, she will die. But without White Flame, you will never stand a chance. It is an enemy that even the patriarch, Robert, cannot defeat. You must fight such a foe. The sudden news from Nox had stirred waves in Thalia's heart. She had thought her sister had abandoned her, and that she despised her for being weak. She had convinced herself that her sister hated her, but like Nox and Eleanor, relationships and people could recover and move forward. And so, for the first time, Thalia wished to reach Cell, even if just for a moment, surpassing Robert. Not as family, but as a young swordswoman. She is not doing this to be recognized as a knight by her sister, but to wield a sword to save her. I know. There is a demon inside you. For the first time, Cell's expression twists in shock. She had never told anyone, and Thalia should not have had the skill to perceive it yet. The demon's possession was something even Robert had not noticed. At that moment, for some reason, Cell remembered her sister's fiancé, who had always stood against the Academy's threats at every moment. I hope you are not alone. Now, she understood what those parting words had meant, and so she felt relieved. In her shame-filled life, she was certain she could now bid farewell with a clear heart. You have grown, Thalia. I will save you, sister. Even knowing White Flame alone could not defeat her sister, she said it. Because when the moment comes to do what must be done, to create something from nothing, no matter how difficult, humans grow stronger to move forward. Thalia had finished all her preparations. Here I go. Her voice is calmer than ever. Cell raises her sword in response. Her body is already nearly overtaken by the demon. Only a few minutes left. With a bitter smile, the sisters' battle slowly enters its middle phase. Mana begins to burst forth from Thalia's body, soon turning into White Flame and seeping into her slender sword. Then, with a sound of hissing, the mana condenses into the blade. Thalia leaps forward at high speed, clashing with Cell again, and this time, the result is different. For the first time, Cell is pushed back. The fact that her feet drag against the ground is proof. The pressure piles up, layer upon layer, and for the first time, Cell shows bewilderment. White Flame, you have mastered it after all. This is not all. I will win. Though she did not have such an audacious thought against a genius, Thalia believed in herself. More precisely, she believed in her comrades who had helped and advised her, and in Nox von Reinhaver. She believed in her fiancé. That belief naturally becomes a spark. What burned was a single, pure white flame. No, that expression is not quite right. Because Cell too smiles faintly as she infuses her sword with mana. So I will correct that. What burned were two blades. The sisters' white, radiant flames. They are brighter than ever before. Chapter 222. A few hours earlier, near the newly established teleportation portal at the Eldane Academy. The portal, recently commercialized by Nox and Professor Lars, allowed for much faster movement. My daughters, where are my two girls? Robert von Stilliner shouted as he arrived. Robert, the patriarch of the Stilliner family, scanned the area urgently. Before his shouts could spread, a figure intercepted him. This way, Ulysses said. The three-sword emperors, Ulysses Nim, what brings you here? Robert asked. It is a long story. Let us move first, she replied. At Ulysses' words, Robert nodded and prepared himself. Ulysses had arrived after evacuating the other students to request Robert's assistance. As they moved, she recalled the conversation she had with Nox 3 days ago. A demon has possessed Cell von Stilliner's body. It is at least Grand Duke class, and it will be difficult to stop. Nox had warned her. Ulysses asked with genuine puzzlement. How do you know such things? Nox's answer was brief. There is no time. We must act. What should I do? She had asked. It was strange, but she could not help but believe him. Was it because Nox was strong enough to defeat her? No, that was not the reason. A knight is not an entity that can always win, and even she had suffered countless defeats. This was nothing to be surprised about. The upheaval of the sword, led by Paracelsus and Nox, would continue to surge forth. However, what Ulysses focused on was the demon. Nox had always been involved in battles against them, and he harbored intense hostility toward them. Ulysses did not know if he had requested something secret, but if there was a sign of movement, she would step in. Most conflicts began with the breath of the Grand Dukes. First, please ensure Robert comes here, Nox had said. In the worst case, we may have to kill Cell, who has become the host. Ulysses had thought that too cruel. She did not want to drive a wedge between parent and child, but there was no other choice. Nox's answer was clear. It is a demon that cannot be slain without the white flame form. Do not tell me. That means, yes, it is him. The monarch of lies, the symbol of worthlessness. The demon Belial. He has possessed Cell's body. Understood. I will help. The monarch of lies, Belial, has possessed Cell von Stilliner's body. As she relayed the urgent fact, Robert's expression froze. It was unbelievable, but he had no choice but to trust a sword emperor. He cannot be killed without the white flame. That is why I called you, Robert. Robert nodded solemnly. Yes. When the monarch of lies was sealed in the past, No attack worked except for the still inner family's white flame. Belial likely seeks the downfall of the still inner family. It was only logical. If his weakness was the white flame, then destroying the family would suffice. Sel had already surpassed her father in strength. Now almost no one remained who could stop her. Not even Robert could say for certain whether he could hold back his own daughter. At the same time Ulysses set out, Sel stared at the clashing white flames. The demon's voice echoed in her ears. Kill her, she heard. No, she is my little sister, Sel thought. Haha, your little sister? Don't make me laugh. She is the one who made your life hell. Haven't you always thought it? Why should I bear this burden? The voice probed her insecurities. Why must I suffer like this? Didn't you hate the family that never acknowledged your pain? Sel struggled. Stop it. That is why I gave you power. One of my 7 swords, envy. Sel coughed up a mouthful of blood and doubled over. The sword Belial bestowed was envy, a blade that stoked violent emotions toward her sister. Even the incident during her first spar with Thalia stemmed from this sword. Sel had strived to let go of her envy, but Belial continued to erode her mind. She sealed her lips and swung her sword, unaware she was moving as Belial intended. Is this the end? She whispered. Sel decided to avoid hating her sister by ending it. She struck down the entangled white flames and her sister's sword with all her strength. KHK. Thalia was sent flying and carved deep lines into the ground. Sel smiled as she watched this. Thalia, I am truly sorry for everything until now. Thalia knew something was wrong when she saw her sister reverse her grip on the sword. When the hilt was aimed at Sel's own heart, Thalia's heart collapsed. Stop. Do you know how hard I have worked to catch up to you? I have never rested a single day. I just wanted to be acknowledged. I wanted to lighten your burden. So why? She poured out her emotions, but Sel's time was up. You have suffered, Thalia. And, farewell. Thalia watched in horror as Sel prepared to strike. Suddenly, someone intercepted. Please stop, Sel von Stilliner. The voice was soft, carried by white hair and lavender eyes. It was Nox. Nox von Reinhaver. Why are you? Let us talk later. For now, surrender your body to him. I will take it from here. Sel's consciousness faded. Thalia, pushed back, could not move properly after being exposed to the demon's mana. Dark energy gathered around Sel, staining the white flame. Nox stared at Sel, whose pupils had inverted into evil eyes. Do not hide and come out, you wretched demon. Who? Now this is interesting. Just what are you? A mere brat who dares to see through me, Belial, and address me directly. How amusing. Belial's voice grew stronger. Tell me, what is your name? But the whispers did not work on Nox. He raised his sword, facing Sel, who was marked with thick, thorn-like veins. I have no name to give to a mere demon. Doesn't matter. I will force it out of you. Isn't that right? Try, if you can. Belial, possessing Sel's body, launched an assault. A sword dance followed, infused with the white flame. It was the complete white flame form, not Thalia's immature version. It was troublesome. Moreover, Belial could not be killed without the same white flame. Nox felt the gravity of the situation. He considered another possibility to turn the tide. He glanced at a man remaining in the spectator stands. His name was Pel, a fellow student, and a saint from the monastery hiding his identity. Nox recalled their conversation 3 days prior. Nox had confronted him. Pel, was it? I know your true identity. The saint from the monastery. You enrolled to monitor the conflict between the dark and holy families. And also, your initial purpose was to watch me. Pel realized Nox had uncovered everything. What do you want from me? Just one thing. Nox answered with a faint smile. Help me. The power granted only once to a saint from the monastery was a miracle magic that forcibly awakens talent. It was the power of blessing. He was telling Pel to use it for him. Why should I waste my one-time power on someone from the dark family? Of course, Nox smiled enchantingly. It will not just be helping me. It will be helping all of you. Chapter 223. What is this? Bewilderment. When she first lost consciousness and was abandoned here, the only emotion Sel felt was that single question. The identity of this place and the one who had sent her here were already clear. Belial. The vile demon had finally swallowed her completely. Only now did she understand. This is a world created by my imagination. Demons trap humans in places like this, making it impossible for them to regain their sense of self. It was one of the methods demons used when seizing a body. Demons, by nature, delighted in watching humans break down in what could be called the Avasai hell. Ha. She let out a sigh, but nothing would change. All she could do was hope someone would kill her and free her from this hellish place. The devilization has progressed to the end, and I can no longer interfere with my body. That thought had crossed her mind about 10 minutes ago. What followed was the scene before her now. In the pitch-black darkness, a single streak of light lingered before revealing none other than the training grounds of the Stilliner family. It was one of the horrific places that forced Sel to reflect on her mistakes, and the point where her relationship with Thalia began to unravel. If I had rejected his power, would I have become a slightly better person? It was around the time she had just gained the power of Grand Duke Belial, and began losing control. In the Stilliner family, a ceremony was underway to select the next head of the family, the one who would succeed Robert. Though both Thalia and Sel were young, Robert was losing his authority as a duke, and to persuade the vassals, a prodigious talent needed to emerge. Robert never forced the burden onto her, but Sel could tell he was troubled. She knew many called her dull, but in truth, that was not the case. She was simply the type to observe her surroundings and pick up on cues without showing it. At times like this, she envied her younger sister, who was loved by everyone. Thalia von Stilliner, her only sister, and now her rival for the position of the Stilliner family head. But, sister, you have to stay strong. The pure-hearted innocence of young Thalia even left her opponent, Sel, flustered. And so, Sel responded coldly. Thalia, you know we have to fight, right? And the one who wins will become the head of the Stilliner family. So take care of yourself before worrying about me. But I like you, sister, and I do not even know if I really want to be the family head. If it is you, I think I would be happy to congratulate you. Her younger sister was naively kind. Was that why? Sel thought she was not suited to survive in this harsh world. And so, she prepared with the determination to win, because she believed Thalia would struggle to make the difficult decisions required to navigate this brutal continent. To her, Thalia still had an immature, almost careless side. Though she was indeed young, it was more than that. It felt as though no matter how much she grew, she would never become sharp. And so, Sel resolved to achieve an overwhelming victory in their duel. It had to be so decisive that the vassals would never again question who should lead, who should be the family head. Only then would this issue, and whether the Stilliner family could be restored, cease to arise. Only then would Thalia and Robert find peace. The one to be the sacrifice for that was herself, but she would not show it. That was just the kind of person Sel had always been. However, achieving such a victory came with constraints. The biggest problem among them was this. Sel herself had to be overwhelmingly stronger than Thalia, but for some reason, Thalia was born with a blessed talent. Though she might seem weak compared to a genius, the ability of a prodigy was more than enough to leave a mark on the continent's epics. Meanwhile, Sel now realized her own talent was lacking. Even if she had the same prodigy talent, she would have struggled, but she had no talent at all. She was merely average, and no matter how hard she worked, her limits were painfully clear. This was not a wall she could overcome with a few years of effort. That was the difference between a prodigy and ordinary talent. And so, before her duel with Thalia, Sel, sitting on a bench in despair, heard it. Demons whisper, I will give you the power you desire. In the end, she succumbed to it. Though she told herself it was for Thalia and Robert, she no longer knew. Maybe I just did not believe I could become a better person on my own. Begin the duel. When the presiding voice rang out, Sel, forgetting for a moment that this was all an illusion, found herself watching the battle between herself and her sister. She could not tear her eyes away. Cheng, a duel with real swords. With the vassals watching, Sel and Thalia gave it their all. Their blades clashed again and again, retreating and advancing, swinging and striking. Her sister's stance, her swordsmanship, everything mirrored Sel's own. But the way Thalia learned at an absurdly rapid pace only made Sel feel more impatient. If I do not end this faster, more decisively, father and Thalia will suffer. And so she made her choice. Even if it meant she would be the one to break, she believed it was for the best. At least in that moment. Give me power. To me. Not to anyone else, to me. In response to Sel's resolve, the demon spoke. Good. I shall grant you power, my first servant. I bestow upon you my sword. The sword's name is envy. It shall always reside within you and answer your call. However, you must also answer mine. That is the condition of our contract. The atmosphere of the duel shifted from that moment. Sel began to overwhelm Thalia, enough to make it look like she was holding back at the beginning. A faint black aura, imperceptible unless one was from a dark family. No one noticed the dark element. In the end, Sel emerged victorious. When Thalia approached to congratulate her, Sel smacked her hand away. How can you smile so carelessly after losing to me? That is all you amount to. Of course, it was Belial's whisper that had stolen control of her body. But no one could have known that. From then on, Thalia, who had always been the first to reach her, stopped visiting Sel's room. And so, the two sisters grew apart, while Robert remained clueless as time passed. What set things in motion again was Nox von Reinhaver, Thalia's fiancé. As expected, fighting a demon with only the initial 3 forms is difficult. And this is a Grand Duke. I know that all too well. Is not what I have learned recently the black sword, after all? But I cannot use it, because the opponent, Belial, while completely weak to white flame, has the shocking advantage of absorbing dark element. The more I use the black sword, the more I will be the one ensnared. That is why I cannot easily draw the black sword. All bark and no bite, ha. The Grand Duke laughed as he drew a single crimson sword from within Sel's body, envy. It would be more accurate to say he vomited it out. That sword was envy, one of the 7 swords Belial had bestowed upon Sel. To say I did not know of it would be a lie. In the game, not all 7 swords ever appeared, but each one was shockingly powerful. This is bad. He is regaining his strength faster than I thought. Sel had already grown considerably stronger, before being fully possessed by Belial. Therefore, this was possible. Belial whispered. You will regret this. If only you left this bitch to kill herself back then, you would have lived. Regret? Why should I? The trait prodigy of acting is strongly activating. But I simply grinned after I said that. Ha, now I might actually survive. Because the reinforcements I had been waiting for had finally arrived. And, this was the first step in the plan to save Sel. You have suffered enough until now. From here on out, together with me, the head of the White Flame. Pathetic. You are far weaker than the one who faced me in the past. Strength is something you measure in battle. Robert von Stilliner, one of the only wielders of the White Flame capable of killing Belial, and the head of a prestigious swordsmanship family, had arrived. But do you really think adding one more weakling will change anything? Deceitful demon, Belial. Get out of my daughter's body at once. Robert drew his white flame and swung. Flames erupted from the blade, engulfing the surroundings. Chang! Robert charged toward the crimson sword, radiating sinister energy, swinging with a battle cry. The clashing blades erupted in a deafening explosion, filling the area with dust and shockwaves. Damn it. But in that moment, I felt a pang of despair, because I knew Robert's sword had not reached his eldest daughter. The Grand Duke laughed, as if amused. Holding back against me, one of Hell's rulers? Ha! How laughable, head of the white flame. He could not bring himself to strike his own daughter with full force. For Robert, it was the natural choice. But internally, I could not help but rage. What are you doing? Fight with everything you have. It seemed Robert himself only now realized he had unconsciously held back at the last moment. The faint trembling of his hand was proof. This, I did not mean to. Robert steadied his trembling hand, and looked at his transformed daughter. In that instant, Sel, or rather, Belial possessing her, leaped forward, aiming straight for Robert's heart in the blink of an eye. It was a sword strike laced with pure killing intent, enough to send a chill even through Robert. Guh. Robert staggered back with a groan. He was already wounded at the waist, blood dripping as he looked at me. His intent was clear. No matter what, I could only wield the weak sword just like before. I am sorry. Those words spilled from Robert's lips at that very moment. Still bleeding, Robert continued. I cannot bring myself to cut down my own daughter. I do not know what to do. Does Sel look like your daughter to you right now? No one else can do this. Even going all out, you might die. I shouted. But Robert would make the selfish choice. Even if it meant endangering everyone here for the sake of remaining a good father in his own eyes, he would not bend. Do you resent me? For a moment, I wondered if this is what a father is. Theo's voice surfaced in my mind. Is a father someone who becomes infinitely weak for the sake of his family? Then why did Theo have no choice but to act that way toward Nox? I do not know, and I do not want to. Now, we must move to the second plan. Fortunately, he is already moving. A shadow looms behind the unconscious Thalia. I shout quickly, do it now. I am only trusting you this once. There, a single boy is reciting a prayer for Thalia, none other than Pel. From this moment on, he will propel Thalia forward once more. The only one who can invoke the law of the inner lunatic, Thalia. Now is the time for you to rise. There is always the right time for a flower to bloom. If it can bloom, it must be now. From this moment on, Thalia must become not a prodigy, but a genius, even if the method is forced. Chapter 224. Robert sinks into thought. At this very moment, the moment his hands tremble, a thought seizes him. Did I place too heavy a burden on Sel? He asks himself. Did that child collapse because I gave her too much to bear? The answer is already clear. Correct. She was a child with deep emotions from a young age. Dad, I will try to become stronger. The daughter who repeated those words is now becoming a full-fledged monster, corrupted by a demon, and a high-ranking one at that. The outcome of the battle is already decided. Objectively speaking, even if he uses white flame, the chances of defeating her are nearly non-existent. So, drowning in his emotions, he thinks endlessly. Sel, why with a demon? You did not have to. You did not have to break yourself like this. Robert's gaze, as he points his sword at his daughter, is filled with emptiness. Not just nothingness, but a pure void. Everyone, get out of here. It is a demon ambush. Even as Ulysses' voice rings out, Robert, who had positioned himself under the pretext of handling the situation, cannot bring himself to act. What kind of father will his two daughters remember him as? The thoughts swarm his mind relentlessly. Sel's transformation is unnatural when he thinks about it. Though she has always been skilled with the sword since childhood, she was never this much of a genius. So, to please him, for Thalia, and the family, she must have succumbed to the demon's whisper. And of all demons, it had to be Belial, the monarch of lies, escalating the situation beyond his control, until she ultimately chose to take her own life for their sake. His daughter is about to make that choice. What can a father do in return? Is the only thing I can do to let her go peacefully? Can I even do that? Sel has already grown stronger than him. Ulysses is evacuating the others. Nox is barely holding the enemy back, and Noah, and the other 7 stars are not here. They have their own duties to attend to. Even if they were, they might help, but they would not be able to kill Belial completely. Unless it is white flame, he will not die. Knowing that, Robert hesitates. Because that means, right now, he is the only one who can kill his own daughter. Snap out of it, Knight Robert. Nox shouts at him. Robert jolts back to reality, and looks at him. He is slightly shorter than himself, but far more dependable than when they first met. What is most impressive is his audacity to yell at him in this situation without faltering. While doing what anyone finds difficult, Nox blocks the enemy's sword. A blade flies toward Robert. Nox deflects it and exhales sharply. Robert, nearly struck by the blind attack, finally regains his senses. Sorry, you will buy time. Please hold on. What? Robert is stunned as he holds the sword with a blank expression. I am going to save Sel von Stilliner. Someone once told me that giving up because it is too late is what disqualifies a knight. So I will do my best. So, Nox's eyes gleam coldly. Do not you give up on your daughter either. What if I cannot? Like I said, you will buy time. Nox parries the enemy's sword and steadies his breathing. Sel, wielding a thin red blade, slices through space and unleashes a rapid slash. It is different from white flame, yet fundamentally similar. Chang, a heavy strike is deflected by Nox. If you buy as much time as possible, I will resolve everything. The first thing you need to do is believe in your daughter. What? Sel will not die even if you attack her with everything you have. Belial will not abandon her body either. so there is no reason for you to hesitate here. Robert's brow twitches. To make such a judgment in this moment, he is quick. In a situation where anyone would be overwhelmed, he still finds an opportunity to use his opponent in this mid-battle. This is something only the most exceptional among knights are capable of. Nox von Reinhaver, a child, barely 15. Yet his words carry weight, and Robert cannot help but feel he possesses a vessel greater than his own. Understood. Nox, let us do it your way. After a brief pause, Robert steps forward and begins swinging his sword in earnest. White flame ignites as he attacks Cell, and Nox swiftly moves back. Adjusting his distance, he approaches Thalia and asks Pell behind her. How much longer do we have to wait? The power of blessing. To use it requires an enormous amount of mana. At least 30 minutes of continuous pouring. We will help. The ones who arrive then are none other than Noah von Trinity and my magic master, Astrid. Though absent earlier, they came quickly at my request. The situation is not so bad now. 3 of the 7 stars have gathered. Ulysses von Fritzschel, Noah von Trinity, Astrid von Kaliad. With these 3, buying more time, and ultimately making Thalia bloom should be possible. We leave it to you. No, I am sorry, but there is one problem the headmaster mana alone cannot solve. What is it, Pelkun? The magic I use forcibly blooms the target's abilities. The power of blessing. To activate it, 2 conditions are needed. First, the target must be suited for blooming. Thalia meets this, so no issue there, but we do not have time. What is the other one? I ask impatiently, but Pell hesitates before answering. Because it is forced blooming and requires a massive amount of mana, the target must have the willpower to endure it. Unimaginable pain and suffering will overwhelm Thalia. The chances of success are vanishingly low. Pain. In most cases, it triggers trauma and crushes the target. Without a miracle, there is no hope. Pell grits his teeth and continues. In the worst case, Thalia might never wake up. Even if Pell had prepared the ritual faster, Thalia's talent needed to bloom. The power of blessing required these conditions. This was something I had not known even while playing Inner Lunatic. She must feel the pain. The probability of success is slim. Is it right to gamble on Thalia like this, to plunge her into agony? What is the best choice I can make in this situation? It might mean hastening her death. But the answer was already clear. The Thalia von Stilliner I remember. Timid yet unyielding, never breaking, always pushing forward despite repeating the same struggles every day. If she is such a person, she could do it. I will buy time with Robert. Headmaster, master, please help. Do you really believe Thalia will wake up? That she will defy expectations like a miracle? Noah asks as I turn away. I smile with absolute certainty. Yes, maybe even more than I believe in myself. I trust her, and more than I, who endlessly hesitated and weighed options in uncertainty. Perhaps I trust Thalia more. Even if she fails, I will not resent her. Regret is just a pointless luxury. Go, Astrid says simply. From here, it is a battle against time, whether we endure or not. Ha, I steady my breath and step towards Cell again. Robert is already badly wounded, and Ulysses, after evacuating the students, can barely block attacks. From here, I will intervene aggressively, and the only thing left is for Thalia to break through her own walls, surpass them, and become a genius. But I believe. I will try. Those words carried a resolve stronger than anyone else's. I knew that better than anyone. In the end, I could not win this time either. I think to myself, feeling the mysterious mana enveloping me, I replay the battle in my mind. The source of this deep despair, which no one else could understand, was my one and only sister, the one who abandoned everything for her family. Nox once said, there is something more important than becoming stronger, not losing yourself. That is what matters most. When I stopped being the me I remembered, people left me. During special training, I idly chewed on his words before asking, if I change, will you leave me too? I knew it was a childish question, but what else could I do? I wanted to ask. I wanted something to lean on. Right now, I am weak. I train repeatedly to improve, but the likelihood of never surpassing my sister is high. Everyone told me to give up, except Nox. But he told me I have to change, that I need to become stronger. Otherwise, you will not be able to save anyone. So I asked, if I fail, if I am not enough, if I fall short, will you leave me? At that, Nox smiled faintly for the first time in a while and simply said, as long as you do not give up on me first, I will not abandon anyone. Though it would be more accurate to say I cannot anymore. Whoosh. Mana burns through me, burning like flames over the whole body, and it feels like my mind is flying away. Why is this happening? Honestly, I do not know. And now, the scene unfolding before me. It was me that was badly defeated by my sister, rolling on the ground. A corner of a certain scene. Fragments of memories pierce me like shards of glass, sending chills through my body. What actually is this? Why am I seeing this scene? Even as I sink into despair, I recall Nox's words. I will not give up. Distorted, it shifts into something easier for me to hear. I will not give up on you. The words fracture and reform into that phrase. I realize it again. Back when I first went to the Reinhaver family for night training, back when I approached Nox solely to grow stronger after seeing his potential, I love him far more now than I did then. I love how he teases me for hating spiders, but secretly moves them away when they appear. I love how he acts like he will leave me, but always ends up on my team, pushing me away yet warmly lending his back. It was never just a fleeting emotion. Crackle. Even amid that, the pain continues. At the same time, I think, What if I do not protect my sister now? My father, who rushed here upon hearing the news. Headmaster. My classmates. Even Nox might die. The Nox who risked his life every moment to protect others. To protect me. I cannot just watch him die. Amid the crushing weight of these thoughts, I stop thinking about the pain, the bitter despair, even the summer memories, even my blind fear of spiders. None of it matters now. Just a desire to see one person fills me completely. And to do that, I instinctively realize the best course is to slowly accept the mana surrounding me. Kyung. I surrender my body to the mana that gathers faintly, spreading through me like mayflies. The next moment, I wake up and see Nox's back. His bloodied white hair, his broad shoulders on the verge of collapse. With bloodshot eyes, I rush forward and point my sword at the demon who stole my sister's body. Do not take my sister, Nox. My father, away from me. I will not let anything be taken from me. Crackle. Blind emotion becomes pure white flame, erupting into a pillar of fire. I will not retreat anymore, no matter who stands in my way. Chapter 225. Cough. I straighten my staggering body, coughing up bloody phlegm. My consciousness is fading. Is there still no sign of Thalia's awakening? It feels like 30 minutes have passed. Even if the perception of time varies from person to person, that much time must have passed. Now, only I, Robert, who was battered beside me, and Ulysses were left. From the start, Ulysses' attacks were ineffective. We have all been too busy fending off the enemy's assaults. Robert is not strong enough to defeat Cell, who has grown even more powerful in her devilization state. I did tell him to buy time, but Robert's kind nature, unable to bring himself to cut down his own daughter, must have played a part too. Some might find it frustrating. Either way, your daughter has already become a demon now. She must be killed. This is the time for rational judgment. But is not that a father? Even knowing that more could be lost, he still could not bring himself to end it. It is a strange feeling. Is this the warmth that Joachim, after living so long, had yearned to feel? The warmth of family and those who seek me out. Is this the tenderness that comes from it? I realize I cannot free myself from these thoughts. And at the same time, I despair. Because my life was not like this. Because all I have ever known was having a part of my life torn away, leaving nothing but longing and wishing. Then, suddenly, another thought crosses my mind. The last words Theo von Reinhaver spoke to me. Survive. Why did he say that to me? To him, was I not just trash, not even worthy to be disposed of at any moment? It is complicated. I should not dwell on it anymore. Player's physical strength has fallen below a certain threshold. My stamina is being shredded like mad. This is not good. Of course, I still have 10 minutes of Genius's time left to use, but I should save it for the worst case scenario. Damn it. I curse under my breath and look at Belial. The enemy is unharmed. I have not even been able to summon Dark Element, fighting only with moonlight. And even that is mostly thanks to Luna. Since I never learned mid-stage form, expecting high destructive power is unrealistic. The fact that it is broad daylight does not help either. After all, the moonlight sword grows stronger when darkness descends. Even if I use the third form of the initial stage, Moon Split, taking him down is impossible. This is my current situation. Ulysses is no different. Heaven-breaking sword. Even a sword that claims to sunder the heavens could not stop the thick malice shrouding this place. Belial knew his advantages too well, and with no one left who could defeat Cell with White Flame, this battle had become nothing more than a desperate struggle. A mere human's flailing. That is probably what he thinks. I, Belial, shall become the absolute supreme being of hell. As he declares his ambition, the situation begins to change. The voice of the girl I believed in reached my ears. And then, that presence begins to spread. Do not take my sister, Nox. My father, away from me. A girl who declares she will not let anything be taken stands before me. Before I realize it, she is by my side, igniting white flame, and making her proclamation. Beautiful. Radiant. There are many words to describe her, but none suffice. The mana Thalia now wields is beyond reason. One who surpasses their limits grows even stronger. Right now, Thalia, at the very least, will not lose to Cell with White Flame. You were faster than I expected. I say this as I straighten my staggering body. Thalia, wrapped in white flames, begins to raise the sword of judgment. What? How did she suddenly grow stronger? Belial stares at Thalia in shock. The miracle happened in that moment. Slowly, the malice begins to recede from Cell's body. The pitch-black pupils regain their white sclera, and the black thorns that had spread like tattoos across her skin start to fade. The meaning is clear. White Flame is taking effect. Thalia is completing White Flame. I recall the past. Back when I played the game, I, Joachim, had a deep attachment to Thalia as a unit, as a character. She was someone who, despite the deepest despair in the darkest abyss, never stopped believing she could overcome it. So, without hesitation, I always used the soul awakening opportunity on her. After that, Thalia, awakened with White Flame, wielded overwhelming power against demons. Holy Family units are not easy to control. Echidna von Xenos and the princess who now became the emperor are not an exception. With these two families, the moment you start from a dark family, requesting their aid is already difficult. In the end, the key to clearing inner lunatic lay with Thalia von Stilliner. It all depended on this prodigious unit, who kept pushing forward even when she hit her limits. Now, she must have seen a new path. Just like when Nox, bearing the genius trait, first returned to this world, she must have glimpsed something ordinary talent could never see. And that will grant Thalia a sense of elevation and fulfillment she has never felt before. NG Nox, you waited a long time, did you not? Thalia says this, then shifts her gaze to her sister. The icy indifference on Sel's face melted into heated joy as her lips began to tremble with difficulty. Leah, Thalia, are you all right? At Robert's words, Thalia nods slightly. She smiles, clear and bright, like spring sunlight, a smile fit for family. But the expression that follows is that of a cold night. How dare you toy with my family? I will not tolerate you anymore. You damned bitch. How did you wake up? How did you gain this power? Do not tell me some meddling angel intervened. You do not need to know. I am but one of the White Flame Knights, here to judge evil. She smiles faintly as she stares at him. We were barely holding up, ha. With that trivial thought, I calmly steady my breathing. Now begins phase 2. You damn demon bastard. Character Thalia von Stilliner has completed her awakening. Acquired White Flame Knight. Active skill Evil's Judgment acquired. The message window appears a moment later. Evil's Judgment. I focus on Thalia's newly acquired skill. A technique honed by slaughtering countless demons, piling mountains of their corpses. Merely swinging the white flame-imbued sword at an enemy activates it, but only if the target is a demon. Against demons, this skill's destructive power naturally surpasses the moon split I use. Not even Paracelsus could wield a skill stronger than Thalia's Evil's Judgment now. This is why. White Flame, and above all, why Thalia had to survive. True to her faith, she does not yield an inch to Belial, instead overwhelming his strikes. The violent clash of blades rings out. Damn it. The demon's frustration is laid bare. Belial shouts again. Cut her down. Now, move. Though the command comes, Sel's body freezes mid-motion. The encroaching white flame begins purging the darkness shrouding her. I quickly shout to Ulysses and Robert. Everyone, fall back. Get as far away as possible. The demon can switch hosts. Ulysses and Robert move quickly while shouting out. Nox, what about you? You should move too. I still have something left to do. After answering clearly, I step behind Thalia. Nox, you should retreat too. It will be dangerous. Thalia says this. She has learned to speak like this now. It is touching, but, for someone who learned a sword from me, do you think you have already surpassed me? At least when it comes to my sister. Thalia responded like that, but she did not lose focus. She did not giggle, or blush like usual. Just, focused. Because we have finally reached the end of this damned battle. Listen carefully, Thalia. Nox. Why the telepathy all of a sudden? I will draw him out of Sel, your sister's body. The moment it happens, strike him down before he can possess me. That is the only way to kill him. Nox. The dark element I wield is of the same origin as theirs. So Belial will try to possess me, not you. Is that why you sent Ulysses Nim and father away? Yes. Thalia hesitates for a moment, then nods. She knows her sister is dying even now. And if she trusts me, she must make the choice here. Battles on this continent always demand someone's death as collateral. This time, it is just mine. Nothing changes. Got it. Resolved. Thalia gathers the overflowing white flame into her sword. Then, she begins overwhelming Belial. Short. And then as if extended. Her blade is moving freely. Thalia's swordsmanship was already at a masterful level, lacking only in adaptability. Over the past few days, I taught her how to introduce variables into her sword. This is completely different from the Stilliners. Thus, Belial, who relies on Sel's swordsmanship as a base, will need time to react and adapt. Which means, now is the decisive moment to end him. I did not draw the moonlight sword, but the black sword. I channel my mana, waiting for him to react. Praying he takes the bait. Enough. You dare attack me, Belial, and survive. I will send you all to hell. Try it. If you can. Thalia says this. Then slams white flame into the throat of the demon wearing her sister's body. That moment. There is no way. I would die like this. Sel's body begins to collapse. The red sword in her hand clatters to the ground. Then, the demon's spirit form leaps toward me. You dare wield darkness before me. You are a fool, ha, Reinhaver. No. This situation, this moment, even his lines. Had this been a script, I would have predicted it all. That is why, even as my body might be stolen, I feel exhilaration. This battle is ours. Thalia. NG. Thalia lunges from behind. As if reading his movements, she intercepts him. Then, she swings her sword at the demon, his face twisted in bafflement. A clean, severing sound, unnaturally crisp for something cutting a soul. Belial's face splits in two. His fading expression is filled with rage. That is directed solely at me. Then, just before he touches me, mere centimeters away, he snarls. Damn. To think I would fall like this. I shrug, answering only with cold eyes and a gesture. Die. Belial's form flickers faintly. Like mist, like an illusion that never existed, his presence erases itself. All that remains here are the survivors. I realize it. This time too, I have survived. And the enemy was dead. At the same time, another thought strikes me. After countless miracles, I stand here, ha. At the very end, for the first time, I have finally placed myself atop those miracles. To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update as soon as possible. See you then.